Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei was a part of Rebel Brigade in the Great War. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. For a long time, the existence of beings called demons, angels and fallen angels, was a total mystery to humanity. Over the years, there were 2 wars between these 3 factions. Without any fixed objective, these 3 existences kept fighting without caring about anything. With the 3rd war between factions, there was a consequence that forced the demons and angels to retreat, which totally ended the war. The demons had suffered an unthinkable paradiddle. Their 4 rulers, the 4 great Maoists, had perished in fight. In addition to various pure-blooded demons, the underworld had perished a lot. Heaven was not far behind. They lost the unique existence capable of giving life to other angels, their supreme ruler God. With great losses on both sides, there was a period of ceasefire. During the ceasefire period, the demons were forced to replace their rulers. Carefully choosing 4 new demons, they took the titles of their ancestors, and again the underworld was again ruled by the 4 great Maoists. However, Heaven did not have it very easy. Heaven could not yet create new angels. They were at a clear disadvantage. Temporarily, Seraphim Michael took the lead. The demons, still furious with Heaven for having made them lose their former rulers, again broke out in war against Heaven. Heaven was forced to respond, but with their forces severely weakened and outnumbered, the angels were forced to retreat and seek refuge in Heaven. The demons wanted to ensure their victory, and because of that, they invaded the human world. The angels could do nothing. They knew well that if they tried to defend humans, they would be annihilated, and only saw how humanity was enslaved by demons. An era of tyranny ruled on humans. Demons sought those artifacts left by God, weapons slay gods, the Longinus. The demons secured riches and other things to those humans who gave to whom they suspected to be a possessor of Longinus. Many mistakes on the side of humans caused humanity to quickly lose its numbers, until it was reduced to nothing. Those possessors of Longinus who were caught were forced to go to the underworld, and simultaneously these were turned into demons to serve the supreme rulers of the underworld, and now of the human world as well. However, there were some Longinus possessors who got up, refusing what the 4 great Maoists wanted, escaped. The demons searched for them, however, they could never find them. To this day they still cannot find you. Those possessors of Longinus formed a brigade, which was responsible for protecting every human possible, as well as the possessors of Longinus. The name of the brigade was Warriors of Longinus, created by a young boy who to this day claims to be the human with the greatest hatred towards demons. I swear someday to completely exterminate all demons. With demons ruling everything, and Longinus holders in resistance, humanity was forced to make 2 choices: fight, and seek what they most yearned for more than 10 years, freedom. Surrender, and die at the hands of those who took everything from them, the demons. After the 3rd war between the demons, angels and fallen angels ended. Both sides, angels and demons, had considerably significant casualties. The demons lost their 4 rulers, while Heaven lost its leader, God. Despite that, the demons had a distinct disadvantage against the angels. They were vulnerable to the light-based powers that the angels used. The 4 new rulers, who took the titles of the previous ones, decided to start a 4th war against Heaven. However, the demons thought of having on their side something that would guarantee their victory, and those were the weapons left by God, the Longinus. The demons appeared before the humans with their incredible demonic powers, and with the help of their rulers, the 4 Maoists enslaved all of humanity. The angels tried to start a fight in the human world, but they did nothing about it and retreated. With the enslavement of humanity, humans were informed all about their current situation. They were informed that any of them could possess a powerful weapon called Longinus, which they would use to defeat the sky. They also reported the existence of 13 Longinus. The demons offered great rewards to those humans who handed over anyone they suspected might possess a Longinus. With many mistakes on the side of humans, many died for nothing. The most damaging news for all was clearly, God is dead. With that news alone, humanity lost the little hope they had left, and resigned itself to remain enslaved. However, there were some humans, possessors of Longinus, who rebelled against the demons. These humans managed to escape the clutches of the demons and hid. Until today, the demons still cannot find the whereabouts of these humans possessing Longinus. Japan, Kanto region. In a great city torn apart by demons, with burning buildings, destroyed streets and craters in the fields, and where there were supposed to be buildings, completely abandoned, there was not a soul in it. A group, not very large, 10 demons with their wings outstretched, patrolled the ruin of the city that their rulers had left shortly after the conquest of the world. The group of demons continued patrolling the abandoned city for several minutes. However, as they suspected, they found nothing. Quickly the demons retreated. In one of the many destroyed buildings, among the rubble, you could see the silhouette of someone. It was a woman, 20 years old, wearing a cute purple gothic Lolita outfit, but it was mostly destroyed, with burns and blood stains, a short blonde hair with numerous ribbons in her hair. The woman was holding her right arm, which was injured and bleeding slightly, but from the loss of blood, she was beginning to lose consciousness. Damn, those damn demons have been following me for 2 whole days, I speak to herself, the woman. The blonde stood up as best she could and slowly set out to walk. Several minutes later, the blonde woman managed to leave the destroyed city, only to find a huge field, where she supposed there should be a city, but instead there was a lonely field. Flat, it was as if there had never been the city that should be there, with a small tree in what seemed to be the center of the field. The blonde prepared to go towards the tree. It didn't take long, but the blonde finally made it to that tree. Recharging on the trunk of the tree, with her arm bleeding, wounds and scratches from all that remained of the body, she resigned herself to continue advancing and looked at the sky. I am aware that I was not the best woman in the world, but I don't think I deserve this kind of punishment. The resigned blonde closed her eyes, expected. Wow, look what we have here. Someone spoke in front of the blonde. The blonde opened her eyes slowly, only to realize that she was already surrounded by the previous group of demons. If you are annoying, do you have any idea how long we have been looking for you? I speak the demon who appeared to be the leader. -2 days, stupid demon, count. Ria the blonde. Keep saying what you want. At this moment we will take you to our Lord Lucifer-sama, there we will see who laughs last. As you wish. La Rubio again closed her eyes. The demon in front of her, annoyed, looked at her with a very high rage. Apparently she was already at her limit. I can't wait. Our Lord will enslave you and force you to fight for our cause. Will he brainwash you or perhaps think of torturing you? I look forward to it. I speak again the devil. It seems that if you can wait, we have here that. 5 minutes. And I still do not see that you try to capture me again, the blonde. Damn. The demon, already very upset, held the blonde wing of the shirt, lifting it off the ground and putting it in front of his face, making them look at each other face to face. What? Are you upset? Do you want to hit me? Will you kill me? Asked the blonde with a smile on her face. I'm sure Lucifer-sama didn't mind us hitting her a little before we took her away. Do it. Before the provocation of the blonde, the devil prepared to give her a blow to the face. The blonde saw the demon's fist coming straight to her face, but still, the smile on the blonde's face was still there. Just before the man's fist hit the blonde's face, there was an explosion behind them. What was that? Asked the exalted demon. I don't know. The demon released blonde wing, dropping her to the ground. The demon along with his entire group turned around, staring blankly at the place where the explosion had taken place. There was a small crater and the smoke kept coming out. Seconds later, among the smoke, the demons and the blonde noticed the silhouette of someone. Quickly at a brisk pace, that someone came out of the smoke. A young and good-looking boy, with short black hair, wore a school uniform with a mixture of an ancient Chinese suit, had a slightly worn backpack, also posed on his shoulder a long spear. The young black-haired man approached until he was separated from the demons by about 3 meters, stood and stared at the demons while smiling subtly. "Phew, who are you?" asked the demon pointing at him, but he was nervous. "J-Boss, Issei is the true Longinus, he is a Longinus holder. True Longinus." The demon leader looked directly at the young black-haired man. The black-haired man began to turn his spear, which intimidated the demons by pushing them back. After turning it for a few seconds, he stuck it on the ground. "Well, if they give me the girl I will let them live, if not, I will kill them all." I speak the black-haired. "Are you crazy? Because we don't just capture them both, so my lord be happier," the leader of the demons spoke. "I guess that's a no." "That's right, just what I wanted." The black-haired man looked at the blonde who was on the ground. The blonde looked at him curiously. She could tell that unlike demons, this boy did not expel that evil aura that distinguished them. Thought the blonde. The leading demon, just like all the remaining demons, began to expel his aura. The black-haired man was still standing tall in front of them, showing not even small hints or intimidation. "I guess I'll have to kill them," said the black-hair. The 10 demons threw themselves at the black-haired. The black-hair stood where he was. When the demons were close enough, the black-hair held his spear again. Before the demons could notice, the black-hair had already pierced one of them. Surprised, the demons took a huge leap to take distance. The demon that the black-hair had pierced brightly and turned into ashes. "The one who follows," said the black-haired man. Again all the demons threw themselves at him, this time from all possible angles, completely surrounding him. The black-haired swiftly turns his spear, and with a circular blow, with the tip of the spear traits the stomach of each and every one of the demons. From the stomach of the demons a bright white vapor began to come out, and the demons, all of them, fell to the ground writhing in pain. "Arg, damn." The black-haired with a gloomy look slowly approached each of the demons on the ground, and one by one, he stabbed them directly in the chest with the spear, causing the demons to turn into ashes quickly. "You're damned away." The black-hair had already finished with 8, leaving only 2 demons on the ground. One of the demons, the leader, stood up, showing that he was the leader by showing that he could bear the pain, walking quickly. The leading demon came to the blonde and held her neck, pointing a knife that he had in his waist directly to the woman's neck. The black-haired one gnashed his teeth and prepared to attack the demon. Atsusa. Before the black hair could finish, the demon holding the blonde was completely covered in intense purple flames. The blonde took a few steps away from the demon and it quickly turned to ashes. The blonde stared at the demon's ashes as her cheeks reddened and she smiled sadistically, lambia her own lips and played with her hands. "Incinerate Anthem. Possessor of Longinus A. I speak the black hair with a smile. "And who are you?" asked the blonde. "I'm Cao. And you?" "My name is Walburga." After exchanging glances for a few seconds, the black-haired and the blonde sighed. "Arg." They noticed that there was still a demon alive and it was dying. They both went to where the demon got scared and started sweating. I won't kill you, I need you to say something to your leaders. I speak to black hair. Hugh, what is it? Asked the nervous demon. Tell your leaders that warriors of Longinus will not allow them to get away with it. Every time a human is in danger, there we will be. Every time a human with a Longinus is being persecuted, there we will be, and very soon we will kill them. In the face of Blackhair's words, as well as his gloomy gaze, the demon finally fell unconscious. The black-haired sigh and look at Blonde Wing. On the way, the reinforcements are not long in coming, said the black-haired, turning around. But where are we going? Asked the blonde as she followed the young man. Do not worry, you are safe. We will go to our base. There we will be safer and calmer. Base? The black-haired man turned around and looked straight at the blonde before smiling. I didn't tell you, we warriors of Longinus rescued humans. The blonde was a little surprised, but nodded, looking at the ground while smiling. Hours later, both black-haired and blonde were walking through one of the many destroyed and burning cities that had been in the making. The blonde and the black-haired man stopped to rest in some rubble of a building. The black-haired man reached into his backpack and took out 2 bottles of water, gave one to the blonde, while he took his. Thank you, thanked the blonde. For nothing, replied the black-haired. But tell me, where are we going? What does it do? Ito, Waro of Longonos. Haha, Warriors of Longinus. Well, first of all, we go to our base taking into account where we are. I think we will arrive tomorrow at this time. There you will be sure there are others. Longinus holders there. And you're the leader? Asked the blonde. No, I am the second in command. There is someone else. He is that he gathered us all, the thread that we could survive. If he is the leader, explained the black hair. I see, but where? To the city of Kuo, or at least, to what's left of it. With the talk over, the black-haired man put both bottles back in his backpack, put it on, and both set off. Passage no more than 1 hour. Both continued touring the ruins that were by cities, with tranquility, peace. It did not seem that something was going to happen. Wait, I speak the black-haired. What's wrong? Asked the blonde. Hide fast. What? The black-haired pulled Blonde Wing inside a building and hid in some rubble. The black-haired covered the blonde's mouth while hugging her tightly to use as little space as possible and hide his presence. Sorry, but I need you to keep quiet, explained the black-haired. The blonde nodded and stopped struggling. The black-haired man, who was looking through the rubble, noticed the presence of someone who made him surprised and got goosebumps. A large group of demons. They were many, almost impossible to count, but the problem was the demon that was commanding them. A young man who was calm and serene outside, good-looking and with short blonde hair, wore clothes worthy of a nobleman. Was the quintessential human-killing thoroughbred demon, Deodora Asteroth. The blonde commanding the huge group of demons patrolled slowly and suspiciously the place where the black hair and the blonde were hiding. He knows we are here. I speak the black-haired. The black-haired man removed his hand from the blonde's mouth. What will we do? Asked the blonde. Listen to me well, Wahlberga, let's do this. Meanwhile, the blonde man who led the demons looked intently at the building that seemed suspicious to him. Deodora-sama, is something wrong? Asked one of the demons in her charge. Yes, tell everyone to prepare, Before the blonde could finish, he could feel a huge surge of power coming from the building. On guard, exclaimed the blonde. Atsusa Ratana. In front of the blonde leader, the black-haired man appeared. The blonde, not knowing what was happening, was taken by surprise. The black-haired gave a powerful blow with his spear directly to the blonde's head from above. The blonde covered himself, but the blow threw him directly to the ground, causing him to bury himself, causing a large crater. Now Wahlberga, exclaimed the black-haired man. As the black hair fell, behind him appeared the blonde. With a great jump he put himself at the height of the huge group of demons. Taking in a large amount of air, the blonde released a huge blaze of purple fire that engulfed much of the large group of demons. The blonde fell to the ground. The black hair stood in front of her and with his fan spear with all his strength. By the fan of the black hair, from the ground rose a large smoke screen. The blonde, who was inside the crater, recovered and took height, waiting. When the smoke screen finally dissipated, there was no one. Apparently both had already escaped. What are you waiting for? Find them quickly, exclaimed the blonde furiously. Yes, sir. With the blonde's order, the remaining demons scattered to find the 2 who had attacked them. The blonde began to bleed slightly from his mouth, wiped his blood and shook his clothes. They will pay me. I speak to myself. While the demons were looking for those who had attacked them, they were already at a considerable distance. From now on we will hurry the pace. We have to get to Kuo as soon as possible. There we will be safe, spoke the black-haired while they ran. It's okay, replied the blonde. Both hurried their pace even more, and sooner rather than later, night fell upon them. In a small forest they had encountered on their way, these 2 laid to rest. Shouldn't we light a fire? Asked the blonde. Sure, we could also send a signal that says we are here, replied the black-haired sarcastically. I understood funny. With a little difficulty due to the darkness, the black-haired as well as the blonde began to eat a few fried foods that the black-haired man carried in his backpack, and finished them quickly. I don't understand. I speak the blonde. Understand what? Asked the black hair. To the demons, why do they do this? If they want to fight, why do they involve us humans in this? I do not understand it either. However, there's something that I do understand, is that thanks to this power we have, we can survive, fight and avenge those who died for us. Die for us. The black hair turned around. Sorry, I wasn't trying to. No, it's okay. It's just that I don't understand the those who died for us thing, said the blonde. My best friend died for me. The words of the black hair surprised the blonde. By then my parents would already be dead, my father died fighting with the demons, and my mother simply escaped, leaving me alone. However, there was always someone by my side, my best friend. Narrated the black hair. I see. When I woke up as a possessor of Longinus, my friend and I were the only ones who knew. However, people became suspicious and betrayed me. When the demons came looking for me, my friend lied to them, telling them that he was the possessor of Longinus. When they noticed that it was a lie, they killed him. The blonde swallowed some saliva while looking at the black hair. When the demons returned again looking for me, I was scared. However, someone came and saved me, a young brown idiot with a thirst for revenge and power. He rescued me from death. That young man is the leader of your group? Asked the blonde. That's right. When he rescued me, murdering all the demons he encountered in his path, he extended his hand to me and with a smile told me, thanks to this power we have, we can survive, fight and avenge those who died for us. So come with me, let's survive and fight together. He must be a good boy, smiled the blonde. It is. Well, he's an idiot, but thanks to them I understood the purpose of our powers, and I do not plan to let the death of my best friend be in vain. I'm sure he also has his purposes, so why not do it together, Rio the black hair. Every time I want to meet him. Very soon. Well, on the go. The black-haired man stood up, put on his backpack and got ready to start walking. The blonde stood up, following the black-haired. At that moment, a few meters behind them there was a huge explosion and both of them could feel a great demonic power accompanied by an incredible evil aura. They were demons. Run! Shout the black-haired. Both began to run, while various rays of magic passed through their sides. The black-haired looked at the sky, but the rays of magic prevented him from even thinking about jumping or escaping by air. The blonde gradually got tired. After a few seconds of running, both hid behind some trees, waiting for the demons to pass from them and avoid them. To their bad luck, that did not happen. Come out, damn humans. I will kill you slowly, shouted the blonde who led the now small group of demons. What are we going to do? Asked the blonde. Walburga, I need you to burn the whole forest now, replied the black hair. The blonde noticed the seriousness in the blonde's gaze and nodded quickly. The blonde came out of the tree where she was hiding, inhaled an incredible amount of air, and exhaled the biggest flare she had ever released in her life. The incredible flame advanced several meters ahead, burning everything in its path. The intense flames did not take long to begin to burn everything in its path. Damn you, shouted the angry blonde. Let's go, said the black-haired. With the forest completely burned by Walburga's purple flames, the two had enough time to be able to escape. Next morning, after having run all night, the black-haired and the blonde were more than tired. The provisions in the black-hair's backpack had already run out. Fortunately, they were already quite close to their destination, so they were in the mood to achieve it. Kuo City. Once they arrived, the blonde noticed the deplorable situation and state in which Kuo had been left after the conquest of the demons. It was completely destroyed. Unlike other cities, this one seemed to have already been set aside. The destruction seemed to have more time than that of any other place. Where there were supposed to be houses, there was a huge crater that encompassed most of the city. There was a big door, showing signs that it was a school, but there was only the front door. There was nothing where the school building was supposed to be. The blonde just felt a little sorry for the place. Why is this place in such bad condition? Asked the blonde. This place was the first place that demons attacked when they arrived in the human world, explained Blackhair. The first place. Who lived here? Our leader. The blonde, if she was not very surprised, was rather a little sad. I see. Let's hurry, we are already very close. Without further ado, the two set out to continue. After minutes, the black-haired and blonde had already headed towards the mountainous terrain of Kuo City, where there was a lot of vegetation and trees. There were some destroyed areas and craters, as well as places that were noticeably burned. The evidence was clear that a fight had taken place here, the first fight that resulted in human slavery. The black-haired and the blonde continued walking among the trees. Every minute that passed they went deeper and deeper into the forest. Out of nowhere, and surprising the blonde, the two came to a flat lot. It was like a green plot, with flowers of all possible colors in it. The trees surrounded it, and it had a considerable size. We're almost there, said the black-haired. I feel that I like that place very much, Rio la blonde. Aha, I hope so. Both continued to move forward. The emotion in the blonde was already noticeable on her face. She was smiling. But just as they reached the middle of the plot, the black-haired and blonde stopped in their tracks. They began to sweat. The black-hair quickly summoned his spear. The blonde clenched her fists and was afraid to flip. They had felt that same demonic power and evil aura that had been following them for one day now. Turn around, you stupid humans, said someone behind them. When they both turned around, they weren't surprised. It was the blonde, Deodor Asteroth, but this time, he had an army of demons, considerably larger than the previous one. I don't know what they're doing here, but they won't escape this time, said the blonde. Thought the black-hair with relief. What about that rotten attitude? And I even thought you were cute, said the blonde with disappointment. That's how demons are, they all have a rotten personality, said the black-haired. I don't care what some disgusting humans think of me, replied the blonde. Quickly the huge army of demons began to deploy, while the blonde expelled a considerable amount of demonic power from his body. Walburga, take care of the servant demons. Deodora is mine, said the black-hair. Okay, replied the blonde. Out of nowhere, behind the black hair, 7 spheres appeared. Rather, they were 7 orbs. All were identical and slowly rotated behind the back of the black hair. "This time, let's go with everything," exclaimed the black-haired. "Show me what you have, human," replied the blonde. The black-haired man threw himself at the blonde at high speed. The blonde concentrated a great deal of power in his fists, while the spear in the hands of the black hair shone. The blonde released a punch, which the black-haired counterbalanced with the powerful blow of his spear. The spear impact against the fist of the blonde. A powerful wave of expansion was created, which made a small crater below them. Again, the blonde let out another punch. The black-haired dodged it by jumping, and from above he unleashed another powerful blow with his spear. The blonde covered him. The power of the black-haired blow forced the blonde to lower one knee to the ground, and below it a crater was created. The pieces of earth floated, while the power of both overflowed. The blonde spread his wings and took height. "Hatsute Ratana," exclaimed the black hair. One of the orbs of the black hair lit up, and the black hair began to fly until it was at the height of the blonde. The black hair began to turn his spear boldly as he approached the blonde. The blonde tried to see what was coming, but the black hair's rapid movements confused him. Out of nowhere, the tip of the spear was in front of the blonde's face. The blonde tried to dodge, but the tip scratched him. The blonde held the place of the scratch as steam came out of the wound. "Arg, damn, you're just a stupid human. How dare you hurt me?" cried the blonde. "A human who is going to kill you," sentenced the black-haired. Meanwhile, the huge army launched itself against the blonde. The army of demons already had her surrounded, and they were preparing to attack her with everything. The blonde inhaled a large amount of air, and turning around, she released all the air, creating a huge vortex of purple fire around her. The vortex began to grow slowly, and the soldiers did not approach. The only point where they entered was from above. But just as these demons managed to enter the vortex, the blonde received them with powerful blows that threw them into the intense and hot flames that quickly turned them into ashes. With a large number of demons dying quickly, the army rapidly diminished. The vortex disappeared, leaving only a large, but not so much group of demons in front of Blonde Wing, who was smiling as her cheeks reddened. "Come here, I'll be happy to kill you, Fufufu," laughed the blonde as she lipped her lips. With nerves, but rage, the demons rushed at her, only to be quickly burned by the blonde, who was no doubt enjoying this. Meanwhile, the blonde was trying to dodge the quick blows of the black hair. Again, the blonde wrapped his fists with demonic power and hit the black hair. Hatsusa Ratana. The black-haired contempt as one of his orbs lit up, appeared behind the blonde, and pierced him with his spear. The tip of the spear as well as a very large part of it, pierced the stomach of the blonde. The black-haired man abruptly removed his spear from the blonde's stomach, causing the blonde to turn to see him directly. "Madame Kof Puig," said the blonde as he vomited blood. The blonde slowly fell to the ground. Being from that height the fall would hurt, but the black hair had other plans. When the blonde touched the ground, a pool of blood appeared under him. The wound in his stomach began to hurt and steam began to come out of it, but even so, the blonde was still alive. The black-haired man looked directly at him. With a cruel and gloomy look devoid of feelings, he prepared his spear. The black-haired shot at full speed. In an instant the black-haired was already on the blonde. One of the black-hair's orbs began to glow brightly. "Bailinayaka Ratana," exclaimed the black-haired man. With a powerful blow from the black-haired, the blonde, and the ground beneath him, they exploded. A strong wind whipped the whole plot. The blonde paid attention, while the great crater caused by the black hair came out a lot of smoke. From all the smoke, the black-haired man came out, resting his spear on his shoulder as he walked slowly towards the blonde who looked at him with a smile on her face. The backpack of the Black Pelion was already completely destroyed. The Black Pelion had minor wounds. "I didn't think you were that strong," said the blonde. "I am even more, but he always says, if you can escape there is no reason to fight, except when you are surrounded. If escape is not an option, fight with all your strength." "That he says," answered the black-haired. "I'm looking forward to meeting you." When the two prepared to leave, they felt a powerful chill. An incredible demonic power forced them to fall to their knees. They felt the incredible pressure of power, but they quickly stood up and made a huge leap forward back to take distance. When they turned around, the black hair was quite surprised. He was a boy. He appeared to be a little older than Cao Cao. He was very tall. He had short black hair. He wore pants and a black shirt very tight to his body, so you could easily notice his well-developed muscles all over his body. On top of that, he wore a golden vest. It seems that they took care of Deodora. "I speak the black-haired demon." The black-haired demon was not alone. There were two more people beside him, a very beautiful woman with blonde hair and a ponytail. On the other side, there was what appeared to be a child, but wore a hood that did not let his face be seen. "Serorg-sama, they are both humans. They are possessors of Longinus," said the blonde demon. "Really? No wonder they beat Deodora." The black-haired man and the blonde were nervous about having a powerful demon in front of them. "Who is he?" asked Walburga. "It's Serorg, the strongest young demon," Cao Cao replied. "The strongest." While these two were talking, the three demons looked at the crater where Deodora's shattered body was. "Thank goodness, I don't like him." Rio El Palangro. "Serorg-sama, the death of a companion should never be seen as a game. They should die," explained the blonde. "Yes, but you never put yourself in their shoes. It's not like that," replied the black-haired. "What are you talking about?" One day we disturbed their peace. They had nothing to do with our problems, but we still enslaved them for seeking out these possessors of Longinus. But Serog-sama us. So, if we kill humans, that's fine, but if they kill demons, it's wrong. Don't you think it's a bit unfair? While the demons argued, Walburga and Cao Cao thought. What are we going to do? Asked Walburga. I do not know. If it is Serog, the best thing would be to escape. But if we escape now to the base, they will follow us and discover our hiding place. For now we must fight, explained the black-haired. Hey, you too, cried the black-haired demon. Walburga and Cao Cao became nervous and looked directly at them. Cao Cao asked, Don't worry, I don't want to fight with you, explained the black hair. Serog-sama, replied the blonde demon. What are you plotting? Nothing, I just want to show you humans that not all demons are evil. It is not my fault that our rulers enslaved you. I aspire to be a Mao in order to free you. Cao Cao and Walburga were no doubt confused. In all their lives a demon had spoken to them. So, will you let us escape? Asked Cao Cao. No, I want to take them with me, replied Serog. What are you talking about? Asked Walburga. Come with me to the underworld. I will guarantee you security. I will take care of you as one of mine. That's what I'm talking about. It seems that you are not informed, but humans are not wanted in the underworld, much less the holders of Longinus. If we go to the underworld, your rulers will capture us and force us to fight. We do not want to take part in this war that you want to have, Cao Cao explained. I understand, but I am not the only one. There are other demons who oppose another war. There are even some demons who ask humanity to be released, but I do not know what our rulers will be thinking. Even if you say that, I have a place to return to, and I don't plan to abandon my companions, much less him. Who are you talking about? Asked Serog. I'm talking about a friend. My best friend. Walburga smiled as she noticed the seriousness in Cao Cao's eyes and couldn't help but get excited. I see, if so it cannot be avoided, but now that I found them I do not want to let them go, even if it is by force. The black hair launched with all its speed against Cao Cao. Cao Cao braced and threw himself at the black hair quickly. Serog threw a powerful blow, which was surrounded by a strange aura. The black-haired man noticed the strange aura in Serog's fist and covered himself with his spear. Just as Serog's fist hit the spear, Mala Ratana exclaimed Cao Cao. The spear glows brightly like one of the orbs behind him. Serog's powerful blow reflected against him and he was forced to retreat. As Serog dragged her feet backwards, Walburga threw a great blaze of purple fire at her. Serog was taken by surprise and could not dodge. However, in front of Serog appeared a large black and deep hole. It seemed that it had no bottom. The black hole completely swallowed the blonde's flames until there was nothing left. Then the hole simply disappeared. I don't plan to let you hurt Serog-sama, I speak the blonde devil. Thanks for that, Kuisha. Now it was Serog and Kuisha vs. Cao Cao and Walburga. The situation had undoubtedly become very complicated for them. Cao Cao thought as he looked at the boy with the hood. That certainly surprised me. You seem to have some tricks up your sleeve, Serog said. Why are you attacking us? You said that you did not think the same as your rulers, then why? Asked Cao Cao. I told them, I just want to save them, even if it's against their will. I think they're too valuable to be wasted like that. Oh, you have a good heart, Rio Walburga. Are you laughing at Serog-sama? If so, I will have to give you a punishment, replied the blonde demon. Take it as you want. Walburga again launched a huge blaze of purple fire at Serog and Kushia, but again Kushia appeared a large black hole in front of him and swallowed the flames. But this time it was different. Another black hole appeared over Cao Cao and Walburga, and from it came the flames that the black hole had swallowed. Cao Cao and Walburga jumped backwards, dodging the fire and taking distance. From the flames, Serog came out and headed straight for Cao Cao. Cao Cao prepared his spear to strike a blow. Both of them released their punches at the same time. Serog's powerful punch hit the spear. There was a slight wave of expansion, and with sparks flying, Cao Cao shot backwards. Cao Cao quickly recovered and crawled back a few meters. Walburga jumped back to take distance, but Kushia was already ahead of him. With a large amount of demonic power accumulated in her fist, Kushia delivered a powerful blow directly to Walburga's stomach and sent her flying. Walburga was apparently in very bad shape. Cao Cao quickly responded and caught her, and they fell to the ground. Cao Cao gnashed his teeth as he watched the two demons approach him slowly. Out of nowhere in front of them there was an explosion. Apparently someone had landed at an incredible speed. A large crater was created. The debris rose and floated for a few seconds, and a lot of smoke was coming out of the crater. From among the smoke of the crater, you could see the silhouette of someone. Yet they're just in time, don't you think? Cao Cao. Walburga, who did not know what was happening, turned to see Cao Cao. At that moment the blonde was more than surprised. Cao Cao was smiling. About time, Issei, said the black-haired. From the smoke screen he finally came out. A young man with brown hair, brown eyes with a mixture of gold, wore a red shirt, a black vest on top that reached the middle of his leg, a little worn black jeans that were a little tight, with black boots flush with his foot. He also had gloves on that extended to his forearm, and a red scarf. The chestnut tree walked to be in front of Walburga and Cao Cao, but since he had arrived, the smile did not disappear from his face. Oi, it seems that you brought a friend, greeting the chestnut. I just did what you told me. Go out and get Longinus, replied the black hair. The chestnut clenched his fist tightly while having a slight tick in his eyebrow and showed anger. What I said was, go out and get bacon. At the words of the chestnut, Cao Cao went blank. Walburga began to laugh. Aha, that's so stupid, Rio the blonde. The chestnut hit the black-haired man on the head and it was overwhelmed. I told you to look for bacon because Riku and Jean said they wanted to eat bacon, but you go out and you go get Longinus? You're just an idiot. My mistake, but they did not pass me the message well. They told me that you said Longinus. I explained the black hair. Who? Asked the chestnut tree. Leonardo. That idiot cannot even give a message well. While these two argued, the blonde looked at them curiously. By the way, who is she? Asked the chestnut tree, paying attention to her. My name is Walburga. I own the Longinus Incinerate Anthem. I've heard a lot about you, replied the blonde, smiling. I see. My name is Hayato Issei, Demon Killer par excellence, and I look forward to hearing more about you. The blonde reddened slightly and smiled. By the way, what's wrong with that Issei scarf? Asked the black hair. In fact, it is a curious story. I was on my way to my mission, when out of nowhere, the scarf hit my face. I thought what luck, and as I do not carry a backpack I put it on so as not to lose it. We are almost in winter and this will help me a lot. What's the funny thing? Asked the blonde. She was white when I found her. The words of the chestnut to the black-haired and the blonde gave them goosebumps. What are we going to do, Issei? Serorg is here. Serorg? Where? Asked the chestnut. Behind you. The chestnut tree turned around, and I don't look at anything. The crater he had made kept coming out of smoke. The chestnut made a slight hand movement. That single hand movement was enough to cause a considerably strong air current to whip and dissipate the smoke, revealing before the chestnut tree the presence of Serorg and Kushia, without forgetting that of the child behind them. It seems that someone else arrived, said Serorg. I, Serorg, what are you doing here? Asked the chestnut tree. I know you. No, but I do you, yes, the strongest young demon, heir of the Baal clan, pure blood demon, without forgetting, of course, that you did not inherit the power of destruction, but you compensated with pure physical strength, an immense amount of Tauki. If you know a lot about my Rio Serorg, I always try to know things about the people I kill. The gloomy look and cruel words of the chestnut caused Serorg to have a powerful chill. Wait, Issei, he says he doesn't want to fight, Cao interrupted. That's right, I just want to help them, save them. It's not true. The rise in the tone of voice of the chestnut, I call the attention of all. Listen well, Cao, everything he says is a lie. They do not want to help. They do not want to protect us. If so, they would not have enslaved us. If he claims to be against their leaders, then he is a deserter, which is false because I see no signs of recent injuries or battles. They should be in the same state as us if they really thought about saving us. Now that you mention him, it's true, he shows no signs of battle, Cao said. That's because he's still under the orders of his leaders. He just wants to deceive them and then hand them over to Lucifer's bastard. With the words of the chestnut tree, Cao and Walburga stood up and stood behind the chestnut tree. Human, tell me what your name is, said Serorg, looking at the chestnut tree. Hayato Issei, leader of warriors of Longinus, replied the chestnut tree. Warriors of Longinus. Kushia, what is that? Yes, it is a rebel brigade. Many deaths of demons have been carried out under the name of this brigade, as well as multiple slave robberies and multiple concentration camps. Just as today it is attributed the murder of the pure-blooded demon Deodora Asteroth, explained the blonde demon. And Hayato Issei is famous. Yes, never expect to meet the real one, but in the underworld he is well known by his nickname, the Crimson General. His nickname was attributed to him since every time he encounters demons, there is no trace of them, only large lagoons of blood. In some parts he is known as the King of the Massacre. It is certainly a surprise that we come across them. As Kushia finished his explanation, Walburga looked at the chestnut tree with great amazement. It's definitely incredible, said the blonde. The chestnut looked directly at Serorg, who was nothing but surprised. That means it's strong. Yes, but Serorg-sama, you are not going to. Let's fight Hayato Issei, exclaimed Serorg happily. Serorg advanced until he was separated from the chestnut tree by about 5 meters, and they stared at each other. I only have one question, is it true that you don't want to fight? If it is true, replied Serorg, then we're leaving. The chestnut turned around and began to push the black-haired and the blonde. Wait, where are you going? Asked Serorg. It's my motto, if you can escape, there's no need to fight. So let's go. I prefer not to spend more energy, I explained the chestnut without turning to see them. But, do not worry. Serorg as well as Kushia looked at the chestnut tree. The chestnut looked over his shoulder, throwing an intimidating, gloomy and devoid of feelings look. The bones of both shuddered, felt the pressure of the chestnut's gaze. Someday I'm going to kill you. Demon, Serorg swallowed, while looking at Kushia. I will look forward to it. Serorg along with the blonde demon approached the boy behind him, invoking a magic circle. They simply disappeared. The chestnut tree continued to push both until it entered the forest. Let's go quickly. He didn't trust that demon, said the chestnut tree. Yes, the black-haired man began to guide them, while the chestnut and Walburga followed him from behind. And tell me, Issei-chan, do you have a girlfriend? Asked the blonde. The black-haired man he was listening to began to laugh out loud. Shut up, Cao. What happens is that I still do not find the right one. From the words of the chestnut, the blonde smiled broadly. Obviously she was very happy. It didn't take long. Out of nowhere, again, they came to a large plot, but this time it was different. In the middle of the large plot was a large building. It was the Kyo school building. It was Kyo Academy. Next to the building were piles of table benches. All were stacked, forming a large mountain. Outside the building there were many people. You could not count exactly the number, but if they were many, not to mention that there were still more inside the building. All people noticed the presence of Black-haired and Chestnut. A large wave of children rushed quickly against these two. The chestnut tree bent down to receive them, but there were so many children that they threw him to the ground. Oni-chan, how good that you already returned. Why did you leave? Asked one of the children. Riku, don't worry, I had to go out to help this fool who couldn't bring bacon, said the chestnut, pointing to the blackhead with a malicious smile. Kao-nichan, didn't you bring bacon? The truth. I couldn't, because. Damn Issei, don't turn Riku against me, exclaimed the black hair in rage. The children soon noticed Wahlberga's presence, so they threw themselves at her. Who are your One-chan? My name is Wahlberga, but One-chan is fine for me, replied the blonde. One-chan, where did you come from? From far away. Do you know where Kanto is? Because from there. I see, that's far away. The blonde smiled, but noticed the difference between the boys. Blondes with blue eyes, blondes, brunettes and brunettes, browns, hairlines. There were many boys and girls. Issei-chan, all these children are not just from Japan, right? I expected that question. Well, children, as we rehearsed. With the words of the chestnut, the children were separated into 3 groups, all formed very well. This lot here belonged to Europe, this one here comes from America, and these here are from Japan, explained the chestnut with a smile. I see, when you put it like that it is easy to understand. I told them that official. The chestnut tree carried the chestnut child and carried him on his shoulders. Riku, where's the One-chan I brought a while ago? Asked the chestnut. She's inside with Jin-nichan, replied the little chestnut tree with a smile. I see. By the way, Issei, did you say you went on a mission? Exactly where you went? Asked the black hairman who had 2 children in his arms. That's what I want to talk about. But what are we waiting for? Let's go with Jean. Besides, I will give a lesson to Leonardo's idiot. The chestnut got going while the chestnut chibai on his shoulders played with them. As the blonde and the black-haired walked around the courtyard, they all greeted the chestnut and black hair, and dedicated smiles to the new blonde. Good job, Icon, greeting one of the many women. Yuka-san, I'm back. I greet the chestnut with a smile. Yes, welcome. The chestnut, accompanied by the black hair and the blonde, entered the building. The blonde was more than surprised, in addition to the large number of people who were outside in the courtyard. Inside the building there were endless more people, in all what I supposed should be classrooms. Now they were rooms, and there were many people, women, more boys and girls, but for bad luck of the blonde, there were not many men. Issei-chan, why are there so few men? Asked the blonde. That is, because most died protecting all the women. Fortunately they managed to survive long enough to bring them with me, replied the chestnut. Did they bring them? That's right, look by this window. The blonde poked her head out of the window that the chestnut tree had indicated, and noticed a pile of boards embedded in the floor, with distance between them, and each of the boards had names written on them. I see. The 3, while 4 counting the chestnut chibai, continued walking through the building, until they reached a room, in which, above the door there was a small wooden sign that said Operations Room. Here it is, smiled the chestnut tree. Once they opened the door they could see 2 people. The chestnut went towards the youngest of all and gave him a strong blow on the head. You're a fool, because you told Cao to go out and get Longinus, cried the hysterical chestnut. That's what you said, replied the expressionless young man, shaking his head. I said bacon. Bacon. I heard wrong. As though you could confuse your. Wahlberga was laughing as she witnessed the scene, but someone approached her. A young girl with long blonde hair stood in front of him. Unconsciously the breasts of both collided. Wahlberga was surprised, but because the girl stared at her. And who are you? The blonde asked with hostility. I am Wahlberga, owner of the Longinus Incinerate Anthem. The young blonde turned around and went to the chestnut tree, holding her arm and putting it between her breasts while sticking out Wahlberga's tongue. I-chan is mine. Wahlberga asked. Let's leave this game aside, sit down, and present yourselves properly. I speak the chestnut. Once everyone was seated, one by one they began to introduce themselves. First the expressionless young man stood up. My name is Leonardo. I am the owner of the Longinus Annihilation Maker. A taste, spoke the young man, bowing a little. A taste. Then the young blonde stood up. My name is Jean. My sacred gear is Blade Blacksmith, Master Swordsman, descendant of Joan of Arc, fiancé of Hayato Issei. I speak the young blonde, smiling. You a taste, Wahlberga replied nervously. Stop playing, Jean. I speak the chestnut. After that, the chestnut began to look all over the room. Jean, where is the girl I brought a while ago? Asked the chestnut tree. She came out, said she would help. But I should have come back by now, replied Jean. I see, but the chestnut tree was interrupted by the door that was opened, taking everyone's attention. When I saw the door, there, right at the entrance, was a young girl. A beautiful young woman with long blonde hair, beautiful green eyes, white skin, wears a nun's costume, but it was badly worn, destroyed and dirty. Her wrists were injured and showed signs of chains, but she was smiling. Here you are, said the chestnut tree. Yes, sorry for the delay, spoke the shy blonde as she entered. The blonde, upon entering, noticed the presence of Wahlberga. It's your turn to introduce yourself. SC, my name is Asia Argento, and my sacred gear is Twilight Healing. You are nice to meet you. Wahlberga laughed a little as she noticed the young girl's apparent shyness and nerves, and stood up. I am Wahlberga, owner of the Longinus Incinerate Anthem. A taste. Longinus. Then you're like Issei-sen. Walburga, who was a little surprised, looked at the chestnut. "What's wrong?" asked the chestnut tree. "What longinus do you possess?" asked Walburga. "That's secret." "It's true. So far only Cow knows what is the longinus of I Chan I speak Gene. I would like to know which is I," add the expressionless young man. The chestnut just smiled. Minutes later, already everyone in the room was talking as if nothing. The two new blonde girls had already adapted and had a very normal talk in itself. "Asia, aren't you going to tell me how you met Issei-chan?" asked Walburga, looking at the young nun. "I met him just 3 days ago. I do not remember much. The truth, I was locked up, and I only remember that Issei-san came to me and saved me," explained the nun happily. "It's true, they want me to tell you. I speak the chestnut." "Of course," they all replied in unison. "I understand. Then, we will start from when I found this scarf." "Okay, I was walking through the woods somewhere, thinking that when I would come back I would eat bacon, when out of nowhere, boom. The scarf hit me in the face." Flashback. -3 days ago, somewhere in Japan, among a destroyed city that had been invaded by nature. Since it looked more forest than a city, the silhouette of someone running could be seen. He was a young brown man. He was running at a speed above normal, but he had a smile on his face. "I'll eat bacon," shouted the chestnut. After running for a few more seconds, the chestnut stopped in its tracks. Can Cow really get some bacon? As the chestnut man thought, out of nowhere, something hit his face. The chestnut quickly took it off, showing disgust and anger. He looked at his hands to notice that what had hit him was a simple white scarf, which had come to him when blown away by the wind. "What luck," said the chestnut tree to himself. The chestnut slid his hand to his back, to notice that he did not have a backpack. "Forget my backpack." The chestnut looked at the scarf and smiled. Then he put on his scarf. Much better, now underway. Again the chestnut began to run much faster. Hours later, after a few hours, it was already getting a little late. The sky had turned orange, giving indications that it was about to get dark. The chestnut tree continued to travel through the vast forest city at high speed, and his face was determined. Minutes later, the chestnut finally arrived at what he seemed to be looking for. On flat ground in the middle of the forest, which was very strange. There was a not very large construction. The chestnut found it somewhat strange since the construction was clearly a castle. The chestnut tree managed to feel the clear evil aura that the castle emanated, as well as a high concentration of demonic power. But in addition to that, the chestnut could notice that inside the castle, there was something. He did not know very well what it was, but contrary to the aura of the demons, it was pure and innocent, like a ray of light in the darkness. "I guess I'll give it a look." The chestnut tree began to move towards the huge castle gate. "Who are you?" The chestnut tree looked up. Quickly many demons with crossbows, bows, and accumulating demonic power in their body peeked over the door. My name is Hayato Issei. I am the leader of warriors of Longinus. I come to kill them all and take the people who are trapped inside," I explained the chestnut. "Warriors of Longinus?" asked one of the demons. "Boss, it's a rebel brigade. Many demons have died at their hands," replied a nervous demon. "Boss, that boy is the Crimson General. Will kill us all," I add another of the demons. "He the Crimson General." The demon who seemed to be in charge was quite surprised to hear the nickname of the chestnut. Meanwhile, the chestnut made small warm-ups in arms and legs, while showing a slight smile on his face. "Oh, attack!" exclaimed the demon leader. At that time, all the demons with the crossbows and bows, just like those who had a high concentration of demonic power, threw everything against the chestnut tree. Multiple arrows and bursts of demonic power pounced on the chestnut tree, but strangely it was still standing there without moving. The arrows as well as the bursts of power impacted, making a huge explosion. With the big bang, a large smoke screen rose, but the demons were happy. "Did we?" "So it seems." When the demons turned to see their apparent leader, they went blank. The chestnut tree was standing on the wall, with his arm inside the head demon's chest. The leading demon spit blood heaping heaps. The chestnut removed his arm, and the blood began to splash heaps, staining the face and scarf of the chestnut. The white scarf was already very stained with blood and changed to a slightly more reddish tone. "Akabilo!" exclaimed one of the demons. Unexpectedly, the chestnut tree was already in front of that demon, and with a simple direct blow to the chin, the demon's head shot into the sky, leaving his body standing headless. The neck began to squirt blood heaps. It seemed that blood was raining. The chestnut turned around and looked at all the remaining demons. "You continue," said the chestnut tree with a twisted smile on his face. At a simply incredible speed, the chestnut appeared on the other side of the demons. The demons slowly turned around and looked at the chestnut tree. The chestnut's hands dripped blood but could not, and seconds later, all the demons fell to the ground dead. Great rivers of blood filled the ground. The chestnut tree of a jump is completely inside the castle. Many demons were there to receive him, with swords, bows, crossbows, wearing armor. "Finish with him," cried another demon. Without further ado, all the demons threw themselves on the chestnut tree. But the chestnut tree, without any fear or intimidation, stood motionless in place, showing a smile. Without anyone being able to notice, all the demons with bows and crossbows fell to the ground. They were all dead. They were missing limbs, others their heads, and some simply had a big hole in their chest. But the chestnut tree had not moved from its place. All the remaining demons, trembling at the sight of such a scene, began to slowly recede. But without letting them escape, the chestnut killed each and every one of them. With incredible speed, the chestnut hit one straight in the chest and pierced it, quickly went to another and kicked it with all its strength in the stomach. The demon flew out to the wall and completely destroyed it and pierced it. The demons, witnessing this, decided to attack, but hesitated, and that single moment of doubt was enough for the chestnut to attack. The chestnut tree appeared in front of the demon who had given the order for the attack. He held the helmet, that is, the head, and lifted it with all his strength. The chestnut began to squeeze his hand. The demon was dying and tried to make the chestnut release him, but he did not. And then, the head of the exploding demon. More blood splashed on the face of the chestnut, and finally, the scarf that at the beginning was white turned a red color. The remaining demons, the few who remained, had thrown down their weapons and were kneeling on the ground, apparently surrendered. "Oh, please, don't kill us," the demons pleaded. The chestnut tree approached until it was in front of the small group of kneeling demons. The chestnut kicked one of them with all his strength. The demon shot out against the thick door, and destroying the door, the demon's body was completely devastated. "Excuse me, but the demons have no forgiveness." After those words, the chestnut killed each and every demon that had surrendered. Once the chestnut tree had finished off all the demons, he went into what he thought were the dungeons. But unlike what the chestnut expected, these did not appear to be dungeons. There was a large, long corridor, and at the end there was a metal door. The chestnut, still confused, walked down the corridor while waiting for something to happen, but nothing happened, and the chestnut reached the metal door. The chestnut peeked through the bars of the door and could see someone inside. With a powerful punch, the chestnut throws the door. The chestnut entered the room and noticed that the apparent prisoner was just a young girl. The young woman wore a nun's costume, but it was very worn and broken, and had a few blood stains, and had long blonde hair, which was a little dirty. The young blonde, with her beautiful green eyes, looked at the chestnut tree directly, and was so frightened that she backed away until she hit a wall. "Walk away," shouted the blonde with fear as she turned ball. "Relax, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm human," said the chestnut. "Human ... aren't you a demon?" "No, I came to save you." The blonde, hearing the words of the chestnut, began to shed tears while showing a wide smile of happiness. The chestnut tree noticed that she was chained to the wall. The chestnut held the chains and quickly destroyed them. "Who are you?" asked the chestnut tree. "I'm Asia Argento. Before I came here, I was just a simple nun. But the demons captured me and brought me here," replied the blonde. "I see. But how did you get here? There were many demons out there," asked the blonde. "About that, Veras." El Castano did not know how to respond. Once the chestnut helped the young blonde out, the blonde was shocked. The piles of demon corpses on the ground, large pools of blood that were still growing, there were limbs everywhere, blood splattered on the destroyed walls. The nun, seeing this scene, simply faints. The chestnut put the blonde on his back, and carrying her they prepared to leave. When the chestnut tree came out, he turned around and looked at the castle. To the chestnut tree he showed an expression of disgust, and pointed his index finger at the castle. In front of his finger appeared a tiny sphere of red energy. The chestnut hit the sphere with his finger. A torrent of energy shot out inside the castle and made a huge explosion, which destroyed much of the castle. Damn demons. Without further ado, the chestnut tree carrying the nun went into the forest. End of flashback. And that's what happened. Most were a little surprised. The story they just heard was not something they could digest so quickly. However, it seemed that they were already used to it. After I saved her, I brought her here. When she arrived, Jean told me that you had not yet arrived and went out to look for you, explained the chestnut tree. "I see. That's a very good story," Wahlberger said. "It is." The chestnut tree stood up and walked to the door. "Come, it's time to eat." Jean, Cao, Leonardo and so stood up and stood next to the chestnut tree, and with a smile looked at Wahlberger. "Welcome to Warriors of Longinus. We count on you to survive and fight together," said the chestnut while showing a smile. Wahlberger blushed a lot when he saw the chestnut tree, and with a smile he answered, "Yes, take care of me." With a smile, Wahlberger, accompanied by everyone, went to what was once the school cafeteria, where she was widely received by everyone. Wahlberger showed a happiness never seen before in her. It was a new beginning for her. Underworld, Gremory Mansion. In a large and huge room of the huge mansion, the door of the room opened, letting in a demon wearing armor. From the moment the door opened you could see a very long red carpet that reached the throne at the end of the room. On the great throne there was a man seated. He had long crimson hair, blue eyes that stood out in the darkness of the room. He dressed like a nobleman, but he had a cape with golden shoulder pads and peak. Next to him, there was a woman with her hair fastened in silver, dressed as a maid, with a desirable body, large breasts, and very good figure, accompanied with a serious look at all times. "Go ahead, I speak the redhead." The nervy demon walked to the throne and knelt. Lucifer Sama, he the demon who led the group in charge of capturing the possessor of the Longinus Incinerate Anthem. Deodora Astaroth was killed as well as his entire squad. In addition, the sacred gear Twilight Healing that was being guarded in a facility in the human world was stolen, and the entire installation as well as the demons in charge of them were completely destroyed, explained the demon looking at the ground. To Deodora, who murdered him? Yes, his murderer was the bearer of the true Longinus. And who stole the Twilight Healing? Due to the conditions in which the facilities remained, it is believed that the answer was the Crimson General leader of the Rebel Brigade warriors of Longinus. The redhead gave a slight blow to his throne, showing a little rage. Again, that damn human has been stealing a lot of slaves, and now this not only killed Deodora, but also stole the Twilight Healing, said the redhead, showing fury in his eyes. Hell, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, apologized the devil. Grafia, call Riaz immediately. As Surzich Sama says, nodded the platinum movie. The beautiful woman withdrew, and then the redhead looked at the demon. You can withdraw. Yes, if. The demon stood up and quickly proceeded to leave the room. Once the demon left the room, the redhead gnashed his teeth. We have to take care of that annoying human, or else my plans will be in trouble. I speak to himself, the redhead. Then, the door was opened again. The platinum movie entered and was placed again next to the redhead. You called me, Oni-sama? Asked the beautiful young woman standing at the door. She was a beautiful girl. She had a long crimson hair that reached her thighs, long eyelashes, beautiful face, beautiful blue eyes. She had a seductive body, large breasts, with tempting hips. Pasarias. The redhead nodded and quickly approached the redhead. I need you and your group to take care of a problem. It is in the human world. I need you to take care of it as soon as possible, explained the redhead. I understand, but what is it about? Asked the redhead. Have you heard of warriors of Longinus? Yes, it is a rebel brigade of humans who kill demons. Their leader, the Crimson General, is well known in the underworld for causing great terror and massacre wherever he is found. Exactly, that's why I require you and your group to take care of them. Leave as soon as possible. I understand, I will. The redhead bowed slightly and left the room. Surzich-sama, do you really think Ria-sama will make it? Asked the movie platinum with a serious expression. I hope so, but she still distrusted Riaz. She was one of those who were against enslaving humanity. However, she trusted that she will, unless she wants to lose her inheritance, the redhead explained with a smile. Meanwhile, outside the room, the redhead was leaning at the door, with her hands on her chest, and showed a clear disgust in her gaze. Oni-sama, I. The redhead, who showed a gloomy look, prepared to leave, but the expression of disgust was still there. In the large base where many humans were guarded and protected by the Longinus bearers who formed the resistance. Among all the crowd inside the building, there was one blonde in particular. It was Walburga. She walked through the crowd, but every time she passed a room she looked at the sign above the door. Apparently she was looking for something. She continued her apparent search until she finally found what she seemed to be looking for. On the second floor, in the living room at the end of the hall, she stopped in front of that room. The blonde looked at the sign above the door and smiled. The sign read Issei's room. So it's here. The blonde opened the door and was shocked, excited, and very happy. In his room, as indicated, was the chestnut. But it wasn't exactly presentable to anyone. He was already wearing his black pants. His boots were a little badly put on, but there they were. But he had nothing on his torso, which gave the blonde freedom to see as much as she wanted. The blonde was very happy, lambia her own lips while she indulged looking at the naked torso of the chestnut, which was very well marked. It was a torso desired by any woman, but in addition to that she had various scars, nothing exaggerated but if she had several. The chestnut was embarrassed, but maintaining control as he blushed slightly, walked to his bed, took his red t-shirt and put it on, and then looked at the blonde. You know, the doors are for you to knock on, said the embarrassed chestnut man. I'm sorry, Issei-chan, but I thought something like this could happen. I thought to see more, but what I saw is enough for me, replied the blonde. I see. Sorry. It doesn't matter. Whatever. Come on. I said I'd give you a tour. It's true. You said you would show me the surroundings of the base is not like that. That's right. On the go. The chestnut finished putting on his boots, took his black gloves and put them on, then his black vest and put it on. While looking at the red scarf on his bed, the chestnut sighed and walked to the blonde. On the move, said the chestnut tree, motioning the blonde to leave. Won't you wear the scarf? Asked the blonde, pointing to the scarf. No, it's okay like this. As you wish. The blonde walked out of the room, and without taking her eyes off the scarf, the chestnut tree slowly closed the door. After minutes, the chestnut and the blonde were already outside the building and walked around the building. What are we doing here, Issei-chan? Asked the blonde, looking everywhere. I'm going to show you our defense system, patented by me, replied the chestnut, smiling. It is okay. Look around. The chestnut tree pointed to a point between the trees, but the blonde was confused, since the place where the chestnut tree had pointed out was nothing. Issei-chan. There's nothing, said the blonde, looking at the chestnut tree. Wait a bit. Come back at this time, said the chestnut tree as he continued to look at the appointed place. The blonde again looked at the place that the chestnut indicated. Seconds later appeared. It was not specifically human, let alone a demon, but this was a humanoid figure without eyes and was completely black, but it moved like a human. The blonde felt a little surprised and nervous. The humanoid figure caused her a little discomfort. What is that thing, Issei-chan? Asked the blonde. They are sentinels, that's what I call them. They are humanoid forms created from Leonardo's imagination. We use them to watch over the surroundings, replied the chestnut tree. But Leonardo's imagination, how do they do it? It is the power of his Longinus. Oh, I see. Yes, your Longinus allows you to create shapes to your liking. I admit that as they look they seem harmless, but their balance breaker mode is a bummer. The chestnut tree scratched his head and showed a nostalgic expression. Balance breaker? Asked the blonde. That's right, it is the evolved form of the sacred gear Leonardo manifested by creating 2 huge monsters that are very annoying. I see, what about you? Nice try, but that's secret. The chestnut, while laughing, began to point out multiple points around the entire meadow that formed the hiding place. At each point that the chestnut tree pointed out, a humanoid figure, each different from the other, appeared. It's surprising, no wonder they still haven't found them Rio Le Blonde. Safety first. The chestnut man smiled, and as he looked everywhere, he looked at the blonde again. What do you tell me, your Wahlberga, have you already reached the breaker balance? Asked the chestnut. I'm afraid not. If what you say is true, and it's the evolved form, then not yet, replied the blonde. I see, well it doesn't matter, I'm sure you'll very soon. The chestnut stretched out his hand until he put it on the blonde's head and began to caress her. The blonde showed a slight blush while the chestnut man smiled. We're in this together ... aren't we? Asked the chestnut tree. Yes, until the end, replied the blonde. The chestnut withdrew his hand and looking at the building, proceeded to walk. Come on, I speak the chestnut. Yes, the blonde nodded. The blonde began to follow the chestnut. Minutes passed. Wahlberga had separated from the chestnut tree, and the chestnut tree continued its path alone through the building. Every person who looked at the chestnut tree greeted him. Women, boys, girls, the few men who were certainly working, also greeted him. The chestnut stopped in a room, which was full of men who were fixing a wall that was destroyed. The chestnut came in and greeted. Hi, how are you doing? Asked the chestnut. Oh, Issei-kun, all right, replied an older man. Hiro-san, are you almost done? Little missing. They want a little help, said the chestnut tree as he lifted one of his sleeves showing a smile. No, thank you very much, Issei-kun, but it is something that we will do. We owe you too much to ask for help. Hiro showed a fake smile. The chestnut man approached him and pointed his finger at him and tapped him lightly on the chest while he was serious. Hiro-san, I had already told him that you don't owe me anything. If you need help, ask for it, said the chestnut tree. That's not Issei-kun, we don't need help, Hiro replied. So, then we talked, Hiro, guys. The chestnut tree said goodbye and left the room while all the men dismissed him. All right guys, let's finish this today. Yes, with enthusiasm, again all the men continued to work. Warriors of Longinus, Operations Center. The chestnut tree had entered the room that corresponded to him to talk with his companions, in which were Cao, Jean and Leonardo, leaving only Wahlberga and Asia outside. Well, why did you call us Issei? Asked the black hair. Come on, I won't ask you for anything, I just wanted to tell you one thing, replied the chestnut tree as he sat down in the armchair and put his feet on the coffee table. What is it? Asked the expressionless young man, Leonardo. Well, a while ago while I was showing the security system to Wahlberga, I could feel a strange concentration of demonic power very close to here. I just wanted to tell you that I am going out to investigate. Yes, me too, Leonardo added. With the words of the chestnut tree and the expressionless young man, everyone was shocked, but the blonde, Jean, stood up and stood in front of the chestnut tree. Do you plan to go investigate? You're alone. Even not I-chan, I go with you, I speak the blonde with concern. It is not necessary, Jean, in case it is something dangerous. It is best to go alone, to reduce the number of losses. Number of losses. That's right, if something bad happens, the best thing will be that only me dies, nobody else. The blonde lightly hit the chestnut on the cheek. It was a very weak slap, but it achieved its mission. The chestnut was enraged and showed a murderous look while looking at Jean. What do you think you're doing? Asked the chestnut man, expelling a red killer aura. He's sorry, I-chan, I didn't want to, apologized the blonde as she slowly backed away. The chestnut stood up while still expelling his murderous aura. The blonde recoiled but stumbled and shut to the ground. The blonde was trembling as she watched the chestnut approach her slowly. Before the chestnut tree arrived, Cao stepped in and looked at him seriously. Relax, Issei, I speak the black hair. I also think it is very dangerous that you go alone. I think it is a good idea that Jean accompanies you. You don't understand, do you? Asked the chestnut tree as he sighed and relaxed. Ceasing to expel his murderous aura, the chestnut tree sat down again. The one who does not understand. You are your Issei. If you die, what are we going to do? You are the one who managed to gather all these people. You gathered all of us, and I do not know what you think, but I do not want to be the one who tells everyone that you died. The black hair's words made the chestnut feel guilty, so he gnashed his teeth and looked at the black hair again. As you want. I accept the chestnut. Standing up again, the chestnut tree left the room. The black-haired man helped Jean to her feet, and she was still a little nervous. Thank you, Cao-chan, thanked the blonde. It doesn't matter, but don't think badly of Issei. He didn't mean to do it that way, said the black-haired. I know, he just wanted me to stay, but why? I don't know, I'm not sure, but it wouldn't be easy for Issei to lose anyone. That's why I didn't want you to go. I see, but it's frustrating. What's frustrating? Asked the black hair. Not knowing nothing about I-chan, I want to know more about him, who he was in his past. I know him for more than 3 years, but even so I do not know who he is. Don't worry, nobody knows, only the. Minutes later, the blonde and the chestnut were already in what could be the limit of the hiding place. Both had some backpacks. Walking each time and farther from the building, they came to enter a little in the forest that surrounded the prairie, so a sentinel approached them and without any kind of problem this let them continue. Once they crossed a few trees, the blonde went ahead and the chestnut looked behind her. Just a look at a huge crater. It seems that the barrier still works, I speak the chestnut. Without further ado, the chestnut tree continued to walk. Somewhere in Japan. It had already been about 2 hours since the chestnut and blonde had left the base. They both arrived in what appeared to be another city, but like all other cities, this one was in terrible shape. Destroyed buildings, craters in many places, vegetation invading the city gave the impression that this place was more a forest than a city. Entering it, both stopped at some rubble. The chestnut tree took off his backpack and began to search inside it, to take out a bag of chips and 2 bottles of water. The chestnut tree threw a bottle of water at Jean and she caught her. Jean reached into her backpack and pulled out a bag of chips, so they both started eating. Jean, I speak the chestnut. What's wrong, I-chan? Asked the blonde. Well, sorry for a while ago, I didn't want to scare you. No, I understand, I-chan, you were just worried about me, I'm sorry I hit you too. Never mind. The blonde looked at the chestnut tree and the chestnut with his hand indicated him to sit next to him. The tasteful blonde ran and sat next to the chestnut tree. The chestnut hugged her, and the blonde reciprocated while blushing and smiling broadly. The chestnut for his part caressed the head of the blonde. I couldn't bear to lose you, whispered the chestnut. Did you say anything, I-chan? Asked the blonde. No, nothing. I see. After a few minutes, and after they finished eating, these two prepared to go on their way. I-chan, how long do we wear? Asked the blonde. I do not know. Normally we make a journey of about 1,000 kilometers around the base, but I think we already spent a little, replied the chestnut, looking at the surroundings. Then from here the scanning will begin. That's right, on the go. Again, the two set off. Hours later. After a few hours, it still seemed early. The chestnut and the blonde were touring a huge forest, which they already knew, but they only made recognition. After a few minutes of reconnaissance, they arrived again in a city which had one thing in particular. It was that it was not a city specifically, there was a surprisingly huge crater, and in the center of the crater there was a single building and it was buried in the ground, and only about 5 floors were shown. The chestnut looked at the crater and looking at the blonde both nodded. Here is the crater city, said the blonde. That's right, I guess we're already approaching the base. It seems that it was a false alarm, said the chestnut tree heavily, and we came here for nothing. It was not at all. You know what they say, better safe than sorry, Rio the blonde. Yes, it's true, let's continue. It was. The chestnut tree fell silent and began to look at the sky and everywhere. What's wrong, I-chan? Asked the blonde. Again, I feel this strange concentration of demonic power, replied the chestnut. Where? Very close, too. The chestnut tree looked behind him and looked at the forest from which they had just emerged. Jean jumped up and stood next to the chestnut tree. The chestnut tree took a step forward and looked directly at the forest. Quickly the chestnut pushed the blonde back, causing her to fall to the ground. Jean was confused, even more so when she realized that while she fell, the chestnut tree had crouched. The blonde could tell that the chestnut tree had bent down to dodge a sword. The blonde reacted and putting a hand on the ground pushed back and fell into the huge crater. The chestnut tree looked seriously in front of him, for he could see a blurry silhouette of someone standing in front of him. The blurry silhouette took shape until he became a boy, with short blonde hair and blue eyes, with a distinctive mole on his left cheekbone. Surprisingly, the chestnut noticed that the blonde wore the male uniform of the Kyoto school, so he got a little confused. The blonde, for his part, created a sword in the hand that he had free and prepared to attack the chestnut again. The brown stopped the cut of the blonde with his hand. The blonde was very surprised. The chestnut jumped and propelling himself with the blonde's chest, the chestnut kicked him and went into the huge crater behind him. The chestnut landed without taking his eyes off the blonde, and when touching the ground, the blonde appeared again in front of the chestnut. Even though the blonde had suddenly appeared in front of him, the chestnut showed a smile as he looked the blonde in the eye. The blonde again tried to cut the chestnut. This time, the elusive chestnut boldly and prepared his fist. The blonde put both swords in front of the chestnut's fist, hoping to stop the punch, but to the blonde's misfortune, the power of the blow was overwhelming, destroying the swords. The punch hit directly against the blonde's face and flew backwards. The chestnut jumped back, and in the place where the chestnut was, surprising the chestnut, a little lightning fell where he was. The blonde appeared again in front of the chestnut and again tried to cut the chestnut. This time, the chestnut didn't respond, and kept staring straight ahead. Just before the blonde's sword cut the chestnut, it was blocked by another sword. Jean appeared behind the chestnut tree and blocked the blonde's sword. The blonde was shocked and jumped back, taking a considerable distance. The wind began to blow. The brown and blonde stared at the blonde in front of them. Well, where are the other demons? Asked the chestnut tree. Wow, said the blonde in amazement. To tell the truth, they're a little behind, but they're already here. The blonde was smiling as he spoke, so the chestnut man got a little angry. The chestnut looked up and could notice, as 4 other silhouettes with their wings extended landed on the sides of the blonde. While the chestnut was not very surprised, he was somewhat confused. There was a young girl with bright crimson hair. They were so long that it reached her thighs. She had a seductive body and desired by any man. She also had a pair of beautiful blue eyes. Next to the redhead stood another girl. This one had a subtle tone of brown skin, had a ponytail so long that it reached her knee. Her hair was held by an orange ribbon. On the other side, there was a girl, not very tall actually. She seemed to be a girl, however she had an expressionless face, short gray hair, bright yellow eyes. Her hair had a cap brooch. But to the surprise of the chestnut, each and every one of the apparent demons wore the uniform of the already destroyed Kyo Academy. All the demons stared at the chestnut tree. The chestnut on his side had his hand on his chin while thinking. "Ai-chan, these are the demons you felt?" asked the blonde. "That's right, they are," replied the chestnut tree. Again the chestnut turned his gaze to the redhead. To the surprise of the chestnut, the redhead stared at him, and it was not only her, all the demons looked at him. "I feel I've already seen it," whispered the chestnut. The chestnut kept staring at them. Everyone exchanged glances with the chestnut, so they stayed for a few seconds. Then, there was a wind wave considerably stronger than normal. "Achoo," sneezing the chestnut. "Ah, are you okay, Ai-chan?" asked the blonde as she worried about the chestnut tree. "Yes, I should have brought the scarf." As this passed, the demons in front of him sighed. "Is something wrong?" asked the chestnut man, directing his gaze to the redhead. The redhead shook her head and then, for the first time, proceeded to speak. "Nothing happens, it's just that. I think you're not the one we're looking for," I speak the redhead. "Oh, that caught my attention. Can I know who they are looking for?" asked the chestnut. "We are looking for the human demon slayer, the Crimson General." "Oh, if that's it, they just found it, it's me." The demons were confused for a few seconds. Looking at the blonde, he nodded and looked at the chestnut tree in surprise. "Are you the Crimson General?" asked the redhead. "The same," replied the chestnut tree. "Ai-chan," said the blonde, "I guess you didn't manage to push Kiba back for nothing." "Kiba, are you talking about that pretty boy?" The redhead stepped forward and, showing authority, looked at the chestnut. "My name is Rias Gremory, heiress of House Gremory, and they are all my servants," I speak the redhead. "Yes, I know you," said the chestnut tree. "Mao Lucifer's sister, didn't he?" The redhead was a little surprised, and then nodded. "However, I'm a little surprised, Rias Gremory. I didn't expect you to have on your side." The chestnut turned his gaze to the lowly Peli Platina Yuna Nekomata. The lowly Peli Platina became nervous as she began to sweat. And to a fallen angel the chestnut looked at the brunette. The brunette clenched her fists while biting her lips. "I do not allow you to insult my servants, Crimson General," the redhead spoke, expelling her aura in rage. "Hey, it wasn't an insult, I just said. But it's a shame." The chestnut looked at the brunette again. "If you were only a fallen angel I would let you live, but you're half demon, aren't you?" The brunette looked at the chestnut with a scared face. The brunette's body was enveloped in many lightning bolts. "So you're the lightning one, eh? I guess it doesn't matter," sighed the chestnut. "I'm tired of this." Kiba just indicated the redhead. In front of the chestnut, the blonde appeared again. Jean managed to react, but the chestnut told her not to do anything. The blonde was prepared to cut the chestnut directly to the face. The sword hit successfully, or at least that's what everyone thought, since many chips had come out, but it was not like that. The chestnut had stopped the cut with his mouth, and while biting the edge of the sword, he stared at the blonde with a murderous look. The blonde became nervous, and as a bead of sweat ran down his cheek, he said, "Impossible." The brown strongly kicked the blonde in the stomach and sent him to fly back. The blonde recovered but was dragged back until he was a few steps in front of the redhead. The chestnut shattered the sword with his teeth, and then I look at Jean. "Jean, take care of it. The others are mine," indicated the chestnut. "Yes, Ai-chan, solo." The blonde summoned 2 swords, one of fire and one of ice. "Be careful." "That's it," said the blonde, surprised. "I bet you didn't expect me to have a swordsman on my side, did you?" The redhead gnashed her teeth, and together with all her entourage, took a step forward. "I didn't want to have to do this, but if I don't, Oni-sama will take away my inheritance. Besides insulting my servants, that's just unforgivable," said the redhead, covering herself in a cloak of red aura. "I suppose there is no other, but..." The brown eye looked at the redhead. "Rias Gremory, are you sure of this?" That is, before anyone could notice, the chestnut was already in front of the redhead. No one, absolutely no one noticed, not even Jean, who arguably should be used to it by now. Not even she could keep up. The chestnut pointed at the redhead, and while lightly touching in front of Rias with his finger, "Rio, you are very unprotected." The redhead reacted and jumped back. The lowly Peli Platina jumped against the chestnut and released a powerful blow. However, the chestnut saw the punch coming against him as if he were not a threat. The chestnut stopped the blow of the lowly with a single finger. The lowly was confused. She was sweating a lot, and her eyes were wide. The blonde threw himself at him, while summoning 2 swords, but before he arrived, Jean appeared before him and threw herself against him. A quick exchange of cuts happened in less than 1 second. Many sparks came out of the collision, and both, the blonde and blonde, took distance. "I won't let you get close to Ai-chan," said the blonde as she stood on her guard. "I must admit that I didn't expect anyone else to have the same ability as me, but I guess humans can be very unpredictable, can't they?" replied the blonde as the swords in his hands disappeared. The blonde created 2 new swords, which had exactly the same attributes as those of the blonde, fire and ice. As they both smiled, they collided heavily against each other, and many sparks came out as the wind whipped hard. For his part, El Castano was dodging with ease the multiple blows that Al Loli threw. Dodging a right, the chestnut appeared behind the lowly, with his finger touched her on the back of the neck and she fell to the ground. The chestnut then made a great jump, and again where he was, a lightning bolt fell. This time, the chestnut threw itself against the brunette. The brunette was surprised and threw multiple lightning bolts at the chestnut, but he simply evaded them all and appeared in front of the brunette while showing a smile and murderous look. "It's time to sleep," said the chestnut tree. Throwing a powerful blow, the chestnut man smiled while the brunette resigned herself to receiving him. Just before the blow hit, the chestnut stopped a few centimeters from the brunette's face. A strong wind whipped against the face of the brunette and she fell to the ground on her knees. The chestnut looked at the redhead, and she had a high concentration of demonic power in her hands. Looking at the chestnut seriously, she threw a burst of power at him. The chestnut kicked the brunette and she flew backwards. Then the chestnut looked at the gust of power coming towards him, but he was smiling. The chestnut prepared his right fist. This began to glow a red color, and the veins of his arm began to skip a little. The burst of power was already in front of the chestnut. The chestnut released his powerful punch and hit the burst of power and sent it flying towards the brunette. The brunette could not react and looked at the gust of being able to come towards her. Before the power collided with the brunette, the blonde appeared and held her hands, and both fled quickly. The power hit the ground, and a large crater was created, but there was no explosion, only smoke came out of the crater. Taking a considerable distance, the redhead and her entourage looked at the chestnut tree with nerves and sweat on their faces. For his part, the chestnut tree was serious with Jean by his side. "I never get used to seeing you fighting," said the blonde while sighing. The redhead was confused by the tremendous power of the chestnut. Looking at her servants, she proceeded to speak. "Is everyone okay?" asked the redhead. "Yes, but that human is very strong," replied Loli, looking at her fist. "I can't believe there are humans with such power," added the brunette, rubbing her stomach. "Well, not for nothing has he earned his title as the Crimson General, Demon Slayer," sighed the blonde. While the redhead's entourage spoke, the chestnut stepped forward. Quickly the whole Sakito and the redhead were on guard, expecting anything from the black hair. Wrapping her body again with a red aura cloak, the redhead stepped forward. "Well, I guess it's time to end this, I speak the chestnut." The redhead felt nervous, but still erected and remained on guard, while her whole entourage was prepared. The chestnut took off his backpack, put it in front of him, and sitting on the ground, he began to look inside the backpack. "I-chan ... what are you doing?" asked the blonde. "Wait a bit," replied the chestnut tree as he continued searching. After a few seconds, the chestnut tree seemed to have found what it was looking for. The chestnut man smiled, stared at the redhead, and said, "You demons may have magic, but we humans have." El Castano took out an AK-47 from his backpack. This surprised everyone a lot, since they never expected that he had that in there, much less that this weapon could be found inside that small backpack. "We have weapons." Ha. While laughing hysterically, the chestnut pulled the trigger and jumped the volley of bullets against the redhead. But this weapon didn't seem to cause any kind of threat, the redhead sighed. Putting her hand forward and naturally, the redhead invoked a magic circle and this blocked all bullets. After a few seconds, the cartridge of the AK-47 was completely empty. The redhead removed the magic circle and on the ground there were many bullets. The blonde, Jean, stared at the chestnut tree while clenching her fist tightly and had a slight tick in her eyebrow. The chestnut turned to look at Jean, and as he showed confusion, the chestnut began to laugh while scratching his head. "I do not pass as I imagine Rio the chestnut." The blonde lightly tapped the chestnut tree on the forehead with her finger and began to scold him. "You said it yourself. We have weapons, but they have magic, do you understand?" "Magic," shouted the blonde. "Sorry." While the blonde scolded the chestnut, the redhead and her entire entourage looked at them with a drop on their head. How could it be that such a playful boy is beating us up? The redhead asked herself as she shook her head. "Besides, I-chan, how the hell could you keep an AK-47 in your backpack?" asked the hysterical blonde. The blonde's question caught the attention of the demons and they looked at the chestnut tree. "They keep wings who knows where and you ask me how to keep an AK-47 in my backpack," replied the chestnut while pointing to the redhead. "But they have magic," exclaimed the blonde. "A magician never reveals his secrets." The chestnut crossed his arms while looking away. The blonde was angry, but resigned himself to stop asking. "Well, what do you plan to do now?" asked the blonde. "I honestly thought the gun thing would finish them off," said El Castano. "You're an idiot. But hey, since this is a special occasion, and because we're dealing with Mao Lucifer's sister, I think I can take the trouble to fight seriously." The chestnut took off his black vest, handed it to Jean, and as he expelled a red energy in large quantity, the chestnut began to walk towards the redhead. The energy that the chestnut began to expel out of nowhere forced the redhead and all her entourage to take even more distance than they already had, showing very high discomfort, and as they began to sweat, the demons began to tremble as they watched the chestnut tree walk towards them. "Riaz Gremory, if I kill you, your brother will have to come and get me, won't he?" asked the chestnut tree. "Yes, he will come looking for you and kill you," replied the redhead. "Very nice." The chestnut tree disappeared. The redhead opened her eyes like saucers, after noticing that the chestnut tree was in front of her, this attempt to react, but it was too late. The chestnut unleashed a powerful punch. His fist was wrapped in that powerful red energy, and he went straight to the redhead's face. The chestnut stopped his blow, and only a few millimeters from his fist, the edge of a sword step. The chestnut looked at the blonde, who had appeared next to him and tried to cut him. With the hand he had free, the chestnut fastened to the blonde's shirt and whipped him to the ground with force. The chestnut gave a deadly forward, intending to hit the redhead with his heel. Before the chestnut heel hit the redhead, the loli appeared. Putting both arms on her head, she stopped the blow of the chestnut. However, the blow was very strong, and Loli's feet were buried in the ground. The chestnut floated for about 1 second and then showed a smile. The chestnut's hands began to expel flames. The chestnut began to turn, and with the force of its turn, a great cyclone of fire was created. But this fire had something peculiar. It was a bright crimson color. Enveloping the redhead, the loli, and the blonde, the cyclone dragged them a few meters backwards. The chestnut tree stood watching as the cyclone dragged the demons. The chestnut tree stepped back as he closed his eyes, and lightning fell in front of him. The brunette looked at him from a considerable distance. The chestnut looked at the brunette, and showing an expression of sadness, the chestnut shook with his hands. The brunette fell to the ground on her butt, began to tremble as she slowly backed away, since in front of her was the chestnut. The speed of the chestnut tree was extremely overwhelming. The brunette stopped and looked fearfully at the chestnut tree. The chestnut bowed until he was face to face with the brunette. "It's a pity, if only you weren't a demon," said the chestnut tree while denying it. "But," the brunette hesitated. "I know you think to say something like I'm only half demon, but that doesn't matter. Even if a single drop of your blood is from a demon, that makes you my enemy." The chestnut stood up, showed a cold and unfeeling look as he covered his body with an intimidating mantle of red energy. "Die," sentenced the chestnut. Despite having threatened, the chestnut remained motionless for a few seconds. The chestnut sighs, and then I look up. The chestnut unleashed a powerful kick, but this did not hit the brunette, but passed over her head. The kick hit someone's arm, which surprised the brunette. The brunette looked over her shoulder and was shocked. Behind the brunette, there was a tall man, with short black hair and wearing black clothes that marked his musculature. Sarog Bale had appeared. The chestnut kept looking seriously at the black hair. The black-haired one who was holding the chestnut's foot showed a very wide smile. The chestnut jumped, and with his other leg tried to hit the black hair again. The black-haired blocked the kick with his other arm, but again, the chestnut wrapped his hands in flames. The chestnut smiled, and pointing at the black hair, the flames engulfed the black-haired. The chestnut broke out of the grip, touched the ground, and quickly backed away a few meters. Well, look what we have here," I speak, the chestnut showing disgust. The flames engulfing Sarog went out, and the black hair was enveloped in a rare white energy that covered it. The redhead and the rest of her entourage approached the brunette, who had not moved a single inch. The redhead, blonde, and Loli were injured, their clothes were burned, and they had severe burns on their bodies. Standing up, the redhead next to her entourage and the black-haired looked at the chestnut. "So that's the famous Tauki you're so proud of," I speak, the chestnut laughing. "That's right, but what do you tell me? What is that energy that surrounds you?" asked the black-haired. "I'm sure that since you're a demon, you can see this red cloak that wraps around me." Sarog nodded as the chestnut pointed to his body. "But don't worry, Sarog, it's not some kind of strange power, it's just El Castano Rio." The incredibly intimidating mantle of red energy that enveloped the chestnut tree grew abruptly, and the black-haired as well as the redhead and her entire entourage were shocked. "It's just my murderous aura." The black-haired man smiled forcibly upon hearing the words of the chestnut, and was nervous. "Sarog, what are you doing here?" asked the redhead. "Venelana sent me," replied the black-haired. The redhead was quite surprised to hear the answer of the black hair. However, the chestnut, who was looking at them from afar, was also surprised. "Mother sent you." "Why?" asked the redhead. "She found out that Sirzat sent you to fight with the Crimson General, and with much concern she told me to come and support you," replied the black-haired. While these two were talking, the chestnut tree stepped forward, which caught everyone's attention. "You just said Venelana, didn't you?" asked the chestnut tree. "Yes, I said so," replied the black-haired. The chestnut man squatted down and scratched his head, then slapped his forehead and smiled. "Did I know that I had seen you before Ria's Gremory? I see that the genes of Venelana are stronger than those of Lord Gremory." Everyone was shocked as the chestnut tree laughed. "Do you know my parents?" asked the nervous redhead. "That's right, I met them 8 years ago," replied the chestnut. The revelation surprised everyone. "Ai-chan, is that true?" asked the blonde, holding the chestnut shirt. "Yes, a miracle had to happen for me to survive," the chestnut tree replied earnestly. "Did you fight with my parents?" asked the redhead. "It was a long time ago, it's not worth discussing the past." The chestnut wrapped himself again in that intimidating cloak of murderous aura, and smiled. "Now that Sarog is here, I cannot continue playing with you. I am afraid I will have to delete them." The redhead became nervous, thought the redhead. With a big smile on his face, the chestnut pointed at everyone, pretending that his hand was a gun. A small sphere of red energy appeared in front of the chestnut's finger, and it grew to be the same size as his hand. The redhead and her entourage were curious about what the chestnut was going to do with that small amount of energy. Boom! River the chestnut. The sphere of energy transformed into a huge torrent of red energy that expelled rays of the same color. The incredibly huge torrent of energy surprised everyone. "Aside Rias," exclaimed the black-haired man. The redhead was swathed to the side, as was her entire entourage. The black hair covered his body with a large amount of tauki, and putting his arms forward, he set out to stop the torrent of energy. The torrent of energy impacted against the hands of the black hair. The black hair was dragged back several meters. After a few seconds, the black-haired man increased the amount of tauki, and holding the torrent of energy as if it were a paper, disintegrated it while extending his arms. The energy overflowed and began to splash everywhere as if it were water, unlike that every time the splashes of the torrent touched the ground, it made an explosion. However, the black hair showed a great surprise in its gaze. Among all the smoke and energy that was in front of him, among all that, the chestnut tree was there. Taking everyone by surprise, even the blonde was surprised, as she hadn't noticed the moment when the chestnut tree moved. The chestnut went straight to Sarog, and with a powerful blow directly to the face, made him back as he crawled and bent back slightly. The black-haired man recovered quickly and watched the chestnut man come towards him. Showing a wide smile on his face, the black-haired one threw himself equally against the chestnut. Suddenly appearing in front of each other, both of them unleashed their powerful punches hard. The black-haired man was pleased, while the chestnut was still serious. Both fists collided. An incredible wave of wind whipped and dissipated the smoke around them, letting everyone see their intense battle. The redhead watched these two fight, with surprise, since for her, it was the first time she looked at someone capable of matching Sarog. The blonde, on the other hand, showed concern, invoking two swords, this one prepared for anything. The chestnut jumped back, taking a few meters away. The black-haired one was waiting for him and smiling. The chestnut pounced on him and threw a strong kick. The black-haired bent back and dodged the kick. Using the momentum of his own kick, the chestnut turned and kicked heavily the chest of Sarog with his other leg. The black-haired man was surprised. He was dragged several meters back. When looking in front of him, the chestnut received him with a powerful direct blow to the chin. The black-haired man was forced to bend back hard. Again the chestnut made a deadly forward, and with his heel hit Sarog's stomach hard, causing it to bury itself forcefully in the ground. A thick smoke screen rose, preventing everyone from seeing what was happening. Seconds passed, and nothing happened. Suddenly, the black hair flew out backwards while shuffling its feet and out of the smoke screen, and made a huge leap backwards. The smoke screen dissipated, and slowly walking towards Sarog, the chestnut tree showed seriousness. The black-haired wiped the blood coming out of his mouth, and looking at his own blood smiled. "It's been a long time since I looked at my own blood. You are certainly very strong, Hayato Issei." Rio the black-haired. "Very soon you won't be able to see anything, just wait." Rio El Castano. "I want to ask you, Hayato Issei, if I keep fighting, will you let them go?" Rias. "No, after you, they follow." The chestnut pointed to the redhead and her entourage, and these were put on guard. "I see. Just because it seems that you really want them to live, I will kill them quickly, so that they do not suffer again." The chestnut tree. The chestnut continued its march towards Sarog, while increasing its speed. The chestnut tree disappeared. Sarog disappeared. And surprising everyone, an incredible ripple of expansion emerged in the middle of everyone. Small craters were created all over the ground, but except for the blonde, the others could not keep up and only looked on in surprise. Out of nowhere, the blonde of Ria's entourage disappeared, seeking to be a support for the black-haired man. However, the blonde, Jean, did nothing, and while she was confident, she restrained herself so as not to go to help the chestnut. There was an incredible explosion. A large crater was created, many sparks came out, and reappearing. The blonde dragged his feet while he kept backing away. The black-haired man appeared and showed a smile, but he had slight wounds on his arms and face. Appearing in front of them, the chestnut tree looked at them with complete indifference and seriousness, as if he did not take much importance to them. The chestnut retreated a little, until he was a few meters in front of the blonde, and showing a smile, the chestnut spoke to the blonde. "Jean, may I ask you to give me a sword?" The blonde was a little surprised, but soon nodded. Jean created a new sword. This was a katana, with a black hilt with red decorations. The blonde threw the sword to the chestnut tree and he held it with his right hand. "I guess it's a little harder to use," said the chestnut tree as he thought. "I'll just pretend it's a knife." The chestnut holds the sword, pointing the edge down, and pointing at the blonde, smiled. "You were called Kiba, isn't it? Come on, let's have a duel." "A duel? You're just a beginner," smiled the blonde. "Are you sure?" "What is it that I feel? Is it fear?" The blonde felt a little angry, and summoning a single sword, he began to walk towards the chestnut. "You demons get angry very easily," laughed the chestnut. "We only have your duel. It will end with a single blow, I speak the blonde. And let you say it." While smiling, the chestnut began to walk, dragging the edge of the sword on the ground, while moving forward. Thought the blonde. Both disappeared, and appeared again in front of each other. The blonde jumped and began his cut from above, while the chestnut stared into his eyes. The chestnut tree began its cutting from behind, and began to cut the ground. The cut of the blonde was faster, and almost cut the chestnut, so the blonde had a slight smile on his face. Out of nowhere, the blonde's sword broke into pieces. The blonde was shocked, as he didn't know what had happened. After a thousandth of a second later, the blonde noticed that the chestnut had already finished his cut, and showed a smile. The katana of the chestnut was still intact. The chestnut took advantage of the momentum of his cut, and using the impulse, twisted and kicked with his leg strongly the chest of the blonde. The blonde spit out blood and flew out forcefully backwards, and without recovering was dragged on the ground. The chestnut tree touched the ground and began to spin strongly, so much so that a small cyclone was created around it. The chestnut threw the sword. It was surrounded by a crimson fire, while red lightning covered it. The speed of the launch was extremely overwhelming. The direction of the sword, the redhead, although she had not responded, yet did not know that the swift sword was coming towards her. The sword was stopped a few millimeters from the redhead's chest. A strong wind waved the redhead's hair hard. The ground behind Ria's was destroyed, and she reacted seconds later, only to fall to her knees to the ground while sweating heavily. Sarok had stopped the sword, squeezed his hand tightly, and destroyed it. However, he did not emerge unharmed. His hand was bleeding and he had severe burns, in addition to having his entire arm numb. The chestnut showed a smile while sighing. I must admit, I thought that would kill Ria's Gremory. I speak the chestnut. I also thought about it for a few moments. Rio el Palangro. Well, what are they going to do? Kiba is out of combat, and Ria's Gremory, well, what to talk about? The chestnut looked at the redhead. The redhead was on the floor, hugging herself while shaking and sweating. The other members of her entourage tried to comfort her, but she was still afraid. I guess you're too much for her, sighs the black hair. Well, the chestnut River Jean. The blonde approached the chestnut, and he hugged her, which surprised the blonde. What are you doing, I-chan? Asked the blonde blushingly. The chestnut raised the blonde's face, and showing a smile, briefly kissed the blonde's forehead. The blonde was paralyzed. The chestnut took his black vest from the blonde's hands and put it on. Jean, I want you to leave, said the chestnut. The blonde was surprised. That you speak, I-chan, I cannot abandon you. I will not go, refuted the blonde. I ask you as a favor. I don't want to. Jean, I don't want anything to happen to you, and believe it or not, Sarog, you're not using all your power. The blonde was surprised again. Aren't you using all your power? Asked the blonde. No, I don't know what you're waiting for, but it's not all your power, replied the chestnut. But, I ask you. No, the chestnut tree was surprised. I don't want you to die. If you die, it would be like me dying. So I'll stay. I'm going to support you. Remember, we're in this together. The chestnut dedicated a smile while kissing the blonde's forehead again. Thank you. The chestnut stepped forward, and looking at the black hair, he prepared to go towards the. Surprising everyone, in the middle of everyone, fell a strange spear that glowed brightly purple, but was very bright. A spear of light. Asked the black hair. It won't be. You're in trouble again, Issei. A female voice was heard, so Sarog was a little surprised, but the chestnut showed rather an expression of disgust. The chestnut put his hands on his waist. What are you doing here? Asked the chestnut tree while sighing and looking up at the sky. Rainair. Flying in the sky, with a pair of black angel wings, was a girl who was very attractive and voluptuous, appeared to be a little older than the chestnut, with beautiful violet eyes. This beautiful black hair wore leather straps around and under her breasts, leather gloves that almost reach her shoulders with small chains hanging from them. Black shoulder pads. The right shoulder pad has 3 peaks and black-heeled boots that reach the thighs. The black hair landed less than a meter in front of the chestnut tree and showing a big smile, approached and touched the chestnut's chest with one finger. Aren't you happy to see me? Asked the black-haired woman with a smile. It's not that I'm not happy, it's rather that I'm surprised, replied the chestnut. King Chan, stay away from Issei, growled the blonde as she pulled the chestnut tree back and hugged him. As always, Jean is still very jealous, Rio the black-haired. Do you have any problems? No, none. As these two spoke, the chestnut sighed. Well, what are you doing here, Rainair? Asked again the chestnut. Azazel sent me to ask you if you are ready to come from our side. By the words of the hare, the redhead reacted and stood up. Is the Crimson General on the side of the fallen angels? The redhead asked nervously. It's a misunderstanding. Ria's Gremory denied the chestnut they want me to join them, but I, as at this moment, refuse. Py, if I am going to destroy all the demons, I will do it alone. Humans have a pride to protect. It's always the same with you, said the black-haired. If you know, I don't know why Azazel keeps sending you, sighed the chestnut. I keep coming because I want to see you, replied the black-haired. I know. The black-haired put on the side of the chestnut, and the blonde put on the other side. Issei, why aren't you done with them? Asked the black-haired. That's because when I was going to do it, you arrived, growled the chestnut. Sorry, but, Ria's Gremory, it's a very important demon. Besides, that one over there is Sarorg, isn't it? That's right. I thought that if I killed them, Lucifer or any other Mao would come looking for me, and then I could kill them. Well, I can't deny that it's a good plan. Advancing one step, again the chestnut tree began to expel an immense amount of energy, which made everyone nervous, without exception. Take it easy, Issei, said the black-haired. When it comes to demons, I have no mercy, replied the chestnut. Surprising everyone, in front of the redhead and well, in front of all the demons, a magic circle appeared, which indicated to the chestnut tree that time was up. Thank you, Rainair, I wanted to finish before she came, said the chestnut looking at the redhead. Sorry, it was not my intention. Sorry, Rainair. But she. Who are you talking about, Issei? Asked the blonde. Venulana. The one who left the magic circle wore a clean and impeccable white dress with gold decorations and embroidery of red flowers. The dress reached a little below her knees. She had white gloves that reached her elbows, in addition to having white heels with white tights. This woman was identical to Ria's, unlike the hair was shorter and brown in color. The apparent mother of Rias, when leaving the magic circle, approached her daughter and began to check her body. I'm glad you're alive, I speak the chestnut. Well matter, said the redhead. The chestnut looked at all the nobility of Rias, noticing his wounds and condition, as well as noticing that the blonde was out of combat in the distance. Besides that, he was surprised to notice that Sarorg was wounded. Thank you, Sarorg, for saving my daughter, thanked the chestnut. No, I did it with pleasure. It's been a long time since I fought with someone stronger than me, replied the black hair. Where is he? Right there. The chestnut turned around and stared at the chestnut tree. Both exchanged glances for a few seconds. The pressure that was exerted from their exchange of glances made more than one nervous. How long, Venelana? I speak the chestnut. Hiauto Issei. I thought you had died that time, replied the chestnut. That's what I thought. Then why are you here? Besides, you are the Crimson General. Is it so surprising? No, to tell you the truth, I think I sensed that you were your. The chestnut pointed his finger at the chestnut, and the chestnut put his hand forward. The chestnut tree began to accumulate energy in front of his finger until it formed a sphere the size of his hand. The chestnut, on the other hand, wrapped his entire body in an overwhelming amount of red aura, which levitated the debris of the ground. Mama, be careful, you laugh. He is not a man you can deal with easily. I am surprised that you survived until Sarorg arrived, I speak the chestnut. Do you recognize this human as an adversary? Asked the redhead. I do, he probably doesn't. That can't be. The last time we met, he was just a child. Even so, he managed to make your father back down. We had to join forces to defeat him, and yet, here he is. But the chestnut signaled everyone to back off, and everyone nodded. Meanwhile, the chestnut tree showed a smile, while Venelana looked at him with disgust. You still have the same bad habits. Hiauto Issei, I speak the chestnut. Maybe that's how it looks, Venelana, but El Castano Rio, I'm not the same as 8 years ago. The small sphere grew to take the size of the chestnut. The chestnut showed a serious expression, a sharp look, full of hatred, which surprised the chestnut. If I finish with Lucifer's mother, he'll have to come, won't he? From the chestnut's finger, an overwhelmingly huge torrent of crimson energy shot out. Red lightning radiated from the torrent. A thick and deep line was created all over the ground that the torrent traveled. The chestnut created a thick barrier of red energy, and in front of this barrier various magic circles were created as a barrier. The torrent hit the barrier and completely destroyed the magic circles, colliding with almost all the power in the thick energy barrier created by Venelana. The ground began to be destroyed, the wind whipped hard, the energy overflowed, the collision of powers seemed to be on another level. The seconds passed, and the collision began to lose power. After a few seconds, the overwhelming torrent dissipated, and the chestnut dissipated its barrier. There was a deep crater in front of the chestnut, and the chestnut was exhausted. It had a few slight scratches on its arms and face, but they were only slight. Oh, it seems that your power increased a little, Venelana. I guess it is not surprising, Rio the chestnut, thought the chestnut while grinding his teeth. The chestnut swayed back and forth. It seemed to be about to fall. I guess I'll finish with you. Before the chestnut tree advanced, a spear fell in front of the chestnut tree. The chestnut looked at the spear, and his face turned blue. Looking over his shoulder, laughed falsely. And I, Cao greeting the chestnut tree. Standing next to Rainier and Jean was Cao, arms folded. You'll explain it to me later. You have to go back. I speak the black hair first. The black-haired man made his spear disappear and sigh. Why? Asked the chestnut tree. She is waiting for you at the base. She, you won't talk about. Yes, from her. The chestnut sighed, and as he walked towards his companions, he calmed down. I told him not to come and see me, the chestnut tree growled. Go and tell him again, sighed the black-haired. With enormous ease and with indifference, the chestnut tree and all its companions disappeared at great speed, leaving all the demons in the crater city, where there were many more craters than before. While the demons were nothing but surprised, they sighed with relief when they stopped feeling the chestnut. The redhead stood up. With the help of the brunette, the lowly carried on her back the unconscious blonde and approached the chestnut. Are you okay, mother? Asked the redhead. Yes, I was only a little surprised, Rio the chestnut. But mother, Hiauto Issei, who is he? We'd better go back, and you ask your father. Creating a great magical circle around everyone, the chestnut transported everyone to the underworld. The crater city was more destroyed than it already was, and without any soul in it, the wind blew. Underworld, Gremory Mansion. It had been a few minutes since the redhead and her entourage had returned. The redhead ordered to give treatment to all the members of his entourage, prioritizing the treatment in the blonde, since he was the most injured. Sarorg retired as soon as they reached the underworld, as Kushia was waiting for him, so he proceeded to scold him. Venelana guided Rias through the mansion, until she reached a room that Rias knew. It was the room that corresponded to his father's office. Entering both women, they were a little surprised. At the moment of entering, a man, tall, with a crimson hair that reached half of the sword, blue eyes, and wearing an elegant white suit of noble, this man embraced them, while showing full happiness. Laughs. Honey, I'm glad you're okay, the man exclaimed. Honey, smiled the chestnut. Father. Seconds later, they separated, and both parents sat on a couch inside the office, leaving the redhead sitting on another couch in front of them. Hayato Issei ... Is he still alive? Asked the father with surprise. Yes, he is the dreaded Crimson General, the chestnut nodded. I guess I already expected it. As the parents talked, the redhead looked at them curiously, flushed with an expression of complete seriousness. Father, I want you to tell me how you met Hayato Issei. I speak the redhead. The father changed his attitude, putting a serious atmosphere in the room. Look well, laughs, do not look away, spoke the redhead as he stood up. The father lifted the sleeve of his right arm, so the redhead showed an expression of horror and surprise. Lord Gremory's right arm had a large scar, as if it were a scratch, in addition to having a very serious burn, which lasted from the middle of the forearm to the shoulder and seemed to continue to the back. How did that happen to you? The redhead asked in horror. This is what I won the last time I fought Hayato Issei, the father replied. That, Hayato Issei. When we confronted each other, he seemed to be the very embodiment of pure hatred. Lord Gremory showed an expression of nostalgia and nerves. I want you to call me father, repeated the redhead. The father would proceed to tell the story while the mother left the room. The mother, leaving the room, proceeded to walk throughout the mansion until she reached the room that corresponded to that of her son, Issei, better known as the Mao Lucifer. The mother, upon entering, was received by the maid Peli Platina and then proceeded to advance until she was in front of the redhead, who showed a serious expression but a slight smile when she saw her mother. Mother, how are you? The redhead asked as he smiled. Issei, why did you send Rias to fight with the Crimson General? The mother asked, showing disgust. It seems that someone talked about more. Can you tell me who? Just answer my question. The redhead sighed and proceeded to speak. I thought that since Rias was a very attractive woman, I would make the general doubt. I thought I could seduce him and bring him to our side, at least until we captured him, explained the Mao. Do you think of your sister as some kind of toy? With Hayato Issei you cannot play Issei. Even if you send the most beautiful woman in the underworld, he will see her as another demon to kill, replied the hysterical mother. Hayato Issei, is that the general's name? The mother gnashed her teeth as she proceeded to retreat. Don't involve Rias with the Crimson General ever. The redhead watched as his mother left the room, but since he heard the name Hayato Issei he had a smile. That's an interesting fact. Rio the redhead. The red-haired snapped his fingers, so the maid next to him nodded and proceeded to leave the room. Meanwhile, Rias and her father, Lord Gremory, were chatting in Lord Gremory's office. Listen well, Rias, I'm going to tell you the story of how we met Hayato Issei. The redhead showed seriousness. The story of the time I fight with what is possibly the strongest human being. The red-haired swallowed saliva. The curiosity in her gaze was remarkable. Her hands were sweating, and she was anxious, as she had no idea what her father was about to tell her. It had been a few minutes since the Chestnut Group had moved away from the demons, currently heading towards their base. The Chestnut Group, made up of Cao, Jean and Rainer, walked through the vast areas of cities destroyed and invaded by nature. But despite the terrible state of what were once cities, the group laughed while at a slow pace, they continued on their way. Guys, I have an idea. I speak the Chestnut. I hope it's not an idiocy, sighed the black hair. Isn't that? What if we create a system? System. That's right. You know how the angels, they created the Ito. I don't remember the name. The angels created the system Brave Saints, which consists of reincarnating humans into angels, explained the Fall. Exactly, I add the Chestnut. I still don't understand, I-chan. What are you talking about? We could use chess as an example. I would be the king, Jean would be my reina, and Cao would be. Forget it, Issei. That system is used by demons, interrupted the black hair. The Chestnut fell to its knees and hit the ground, which caused it to be destroyed a little. First they enslave us and then they steal my ideas. Definitely unforgivable, growling Chestnut. The others followed suit, so the Chestnut tree stood up and caught up with them. By the way, Issei, how did you meet Venilana? It's true, I-chan. How was it? Added the blonde. Do you want to know? Asked the Chestnut tree, smiling. Do you really want to know? Yes, we want, they both replied in unison. Okay, but only the part where Lord Gremory and Venilana appear. Well, it happened exactly 8 years ago. I was then 9 years old. Both girls swallowed, waiting for what the Chestnut was about to tell them. Underworld, Gremory Mansion. In one of the many rooms of the mansion, which corresponded to the office of the leader of Gremory, Ria's father, Lord Gremory. They were sitting in 2 different armchairs. 2 people, Lord Gremory showing a face of complete seriousness, and in front of him was Ria's Gremory, who only showed a face of nerves and curiosity. I'm going to tell you the story of the fight with what is possibly the strongest human being, said the redhead. The redhead swallowed and nodded. It happened 8 years ago. We were informed that in a human military base, an excessive number of humans were concentrated, which aimed to attack the underworld. So, me and your mother, along with about 500 other soldiers, went to investigate. Flashback. -8 years ago. Human world, somewhere in Japan. It had been a few years since demons had enslaved mankind. The cities were still in the process of destruction and were set on fire. Various groups of demons attacked the different cities, houses, fields. Nothing was saved from the massive destruction of the demons. Among all the destruction that was taking place in the human world, there was a group of demons that in particular was very large. It was a very large group. A little more than 500 soldiers were flying quickly to the east, being commanded by 2 people who had something that distinguished them from any other demon. They were enveloped in an overwhelming amount of demonic power. It wasn't just that, their gazes as they watched the destruction of human cities showed nothing but satisfaction. The leaders were a woman, young, with brown hair that reached the middle of her back, wearing clothes worthy of a warrior, white armor, with the symbol of Gremory embodied on her chest. For his part, the other leader, a tall man, with long crimson hair, with bright blue eyes, wore black clothes, like a nobleman, in addition to a black-red interior cloak with gold decorations. Lord Gremory and Venelata, husband and wife. Minutes passed, and this huge group arrived in what was once a city, which was now nothing but a huge desert. Arriving at the huge desert, the leaders signaled all the demons to deploy, so flying in all directions, the 500 soldiers scattered everywhere. "Honey, why do you make me wear this?" I speak the chestnut with heaviness beating his armor. "That way I'll feel more comfortable," replied the redhead. "We are dealing with humans, the most they could do would be to look at me. Even so, it is better to prevent." "As you say. Let's continue, we're almost there." He didn't trust that source. "Honey, are you sure of this? Humans do anything for their own safety, the Chestnut River even betray their own." "I guess you're right," sighs the redhead, "even if it's true, we'll kill him." With that said, the couple began to fly over the area, looking everywhere. About 2 hours passed, and the demon couple stopped in midair, their gaze showing nothing but satisfaction, so apparently they had found what they were looking for. In the middle of the great desert, there was a military base. It was not very large, but if more than normal, around it there were several trenches, one or another anti-aircraft, towers with machine guns in them, but unexpectedly, not a single soul could be seen in the base. The couple was confused. Indeed, they had found what they were looking for, but there was no one, which made them sigh. "I guess the source lied," said the chestnut. "We only scatter our time," growled the redhead. "Let's get out of here, give the sen." Before the chestnut finished, it turned its gaze towards the base, where it was surprised. From inside the base, in droves, wearing military suits and armed to the teeth, a very large army of humans began to leave. Not only that, from the trenches many more humans began to peek. In the towers there were more, everyone, willing to anything. The couple smiled, and landed 1 kilometer away from the base. The chestnut gave a signal with his hand, and from the sky, landing in front of the couple, his huge little demon shaft had arrived. While the demons were many, the army of humans seemed to be much more, but even so, the demons showed confidence. Fire! The cry of the one who seemed to be the leader of the humans was heard with power, confidence, and most of all, fury. An endless rain of bullets, rockets, arrows, and so on illuminated the distance between the demons and the human base. While the burst of bullets looked dangerous, it didn't seem to have any effect on the demons. "Group A, go ahead," exclaimed the chestnut. A group of about 50 soldiers stood in front of all the other demons, and they created multiple barriers with magic circles in front of them. The volley of bullets, rockets, and arrows from humans was completely stopped. A smoke screen rose on the ground separating humans from demons. Seconds later, the smoke screen was dispelled, showing the humans that the demons had not suffered a single scratch. The couple stood in front of their entire army and looked at the humans, waiting. "Fear not, comrades. Today we will win whatever it takes." Oh. A powerful, thunderous, and furious battle cry from the humans caused the demons to feel incredible pressure. From the trenches, from the towers, from inside the base, more and more human soldiers armed with weapons that had bayonets made the army of humans look even bigger than it already was. Showing satisfaction, the demon couple signaled their army to begin. "Today we will triumph over the demons." Yes, with fury and passion, in addition to a thunderous cry of power, the willing humans threw themselves against the demons, which began the unstoppable, painful, and bloody massacre. Being commanded by the married couple, the army of demons easily triumphed over that of humans, using their incredible demonic powers, made the strength gap between humans and demons larger than it already was. So, with all their effort, the humans only managed to kill 50 demons. Fire, ruins, craters, smoke, and most of all, pain. It was all that reigned over the ground that was previously a human military base. The base was completely on fire, at least what was left of it. Craters with many humans inside, mountains of human bodies, with large pools of blood underneath, debris everywhere, incessant flames that would not go out. Looking with satisfaction on his face, the married couple did nothing but contemplate the deplorable landscape, while behind them, their army of demons waited. "I guess we're going," sighed the redhead. "En marcha Rio La Castana." I must admit that I was quite surprised. To me too, for a moment I thought that this human had lied to us, but it seems that in truth I betray his own. "But it's strange." "What's strange?" asked the redhead, looking at his wife. "When we arrived I could feel something. It was a strange sensation." The chestnut showed a serious face. It was as if an incredible explosion occurred behind the demon pair, forcing them to turn to see, only to be shocked. An incredible crater had been created in the center of his army, and most of his soldiers were either dead or very seriously injured. "What's going on?" asked the chestnut with surprise. "I don't know. Let's back up a bit," replied the redhead. The couple took a big leap and distanced themselves. Another incredibly huge explosion occurred again. This time, a red glow lit up the couple's view. A huge black smoke screen rose, preventing the couple from seeing beyond a few meters ahead. "Help! Let this pass. Ugh! That it is not attacking." "Withdrawal. We can't. You a monster." The incessant screams of the demons caused the couple to worry, but after a few seconds, the screams ceased. The couple was confused. They couldn't know what was going on. The smoke screen didn't allow them to see anything. A soothing wind began to run through the desert, causing the slow dissipation of smoke. The couple paid enough attention to see that he was attacking them. The seconds passed, and the smoke dissipated completely, which made the couple open their eyes like saucers. They almost came out what they were seeing. It was something they never expected. All his soldiers were dead. The ground was completely bloody. Various pools of blood made the field glow as they were hit by the sunlight. Not only that, various amputated limbs of the demon soldiers lay everywhere. The most worrying thing was that at the center of this horrific massacre, there was someone standing still. He was a boy. He did not appear to be more than 10 years old. He had a pair of bright honey-colored eyes, in addition to having long brown hair that reached the middle of his back. He wore a white camouflage military uniform, or so it seemed, since his uniform was mostly stained by blood. What surprised the married couple the most was not the appearance of the child. What surprised and scared them a little was his look. A look of complete naturalness, cold and sharp, devoid of feelings, penetrating, caused nerves and fear. "Is he a human survivor?" asked the chestnut as he stepped forward. "Wait, honey," the redhead pulled. "The chestnut is not a survivor, don't you notice it? He was the one who did it." The couple looked at the chestnut tree, which simply looked at them. Seconds later, the chestnut tree began to walk towards them. The couple put themselves on guard, and more than anything, they took even more distance. The chestnut tree had already emerged from the bloodied ground, and had stopped while wiping the blood from his hands by shaking them. "I must assume that you are the leaders. I speak the chestnut tree, don't you?" The couple was shocked. "That's right, we're the leaders of the squad you just destroyed," replied the redhead, looking hostile. "Oh, I understand." The chestnut covered his body with a bright mantle of red energy. In addition to expelling in great quantity an overwhelming amount of power, he smiled and clenched his fists tightly. "Well, I'm really lucky. I laughed the chestnut. I can get to kill them with my own hands. I do not know what you are doing, but here I end." Before the redhead could finish, he opened his eyes like saucers, as he had just noticed that the chestnut was already in front of him and had launched a powerful blow directly to his face. The powerful blow of the chestnut successfully hit the face of the redhead. The redhead was confused. His eyes reflected nothing but confusion. He did not understand why this child had been able to hit him, much less understood how is it that this child I had knocked him down. The redhead bent completely backwards to fall on his back to the ground with overwhelming force, which forced him to bury himself in the ground. The chestnut reacted as fast as she could, and then watched as her husband lay on the ground, with the chestnut tree standing in front of her. The chestnut tried to attack the chestnut, throwing an overwhelming amount of power at it. However, this failure. The burst of power continued its path and impact with the ground, creating a large crater. Without explosions or wind, it simply disintegrated everything and created a crater. The chestnut was sweating. His eyes showed fear and were wide open, because, before him, and showing a penetrating and devoid of feelings look, the chestnut stared at it. The chestnut tree stretched out his hand to the chestnut's forehead. Smiling and tapping his finger on the chestnut's forehead, the chestnut forced Venelana to bend back tightly. The chestnut was held, and showing anger, he resumed his posture, but again he was surprised, since the chestnut was no longer in front of him. The chestnut looked in all possible directions, until after a few seconds, he noticed that the chestnut was behind him. The chestnut kicked the feet of the chestnut, which made it fall backwards to the ground. The chestnut made a deadly forward, and with his heel, hit with surprising power the stomach of the chestnut. The chestnut was buried in the ground, and the ground around it shook hard. The chestnut spit out blood. The breastplate of his armor was completely bent, destroyed, and the blow had directly impacted the body. The redhead stood up as fast as he could, and noticing that his wife was lying buried in the ground, he hurried against the chestnut, throwing a powerful blow. The chestnut watched the blow coming, as if it were nothing, and extending a single hand, it stopped the blow. The blow had overwhelming power, so the chestnut was dragged a few meters back, but did not let go of the fist of the redhead. The redhead was confused. His great blow had been stopped. He was more surprised to feel how the chestnut's hand began to heat up, and the chestnut smiled. "I'm going to take this arm, river the chestnut." From the chestnut's hands came a bright, hot, overwhelming crimson fire. These crimson flames completely enveloped Lord Gremory's arm, and it kept expanding to his back. The red wing kicked, and the chestnut dodged it as he stepped back a few meters, and smiled as he watched as the redhead's arm burned. The chestnut stood up slowly and, holding her stomach, looked at her husband and saw that he was on fire, so he recovered quickly and went to his aid. Invoking multiple magic circles around the redhead, the chestnut appeared beside him. From the magic circles began to come waterfalls, which seconds later extinguished the crimson fire. Wet and showing a very high rage, the redhead looked at the chestnut. Again, and without hesitation, the chestnut quickly threw itself against the couple, which took them by surprise. The chestnut appeared behind both, and threw a blow towards the chestnut, which was stopped a few centimeters from impact. The redhead had held the hand of the chestnut, while showing anger but could not. The chestnut jumped and with both feet hit the redhead directly in the chest, which made him back, dragging his feet. Reacting a second later, the chestnut wanted to take distance, but the chestnut was already in front of him, and again launched a powerful blow directly to the chestnut's stomach, in the vulnerable area. The blow hit with power, and sent the chestnut to fly back with power. Fortunately for her, the redhead reacted and got behind her to catch her. Resuming their posture, the couple looked with great amazement at the chestnut tree in front of them. What's your name? Asked the redhead. Hayato Issei, replied the chestnut tree. I see. I won't forget. I'm Lord Gremory. She's my wife Venelana. A taste Venelana Rio. Excuse me, the chestnut showed a somber face. I do not usually remember the names of the people he will kill. Showing a gloomy face and piercing eyes, the chestnut again made the couple feel fear. The chestnut pointed at the couple pretending that his hand was a gun, and in front of his finger, a small sphere of red energy was created. The couple looked on in confusion. They didn't know what awaited them. Boom! River the chestnut. The small sphere turned into a huge torrent of red energy emanating red lightning. The couple was quite surprised to see such an amount of energy coming towards them, so the redhead stepped forward and set out to stop it. The torrent of energy collided with the redhead's hands, which only bent back a little, but did not move from its position. The redhead's eyes lit up bright red, and he diverted the torrent of energy into the sky. The torrent of energy continued on its way for a few seconds, and then exploded, which destroyed the ground a little, and caused a powerful wind to whip with great force. The couple looked with amazement at the chestnut, who was only standing in front of them, showing that face full of complete seriousness, so they did not know what was about to happen. It's time to end this, said the redhead. When you want honey, nodded the chestnut. The couple put both hands forward, and began to gather a simply overwhelming amount of power, but even so, the chestnut did not flinch, and continued to show seriousness as he watched the amount of demonic power increase rapidly. General Hayato. A voice called out to the chestnut, so it looked over his shoulder, only to open his eyes like saucers. Standing there, his arm broken, breathing heavily, and barely standing, a soldier looked at the chestnut tree happily. What are you doing? Get out, cried the chestnut tree, shouted the chestnut. But, the soldier denied. Just go, I can handle this. Now honey, exclaimed the redhead. The chestnut tree turned around and I noticed that the pair had released an overwhelmingly huge torrent of red energy with a shade of black. The ground under the torrent path was completely destroyed. Red lightning came out of the torrent, the wind whipped hard, debris began to float, the power was simply overwhelming. The chestnut grinded his teeth and appeared in front of the wounded soldier and hugged him, so he, chestnut, received the incredible torrent of energy directly on his back. A powerful explosion was created, a huge smoke screen was raised, the wind whipped with power, the ground was destroyed, the explosion was overwhelming. The couple stared at the thick smoke screen and felt relief as they couldn't feel anything inside or outside of it. Meanwhile, inside the smoke screen, in the crater that had been created, the chestnut tree was sitting, with the wounded soldier at his side. General. I speak, the soldier barely breathing. Oh, are you okay? Wait a bit, let me recover and I'll get you out of here, replied the chestnut. And I am already black, General. Just keep fighting. You are not black, you are not until I have surrendered, I will get you out of here. The soldier motioned for the chestnut to approach him, so the chestnut leaned toward him, and the soldier held him by the collar of his shirt, and from his pocket, he took out a paper that was stained with blood. The colonel sends it. The soldier, Colonel Temura. I asked the chestnut tree with surprise, where is he? He died. The chestnut showed a gloomy face, and then took the piece of paper. Now it's your turn. Captain General Hayato Issei. Without saying a word more, the soldier died, showing a smile. El Castano watched the soldier die, and then looked at the piece of paper to notice that he had something written, which was, Captain General Hayato Issei, I'm sorry I can't tell you this personally. I wrote this in case I died. If you are reading it, it means I died, or at best, we won and you checked my clothes. In any case, I wanted to tell you that we sent one of ours to give our location. We thought we could ambush them. I just want to tell you one general thing. Kill all the demons and end this tyranny. You are the only one who can do it. The chestnut burned the note with a crimson fire, and then wrapped the dead body of the soldier with the same crimson flames. The chestnut tree stood up and looked at the dead soldier. I'm going to avenge you, soldier. Meanwhile, outside the smoke screen, the couple was breathing heavily and staring at the thick smoke screen. Shall we go? Asked the chestnut. On the go, replied the redhead Hayato Issei. I wonder if there will be more humans as strong as the... We don't know, honey. Humans can be very unpredictable. I guess you're right, the redhead sighs. In the end, the chestnut smiled and looked at her husband. We were able to beat him. The redhead opened his eyes like saucers. He was confused. Cold sweat ran down his forehead. His body trembled. He could not understand why his wife had a bloody hand holding his face, much less understood when he saw his wife whipping with a colossal force against the ground, causing it to bury itself and create a large crater in the ground. The redhead jumped back, but then stopped and looked confused. The redhead looked at the smoke that his wife had raised to the whipping against the ground, and out of that smoke came someone. The chestnut advanced a few steps and looked at the redhead. This time, his gaze reflected pure hatred. His body was wrapped in a cloak of murderous aura. What did you do to my wife? Asked the redhead, standing up, but he was still shaking. Just hit her a little, don't worry, she's not dead. The chestnut river, first I'll take care of you. The chestnut appeared in front of the redhead, so he was quite surprised and tried to react, but could not. The chestnut threw a powerful hook wrapped in red energy directly to the redhead's stomach. The hit successfully. The energy pierced the redhead as if it were a sword. The power of the blow sent the redhead to fly through the skies. The redhead recovered and spread his wings to stop, and looked at the chestnut, so he was surprised to notice that the chestnut was no longer on the ground, but was behind. An intense and powerful burst of blows swept the redhead, who could only cover the blows. But even so they were too many, it was as if they were more than 2 arms. The blows went directly to the vital points, nerves and face. The redhead tried to hold on as long as he could, but after a few seconds of resisting the incessant and overwhelming burst of blows, the redhead no longer felt his arms and they hung on him. Looking up, the redhead was surprised to notice that the chestnut was no longer there, but was behind. Putting his hands together, the chestnut again hit the redhead directly on the back, which caused the redhead to fly to the ground with overwhelming power. The redhead hit the ground. He was on his back, looking at the sky, but he opened his eyes many when he noticed that the chestnut was coming towards him at an incredible speed. The chestnut hit the redhead on the stomach with both knees. The power of the fall and the power of the chestnut made the redhead bury himself in the ground, spitting blood in large quantities. The redhead felt how his whole body did not respond to him. Gritting his teeth tightly, the chestnut looked at the redhead while sitting on him. A hot steam came out of his mouth. His canines were a little bigger than normal. His eyes reflected anger. The red aura of the chestnut was abrupt and towards whipping the wind. The chestnut hit the redhead in the face, which caused him to bury himself more in the ground. Not being enough, the chestnut hit him again, and another, again and again. Each blow that the chestnut gave towards the redhead to bury himself in the ground, and blood splashed on the ground. Lord Gremory averted his gaze as he felt the punishment of the chestnut tree on his body, turned to see the crater where his wife lay, and unconsciously stretched out his hand, trying to reach her. But then, his arm was scratched by sharp claws. Confused, scared, and more than anything amazed, the redhead looked again at the chestnut. He stared at him. His left arm glowed brightly red. It was a gauntlet, strange, had a green gem and golden peaks. The redhead simply resigned and closed his eyes, and a few seconds before becoming unconscious, the last thing he could hear was, "End of flashback." The redhead was surprised. She squeezed her skirt tightly. She tried to speak, but the words did not come out of her mouth. She could only show amazement and confusion. After I became unconscious, the pain stopped from one moment to another. By the time I woke up, I was already in treatment, and it had already been 1 week, sighed the redhead. I don't know what to say, said the redhead nervously. Your mother suffered a slight case of amnesia. She could not remember anything from that day. She only remembered that we had both finished with Hayato Issei, and I did not want to worry her, so I told her that it was. But who do you think gave him the nickname Crimson General? I don't know. It was your mother. It was the first thing she said when she woke up. The redhead was still surprised. Surely your mother has already talked to Surzech, but we will make sure you do not get involved with Hayato Issei again. Never again. The redhead showed seriousness. But father, the redhead denied. No, Rias, this time, you came out alive just by luck. If your mother hadn't diverted her attention from you, you'd probably be dead. Lose, but, tell me, laughs, how did you manage to survive until your mother arrived? Even with Sarah, that would be very difficult. Well, next, the redhead explained to her father in great detail how was her first meeting with Hayato Issei. I see, no doubt, it's something he would do, but I have a doubt. The redhead showed a serious face. How do I keep that AK-47 in his backpack? I have no idea, replied the redhead heavily. That's all, Rias. I'm glad the general became more playful, thank goodness, and they didn't make him angry. He would certainly have massacred them. But father, if what you have told me is true, then Hayato Issei's Longinus is. I only saw him for a few moments. The redhead showed fear, but surely his Longinus is. The redhead showed a lot of surprise. Her father's words did nothing more than point out to Rias that Hayato Issei was not even close to fight seriously. Human world, Huo City, mountainous terrain. The chestnut group toured the mountain grounds while they talked. It had been a long time since the chestnut had begun his story, so, a few kilometers from reaching his home, which was his base, the chestnut stopped. After that I beat them up and end the story. I finished the chestnut. Both girls, the blonde and the fallen, showed nothing but a face of total surprise and a little anger. What's wrong with that ending? The black-haired man asked, sighing. That's what happened, replied the chestnut. I admit it's surprising. In fact, I'm happy you told me more about yourself, I-chan, but... The blonde showed disappointment. Were you in the army? Well, yes, but when that happened I was not at the base. By the time I arrived, the confrontation was already over, and then I thought about killing some demons. Rio El Castano. Wait, the fall interrupted Issei. How old are you? Weren't you taught that asking age is rude? That only applies to women. Yeah, calm down, go. I'm 17. The fall showed confusion and approached the chestnut tree. 17. Then, enter the army at age 5, said El Castano matter-of-factly. -5 years. Both asked in unison. I already knew I had the black hair. What, is it so weird? Asked the chestnut tree. That is, 5 years, repeated the fall. That's right, 2 years after entering I became a general, expert in hand-to-hand combat. Knife, handling of knives, strategy, although it is not necessary. They taught me to disarm bombs. Everything that the army could teach me, I know. Except for the black hair, both girls were surprised. Their mouths were wide open, and their eyes were wide open. "And your Longinus is?" asked the blonde. "Good attempt, Jean. Good try, Rio the chestnut. It is not long before you see it. That is, it is almost a day, isn't it?" "That's right," nodded the black hair. "Right, I had forgotten," sighed the blonde. "Anyway, let's continue. Surely everyone is waiting for us," indicated the chestnut. Again they all continued their course. A few minutes passed. The distance between the group and the base had already decreased considerably, but out of nowhere, the chestnut stopped, which caught everyone's attention. "What's wrong, Issei?" asked the black hair. Without answering, the chestnut simply showed a serious face, which indicated to everyone that something was going on. "Ai-chan, perhaps they are." The blonde summoned 2 swords. "Hell, I finished the fall flush that summoned a spear of light." To tell the truth, the chestnut changed his serious face for a smiling one. "I have to go to the bathroom." This is where everyone fell to the ground hard, to quickly get up and shout at the chestnut tree furiously. "Why do you put on such a serious face to say that?" They all asked the unison. "Excuse me, I've been holding on for a while y que están así adentro en los árboles del tent. I'll catch up later." Sighing and nodding, these 3 went on their way. By the way, a few moments ago Issei said that there was little left. "For what exactly?" I asked the fool. "Didn't he tell you?" The black-haired man showed a serious face. "We will attack the underworld." With surprise and willing to find out more, the fool continued the road with the 2 to find out more. Meanwhile, the chestnut tree advanced through the mountainous terrain full of trees, his eyes moving in all directions, indicating that he was looking for something. Several minutes passed, and the chestnut apparently had not yet found what he was looking for, so he hurried the pace, quickly evading all the trees. The chestnut tree traveled a large field in just a few seconds, and then stopped in its tracks. The chestnut tree came out of some trees. Apparently it had found something. It was a meadow, small, 5 meters in diameter, had a large rock in the center. However, the trees around the meadow were considerably larger than normal, so half of the meadow was sunk in shade. On the rock that was in the center, being only half shaded, a pair of white legs could be noticed, and a lock of black hair, which indicated that there was someone there. The chestnut, scratching his head, went into the meadow and sat in the lighted area, and looking at the legs of the apparent person, he looked at where he supposed his face was. "What are you doing here?" asked the chestnut. "Well," the voice was high-pitched, "it was a girl. I thought I told you to call me by my name." "Luz, well, what are you doing here?" "As always, you are rough." The chestnut man lifted the hair that covered his face and looked seriously at the girl in front of him, who could not look good because of the shadow. "I thought I told you never to come." The chestnut showed fury. "Whenever you come, there are problems." "Wow, Issei, it could be that you're." The girl stood up on the rock and jumped, landing in front of the chestnut tree. "Are you trying to intimidate me? If it is to keep the peace of my companions, I would be able to kill you." The chestnut looked at the now enlightened girl and stood up, showing a murderous look. Off Eyes. The girl that Issei had called Off Eyes was small, had a long black hair that reached her thighs, wore a black dress with a large purple bun at the waist, in addition to a headband with purple flowers. In addition, this loli had a pair of deep and expressionless black eyes. These 2 exchanged serious and sharp glances for a couple of seconds, which made them feel overwhelming pressure. The birds in the trees fell to the ground from the pressure. After a few seconds, the black hair threw itself on the chestnut, hugged him by the chest and knocked him to the ground. The chestnut fell on his back, but now he showed heaviness while scratching his head. The black-haired loli, for her part, rested her head in the lap of the chestnut and showed an unusual smile. "You look so cute whenever you try to intimidate me." The loli. "I don't know why I keep trying," sighed the chestnut. "How are things going?" "Very well. The repairs of the salon that you destroyed the other day are already finished." "I'm really happy." The loli instructed the chestnut to caress his head, so the chestnut did the right thing and sighed, while the loli smiled. "You didn't answer me, Off Eyes. Why are you here?" asked the chestnut. "It's almost a day, isn't it?" "I want to help you," replied loli. "I appreciate the intention, but I don't need your help. I myself will kill the Maoist with my own hands." "I guessed you'd say that. That's what you said the other day. If you already knew, I don't know why you came. Is it bad for a female to want to be with her male? As I explained many times, we are not a couple. Normally we could not even be friends. You are Ouroboros, the dragon god of infinity. What's wrong with him being attracted to you?" "I say it's a nuisance." "But it wasn't 8 years ago, wasn't it?" Loli laughed maliciously. "Without my help, you'd already be dead. Did you forget?" "Of course I didn't," the chestnut man denied, "as I might forget." The chestnut looked at the sky, showing a look full of nostalgia. He sighed and felt the breeze of the wind flutter his hair. Flashback. Continuation of the previous one. Human world, somewhere in Japan. Those words echoed in the immense flat terrain that years ago was a populated and huge city where there was a military base that trained humans. However, it was completely destroyed. Flames surrounded it, craters surrounded it, mountains of human corpses with immense pools of blood surrounded it. Not only that, in a remote field, there were many more corpses. These were mutilated, completely destroyed. The whole ground in several meters was completely bloody and shone by the sunlight when it collided with the still fresh blood. Several meters away from the destruction, 3 people could be seen. a brown woman wearing armor, which was already destroyed, and she was unconscious. A few meters beside him, there was a redhead. He was on the ground with his back. He had a lost look. His body was covered with blood, his face beaten. He was in a deplorable state. However, there was someone else sitting on top of him. He was a brown boy who gritted his teeth tightly, while a blanket of red energy wrapped around him. His left arm, in which he had a gauntlet of a bright red color, emitted power in great waves. The chestnut prepared to hit the redhead again, ready to finish it, but out of nowhere, he stopped and looked up at the sky. In the sky, there were a huge number of demons flying, and they were ready to go on their hunt. The chestnut stood up, and with his gauntlet pointed at them, pretending his hand was a gun in front of his finger. A crimson sphere was created, which was transformed into a great torrent of energy that shot out at high speed against the endless demons. The power successfully impacted and wiped out a large number of demons. However, after doing so, it seemed that the demons had increased, so the chestnut tree was quite surprised. The huge army landed surrounding the chestnut tree and pointed swords at it and intimidated it with their demonic auras, which only disgusted the chestnut tree. Surrender, you are surrounded by human. The chestnut holds his face with the gauntlet. Give up, asked the chestnut. The demons were confused to see that the chestnut tree laughed hysterically. Seconds later, the chestnut tree under his hand and directed his gaze to one of the many demons. This demon fell dead to the ground, and seconds later they noticed that he had a large hole in his stomach. If they want to come forward, Rio El Castano, it's never too late to die. The furious demons threw themselves against the chestnut tree. The chestnut was simply superior. He destroyed each and every one of the demons as if these were nothing more than simple garbage. He was injured, bleeding. The attack he had previously received from the married couple undoubtedly overwhelmed him. He retired. No matter how eager he was to kill that annoying couple, the chestnut could not simply withstand the intense pressure involved in bleeding in such large quantities, so he let the couple live. The couple lay unconscious, buried in the ground, with a sea of blood and demon corpses surrounding them, making the environment a terrain worthy of a horror movie. The chestnut tree walked for several minutes, resisting the urge to faint, had many knives embedded in arms and legs, 2 swords piercing his back and coming out of the stomach. Limping, bleeding, and leaving a line of blood throughout his journey, the chestnut managed to enter a dark forest. Walking for several more minutes, the chestnut tree came to a flat ground. Although the demons had enslaved humanity and had practically destroyed everything, this was a beautiful green meadow with many flowers of different colors in it. The chestnut man removed the swords from his body and threw them away. Smiling, the chestnut tree went into the meadow and lay in the center, feeling the warm rays of the sun on his body, while his blood created a puddle under them. The chestnut tree smiled and resigned himself to die in that beautiful place. His breathing stopped. Out of nowhere, at one end of the prairie, a kind of dimensional crack opened. It seemed that it was going to suck everything. But no, from said crack came a little black-haired girl wearing a black dress. This loli walked to be in front of the body of the chestnut and stared at him for several seconds. Then, the loli bent down and brought her ear to the chestnut's chest. Still late, said loli. The loli wrapped her body in an overwhelming amount of power of a very dark purple color. The energy was simply overwhelming. And putting both hands on the chestnut's chest, this pressed. You can't die yet. The immense amount of power inside the chestnut's body, and at an incredible speed, all the chestnut's wounds were completely healed. By the time 2 minutes passed, the chestnut no longer had a single wound, and was only lying on the grassland. The loli sighed and looked at the chestnut. This apparently was asleep, so the loli hit him with his finger on the forehead, which made him wake up. The moment the chestnut opened his eyes, he noticed that the black hair was looking at him. The chestnut boldly jumped back and took distance between him and the loli. Who are you? Asked the chestnut. Seconds later, I noticed that his body was healed. What did you do to me? Is this how you talk to the one who saved your life? Asked the loli. My name is Issei. Issei. That's right, I am. The loli proceeded to explain everything to the chestnut, so he was quite surprised. The dragon god of infinity, exclaimed El Castano. What the hell are you doing here? Nothing special, I was just looking and I saw you, replied the loli. I thought to help you and well, here you have me. How come I always end up in this kind of situation? El Castano sighs and well, what did you do to me? The chestnut showed a serious face and a murderous look, covered his body with a cloak of murderous aura, and the loli smiled. You're interesting. You're the first one who tries to intimidate me. The loli. Just heal your wounds. How? The loli expelled a large amount of her aura. The chestnut was surprised, but then she noticed something strange. The aura of the loli slowly began to approach the chestnut and surrounded it. Use a good amount of energy to heal your wounds, so practically, a part of me is inside you, explained the loli. Why would you bother to do that for me? Asked the chestnut tree. I'm not sure. When I saw you lying there on the ground, my chest started to burn, and I did it instinctively. Did your chest burn? It will not be, master. The chestnut stopped, and then I look at loli with complete seriousness. You are not in love with me, right? In love. Love. Maybe that's it, replied loli. I'm not quite sure, but if I stay with you, I'll find out sooner or later. I guess it's true. Wait, what? I'm a part of you, and maybe I'm in love with you, so what's wrong with it? You are Ouroboros. Why would you help a mere human? You will be everything you want, but you are not a mere human. Let's leave your side. My name is Hayato Issei. You can tell me Issei. You call me off-ice. I understand. Issei. Loli looked at the chestnut. What are you trying to achieve? The chestnut clenched his fist tightly and showed determination. I'm going to kill the 4 big Maoists. Oh, I like that. I will help you. No need. The chestnut smiled. Just suffice me. I don't need your help, off-ice. I understand. At least, will you let me be with you? Of course, forever. If it is possible for me to live so long, if. Forever. Do you promise? I promise. The chestnut caressed the head of the loli, and for the first time, the loli showed blush on her tender cheeks while smiling. End of flashback. If I had known that promising you that would be so problematic, I would never have done it, said the chestnut tree heavily. Well, you did it, now you fulfill it, said Loli. But do you still feel love for me? Even at this moment my chest is burning. I see. I told you, Issei, if you do not feel attraction for this body, The body of the loli began to grow out of nowhere. Her breasts grew to take the size of a not very large or small cup. Her height increased, being now the size of the chestnut. Her butt the same, her hair lengthened and her face had a more mature appearance. Her dress was now small and reached the middle of his legs. I can always change it to your tastes, Rio the now Palangra. It's not that off-ice. I'm not interested in the body. I sigh. The chestnut. I admit that it is an important part. Your appearance as a girl does not attract me at all. In that case I will stay like this forever. If you want to do it as good for me. Underworld, Mansion Gremory. After her father had told her the story of how she met the Crimson General, the redhead left the room and began to walk the halls. Minutes later, she entered one of the rooms, in which all her entourage was, the brunette in a chair, the loli in an armchair eating a sweet, and the blonde lying on a bed with bandages. How do you feel? Asked the redhead looking at the blonde. I feel good, thanks for coming, Ria-sama, replied the blonde. What about you? I'm fine, said the brunette. All good here, added the loli. I'm glad. The redhead sighed with relief. Ria-sama, the blonde, speak. What happened to the general? Well, next, the redhead told the blonde everything that happened after he was out of combat. Is that easy? The blonde asked in amazement. I do not know the reason why he retired, but it is a relief that he has gone without more, sighed the redhead. That human beat us up is not like that, Rio the brunette. Rio. He was very strong, replied Loli. Father told me to make sure we never face him again. It's a shame. I thought I could have my revenge, Rio El Rubio. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but he wasn't even close to getting serious. He was just playing with us, the redhead explained. The blonde squeezed the sheets of the bed and showed a fake smile. Rias, leaving that issue aside, how are things going with the Phoenix issue? Asked the brunette. Wrong. The marriage meeting will be here in 1 week, replied the redhead heavily. Ara, that is very serious. I will try to convince father to cancel it, but I do not have much hope. I suppose it is inevitable. Their union is necessary for demons to thrive. The only thing we can do now is wait, can't we? Exactly, we will leave it to chance, I hope. Father is not in a bad mood. Human world, Kuo City, mountainous terrain. After having finished his talk, the chestnut, accompanied by the black hair at his side, went in the direction of the base. The barrier I put last time still works? Asked the black-haired. That's right, thank you, it's very helpful, replied the chestnut. By the way, Issei, it will almost be the day of the attack, but when and how exactly will you attack? Good question. The chestnut stopped and looked at the black-haired. I had planned to take a demon, have it take us to the underworld, kill it, and then attack with everything we have the Mao Lucifer. It is a plantain infantil Rio La Palangra. That was my plan, but I guess you can help us a little bit. The black-haired hugged the chestnut. Being now of the same height, their faces were face to face, so the chestnut blushes. You can count on me, smiled the black hair. Yes, I'm glad, said the chestnut, averting his gaze. Issei. The black hair separated from the chestnut, and then held him by the cheeks with both hands, forcing him to look at her. What's wrong with you? Asked the black-haired. And nothing, denied the chestnut, it's just that. Your new look is. Oh, the black hair laughed. So now if you feel attraction. I wouldn't say exactly that, but say, no, if you don't say it I'll get angry. It's okay, I'm attracted to you. Issei. The black-haired holds his chest and look at the chestnut with confusion. My chest is burning even more. Maybe it's my fault, I sigh the chestnut. After saying that, the black-haired woman stood in front of the chestnut tree and turned around, indicating to the chestnut with her hands to hug her. The chestnut sighed and did the right thing, and hugged the black-haired woman from behind. Without separating, these two continued on their way to the base of Warriors of Longinus. A few minutes had passed since the chestnut and Off-Ice, still embraced, had arrived at the base. The black-haired caught the attention of most, but almost everyone knew it, so the uproar did not last long. Still embraced, the black-haired and the chestnut arrived at the room corresponding to the base of operations, so when entering, they met the blonde, the black-haired, Leonardo, Wahlberga and Asia. Don Esther Rainier, asked the chestnut. She came out, but the blonde had a tick in her eyebrow. Who the hell is she? Issei-chan ... Who is that? Asked Wahlberga. Issei-san ... Is she? Asia. I can't believe you forgot me, Jean. I speak the black-haired. Off-Ice, asked the black hair. That's right. Oh, Off-Ice, exclaimed the blonde, that you were not a girl. That's right, but that body didn't appeal to Issei, so I changed it, said the black-haired. Wahlberga and Asia asked. It's a bit complicated, then I explained them, sighed the chestnut. The chestnut went to the armchair and sat down, and had a tick in the eyebrow to see the black hair sitting on his legs. "Hey, get off," said the chestnut angrily. "You promised we'd always be together," said the black-haired. "I did, but did you lie to me?" "No, but you're annoying. Do you want to fight? Did you forget what happened last time?" "I haven't forgotten, but it's been a while. Maybe this time I can win." "We'll see." While these two fought verbally while their bodies emanated murderous auras, the others looked at them nervously. Having them so close caused discomfort and nerves. "Why did Raynor leave?" asked the chestnut tree. "I told him about our plan to attack the underworld, and he said he had to report it as quickly as possible," explained the black hair. "I understand. Well, I guess that's normal. You have not answered me, Issei, yet. When will the attack be?" "I ask again," the black-haired. The chestnut showed a broad smile, and standing up as he prostrated imposingly, he exclaimed, "We will attack Lucifer in 1 week." The room corresponding to the operations center was in complete silence and sunk in intense tension and nerves. All those humans who were possessors of Longinus and sacred gears were in the room, not forgetting Issei, who surprised everyone by staying for so long in the base. Although previously the room was in complete scandal thanks to the constant reviews of the plan of attack that would be carried out the next day, the room was completely quiet. For 6 days it had been in scandal, but now it was completely silent. They were all sitting in their respective places. However, their faces showed nothing but complete fear. Their bodies were shaking and they were sweating heavily. The leader, Hayato Issei, was standing, staring at one of the upper corners of the room while in his right hand he held a shoe. "I do not want them to move a single muscle. I speak the chestnut. If they move, they will ruin everything." At the words of the chestnut, everyone nodded. Even Issei was completely terrified. The chestnut began to walk towards the corner he was looking at. At a high point of the wall you could see that there was a large black dot on it. But this black dot moved very fast, so the chestnut had a hard time throwing his blow. He took one of the chairs and brought it closer to the wall. He climbed on it, managing to get to the height of the great black dot. The chestnut quickly hit the wall with his shoe, which completely shook the room. Everyone looked carefully at the chestnut. "Did I?" asked the chestnut tree as he removed the shoe from the wall. There was absolutely nothing on the shoe or on the wall, which confused the chestnut. The chestnut averted his gaze upwards. There, on the ceiling, was the big black dot. The chestnut swallowed saliva and prepared to hit it again, but before the chestnut hit it, the big black dot spread a pair of wings. "Retreat!" exclaimed the chestnut tree as he fell to the ground. "Kyle!" all the girls shouted. Jean could not control herself and crouched, putting both hands on her head while screaming wildly. The floor of the room lit up completely, and from this came 100 swords of all kinds. Jean," said the chestnut man heavily, "could you take back the swords?" Jean threw a tantrum and noticed that the whole room was completely full of swords, and her friends had barely managed to dodge the swords but were trapped and their clothes were a little torn. "Sorry, Ai-chan scared me," sorry the blonde, while the swords disappeared. "At least you fulfilled your objective," said the chestnut, pointing to the ground, where the great dead black spot was, or at least it seemed so. "Very nice. The next be more careful," Jean scolding the black hair. "Let her cow. It was not her intention," said the chestnut. "Tomorrow will be the day of the attack on the underworld. We already reviewed emergency strategies, the plan, and even tactics in case of losses. I hope not to use them, but we will not know what will happen tomorrow." "Yes." They all nodded with serious faces on them. "Today go have fun, tomorrow we will do our job." After saying that, everyone nodded as they left the room, except for Issei and Issei, who were the only ones left in the room. "Issei, I speak the black hair. I already told you no," the chestnut tree interrupted. "No matter what you say, I don't allow you to participate in the attack. Only if things go wrong, please. No, even if things go wrong, I don't allow you to intervene. Why, humans have a pride to protect." The brown sighed as he proceeded to walk to the door, but the black-haired held him by the sleeve of his shirt, preventing him from leaving. The chestnut looked behind him and saw the black-haired look at the ground, but without letting go. "If things get ugly, I will intervene," said the black-haired. "Issei." The chestnut turned around completely and held Issei's hand. "If you intervene, I swear I will never forgive you. Even if you end up hating me, I will put it in a way that you understand." The chestnut holds the cheeks of the black hair with both hands, forcing her to look directly into his eyes. "If you intervene, you will never be able to see me again. I will hate you to such a degree that if you get to set foot here, I will attack you with everything I have, even if I have to resort to it." Seeing the complete seriousness in the chestnut's gaze, the black-haired woman became nervous and looked away. "That's the way it is. You decide if you want to intervene," I finished the chestnut while leaving the room. "Issei," the black-haired grinding her teeth as she pressed both hands against her idiot chest. Meanwhile, the chestnut tree walked down the hall, where he ran into a specific man, who waved at him, so the chestnut tree returned the greeting and stopped in front of him. "Hiro-san, is something wrong?" asked the chestnut tree. "Not much, it's just that the kids told me you were in danger," Hiro replied. "Aha, it's not that bad, just a horrible creature. Mosquito, maybe a spider." "Don't tell me that." "That's right, it was The chestnut swallowed saliva while sweating. "Cockroach." "God." Hiro began to look at the walls. "Those creatures are worse than demons." "I think so. By the way, Hiro-san, in a while I'll do that, so let everyone know." "That? Oh, is that time already?" "Okay, I'll let everyone know. I order it for you." After saying that, the chestnut just went on its way. Hours later, after the chestnut had left her alone in the room, the black hare was completely silent inside the room for several hours. After apparently she came to a kind of conclusion, she left the room, to notice that it was already a little late. The sky began to turn orange. The black hare began to go through the building to notice that there was absolutely no one in it, which confused her. She continued walking through the corridors, checking rooms, but found no one. Under the stairs to later leave the building and see how all the people, including those owners of Longinus and sacred gears, were a few meters in front of the building, all together looking at the building. "What's going on?" asked the black hare as she approached the crowd. "What's wrong?" "Oh, you're just in time, Off-Ice," said the black-haired. "You've never seen Issei do it before, haven't you?" "Cow. Do what?" "I tell him," interrupted BGMI does it once a month. I do not understand very well, but he does it to take out the stress just before doing something big or complicated." "But what does it do?" asked the black-haired man again. "We have no idea. It's my first time too, I speak the nun." "Same I," Brigade added. "Just look, you'll understand later," suggested the blackhead. The black-haired woman noticed that the crowd was not exactly looking at the building, but was looking at the roof of it, where the chestnut tree was located. "Issei?" asked the black-haired woman with confusion. The chestnut tree simply stood on the roof of the building, staring at the sky while his hair fluttered in the breeze of the wind, which made the black hare feel a warm feeling in his chest. The chestnut continued to look at the sky for a few more seconds, then, under his gaze, but his eyes were closed. His face showed complete anger and he began to clench his fists with fierce force. An incredible pressure began to be felt throughout the air. Little by little the ground began to shake slowly. The chestnut let out a long and heavy sigh, but it seemed that he was blowing fire, then inhaled a huge amount of air that made his chest inflate slightly and clenching fists look again at the sky. The chestnut tree let out a powerful and overwhelming scream. It completely shook the entire base. The building felt the incredible pressure. The ground began to be destroyed little by little. Some glass in the building broke. Debris began to levitate. The screaming power of the chestnut tree was amazing. "I never get used to seeing him," said the black hare, covering his ears. "But it is very surprising. It almost looks like a Roar River Jean doing the same as the blackhead." "Surprising," the nun said admiringly as she covered her ears. Brigade said, feeling the pressure in her ears from the mighty cry of the chestnut tree. The entire crowd showed big smiles as they covered their ears, even though the ground itself was suffering damage, just like the building was destroyed a bit. People didn't seem to care much. Even the children, who had headphones to lighten the noise, were excited as they watched the chestnut scream. The powerful cry of the chestnut continued for several minutes. The duration was surprising. Among all in the crowd there was a specific woman who had enough emotion to see the chestnut scream. The palangra, Off-Ice, who showed brightness in his eyes and his expressionless face showed emotion. "Issei," said the black-haired woman as she pressed her hands to her chest, you look exactly like." An incredible surge of wind and sound made the crowd completely recede, which also ended the surprisingly overwhelming cry of the chestnut. The debris that had begun to levitate fell to the ground. Inside the building countless glass shattered, but still the crowd kept its smile. Clap, 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 clap. The whole crowd began to applaud. The chestnut man smiled from the ceiling and bowed in appreciation of the applause, then waved while showing a big smile. "That's great. Issei Nai-chan is amazing. Issei Nai is the best. No one can handle him." Between cheers from the whole crowd, the black-haired woman simply watched with great amazement and excitement in her gaze. This feeling in her chest was so strange that it confused her. Hours later, after the spectacle that the chestnut tree had provided, the men quickly began repairs to the building, so everyone understood that that night no one would sleep. And how could they, if the next day those people who had protected them would leave for the underworld? This time, women and men began repairs to the building. Even the participants of the attack were helping. Even though everyone refused, the owners of Longinus and sacred gear ended up helping with repairs. The chestnut tree was again at the highest point of the roof sitting, looking carefully at the ground full of people carrying glass and wood. "Issei," the chestnut heard that they called him, so he looked behind him, where he saw the black hare with a pair of dragon wings extended. It flew and stood in front of the chestnut, created a kind of platform of dark purple aura and sat on it, being now sitting in front of the chestnut. "What do you want, Off-Ice?" asked the chestnut. "I wanted to ask you for forgiveness," replied the palangra, because of what happened a while ago. "I do not understand why you ask me for forgiveness." "Well, I didn't want you to be angry with me. I don't want to fight with you." "You imply that I would lose, don't you?" "No, I say I don't want to fight you seriously. So when we fight you see it as a game. It's not that." Rio the chestnut was playing. "Don't worry, I understand." "Gra, thank you." Both smiled at each other. The chestnut averted his gaze to the bright moon, showing a lost look. The black-haired man noticed this and came a little closer to the chestnut and put a hand on his cheek. The chestnut smiled and held the hand of the black-haired. "I'm fine," said the chestnut tree. "Sorry, I thought I should," said the black-haired. "Don't worry, everything is fine." "Did you remember anything?" "Let's say if." "Why Issei? Why of all the Maoists do you want to attack Lucifer?" "Let's say that." The chestnut let go of the hand of the black hare and looked again at the moon with a lost look. "Lucifer has a debt to me. After saying that, the black-haired resigned herself to not saying or doing anything, and simply felt the breeze of the wind in her hair while admiring the chestnut. Meanwhile, Jean stared at them from below, biting her shirt while carrying wooden bars. As I hate that Off-Eyes always gets romantic with I-chan, growls the blonde. Leave her alone, she doesn't come every day, said the black-haired, approaching the blonde. But she's been staying here for almost a week, sleeping in I-chan's room. Maybe she and I-chan already. No, Issei told me that nothing happens, so don't worry. It is okay. The two continued to carry lumber while still helping with repairs. Far away, and sitting on a pile of wood piled on the floor, Leonardo the expressionless little watched his people work. But he did not seem to have intentions of helping. He only created various humanoid forms the size of his hand and looked at them. That's not how Issei said the expressionless boy. Without saying anything else, he continued to create small humanoid forms. Far away and helping the women, the nun and Wahlberger were carrying small wood and leaving it in a place where there was already a lot of wood piled up. Say what you want, Asia, but I think the relationship of Off-Eyes and Issei-chan is a bit strange, Wahlberger said. Well, I'm not the one to judge, but I think the same, replied the nun. Maybe she'll sleep with him again tonight. I'll sneak in. Sneak in. I will sneak into Issei-chan's room and sleep next to him and Off-Eyes. You can't do that, exclaimed the nun nervously. I'll not do anything wrong, I'll just make sure nothing happens between them, Wahlberger replied with excitement on her face, plus she seemed to be drooling. Your face doesn't tell me the same thing. What do you say, Asia? Do you want to come? Go. To Issei-chan's room. Issei-san's room. The nun, I imagine. The nun entering Issei's room, he received her lying on his bed, with nothing on his torso, letting her look at him freely, her gentle eyes shining. The bed sheet covering little more than the waist of the chestnut, a path of roses from the door to the bed, candles all over the room, the chestnut man calling her with his finger while winking at her. After imagining it, the nun exploded, turned red as tomato, and steam was coming out of her head. And we can't, exclaimed the nun blushing. I suppose that's a lot for you, Wahlberger sighs. It's not too much for me. Could you stand it? Well, that depends, replied the nun playing with her fingers. Let's leave it for later. After saying that, Wahlberger and the nun continued to carry wood and then stack it. A night of full activity throughout the base, repairs and conversations made the entire night a complete scandal. The next day, it was already little more than noon, the repairs were almost finished, but absolutely all the men, women and children were gathered outside the building, since apparently the time of departure of the Chestnut group had arrived. El Castano and his group were gathered in front of the entire crowd, carrying backpacks. Among other things, they had all put a black sack on top with a hood, which covered most of their bodies and faces. It's time. I speak the Chestnut saying goodbye to everyone with his hand. Yes, nodded everyone turning around. The Palangre, Off-Eyes, made a large dimensional crack appear just in front of the Chestnut group. This seemed to suck everything, but it was not so. One by one, each and every one of those who would participate in the attack entered the crack to later disappear. Now the last ones left were the black hair and the Chestnut. We will return for when night falls. By then, the Chestnut looked directly at a woman who was wearing an apron. I hope for a banquet. They sure the woman with the apron as she put her arms up. See you. The Chestnut tree went into the dimensional crack after the Palangre entered. Seconds later the dimensional crack disappeared, since its function was over, which was to teleport everyone to the underworld, the place where they would attack Lucifer. Underworld, Gremory Mansion. Meeting room. In one of the many rooms of the immense mansion corresponding to the Gremory family, there was a large number of people gathered. The room was bigger than any other. It had several glass lamps hanging from the ceiling. From the door to the end of the room there was a thick and bright red carpet. At the end of this, there was a large golden throne, pillars with various decorations on the sides, windows with flower ornaments, and so on. There were lots of tables and seats throughout the room. Some tables were already occupied, but the number that remained to be occupied was much more. Sitting on the throne imposingly was a man with long crimson hair and glowing blue eyes. It was none other than the guest of honor, Mao Lucifer, who watched guests arrive. On one of the many tables in the room, a redhead in particular had an expression of disgust, since she wore a beautiful white dress with flower decorations on it. It almost looked like a wedding dress. Sitting next to this redhead were two people, an older man with red hair wearing a fancy suit worthy of a white nobleman. On the other side was a woman identical to the redhead but with brown hair, wearing a completely red ensemble and a golden tiara on her head, these two being the parents of the redhead. I don't want to get married, the redhead growls in anger. It's not time for tantrums. Ria's refutal at Chestnut y estamos aquí. Besides that this commitment is necessary for demons to thrive. I add, the redhead sorry laughs, but you have to do it. Both parents stood up and went to some of the guests, so the redhead just gnashed her teeth and tapped the table lightly. Ara Rias. The redhead heard that they called her. She looked over her shoulder, where she saw her faithful and best friend, Hanjima Aquino. She wore a clean and beautiful black yukata with orange flower decorations on it, sandals to match the yukata. Is all right, laughs? Asked the brunette, taking a seat next to the redhead. No, father did not want to cancel the engagement, replied the redhead heavily. I understand why. Pure-blooded demons are scarce nowadays. Plus, we don't know when the war against heaven breaks out again. The compromise between you and the Phoenix heir is necessary if we want to have an advantage in the next great war. I thought the plan to guarantee our victory was the Longinus. That's how it was originally, but I don't have to remind you that even if we collect 12 Longinus, there will be one that we won't be able to collect. The redhead quickly understood what the brunette was trying to say, so she simply clenched her fists while biting her lower lip. The general's Longinus, isn't it? Asked the redhead angrily. That's Ria's, replied the brunette. No matter how hard we try to collect Longinus, we won't achieve anything if we don't bring it to him on our side. Bringing him to this side is impossible. If Oni-sama wants to have his Longinus, he will need to kill him and get the next possessor. I do not see the way the general accepts us. I do not approve of Oni-sama's methods to win the war, and neither does the general. You're still against enslaving humanity, aren't you? Asked the brunette. That's right, it was a vile method. You Issei Aquino, do you approve of the methods of Oni-sama? Surzech-sama is our Mao Lucifer. Going against him is impossible. However, right now I am your best friend. The path you choose, I will follow it until my last day. Thank you. In that case, I want to tell you what I have planned. Planned? Yes, to tell the truth. I hope I don't know anything as crazy as going against the Mao, or if. Ria's. A third voice was heard near these two friends, so the redhead with surprise looked behind her, surprised and smiling at the same time, the redhead with her hand to sit this third person. Sona Citri, heiress of the Citri clan, wearing a beautiful purple dress, matching slippers, with a black bow at the waist. Sona sat in the other free seat next to the redhead and joined the conversation. Well, what do you have planned? Asked the black-haired. It's nothing like what you say it sounds like. They would never go against Oni-sama, replied the redhead. So, asked the brunette. To tell the truth, I had planned to run away or something like that. The two friends of the redhead simply showed an expression of complete disappointment, so the redhead understood that such a plan was completely ruled out. Sighing, put her hands on her chin and began to think. What can I do? Asked the redhead. I recommend you try to challenge him, suggested the Palangre. Bet your hand and win. But challenge. Rias is right, nodded the brunette. Even if you lose, in reality you would not lose anything. If you win, the only one who wins is you. I'm not sure. Do it now that you can. The black hair, I look behind him or not? Razor. The redhead was very surprised and looked behind her, where she exchanged glances with that man who was her fiancé, heir of the Phoenix clan, with blonde hair. Razor Phoenix was standing behind the redhead. He wore an all-red suit with a white shirt underneath with black shoes. The shirt was open, showing his chest. How much are they talking about? Rias spoke, the blonde leaning his face towards that of the redhead. That's not what interests you, Razor, growled the redhead. You arrived just in time, to tell you the truth. I refuse. The three girls were surprised by the blonde's quick response. I asked to sound nice, but I actually heard everything they were talking about. Rio the blonde. Then you just won't accept? Asked the redhead. I may be a coward, but if that allows me to marry you, I wouldn't mind being a coward. The blonde simply showed a wide smile and turned around, proceeding to leave while waving goodbye. The redhead furiously tapped lightly on the table while clenching his fist. He does honor to his clan, said the black-haired woman earnestly. I didn't think he was so cowardly. But if it is, said the redhead heavily, I'll have to think of something else. We are running out of time, Rias interrupted the brunette. Mao-sama will soon make the official announcement. If that happens, you will not be able to do anything. Lose very well. The redhead turned his gaze to the Mao Lucifer sitting on his throne at the back of the room. The Mao noticed the redhead's gaze on him and smiled while waving at him. The redhead did the same, but smiled forcefully. The redhead grinds her teeth and looks at the ceiling of the room to say, how will I get rid of this? Outskirts of the Gremory Mansion. The huge Gremory Mansion, being a little separated from the big city corresponding to the territory of Lucifer, was completely surrounded by large gardens full of trees and other things. Completely surrounding the mansion, there were hundreds of guards. On all sides, it seemed impenetrable. Standing in front of the mansion, there was a large group of people, who in their entirety had a black sack covering their faces and most of their bodies. One of the group took off his hood, showing his brown hair and bright honey eyes. It was Hayato Issei. It seems that we arrived on time. Sighs the chestnut. Go take your positions, and wait for the signal. Yes. Before the words of the chestnut, everyone nodded to later begin to move quickly in different directions. The chestnut stayed a few seconds more looking at the mansion from the front, released a heavy sigh and prepared to leave, but something caught his attention. A demon who was possibly a guest was standing very close to where the chestnut was. He wore a clean and elegant tuxedo. The chestnut looked at his clothes, and then the guest sighed and began to walk towards them. I hope they are my size. Without saying anything else, the chestnut tree simply disappeared. Meeting room. It had been a few minutes since Princess Gremory had run into her fiancé. Things were going from bad to worse for the redhead, because no matter how hard she tried, neither she nor her two friends managed to find a way to get rid of the engagement, and the time for the official announcement had arrived. Tick, 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 tick. The Mao Lucifer hit a cup with his spoon, causing a distinctive sound throughout the room, which signaled to all the guests to be silent and take a seat. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for being here. I speak the Mao. Today we are celebrating the union between two clans, my Gremory clan and the Phoenix clan. At the words of the Mao, the two heirs of the aforementioned clan stood up, greeted the crowd, and took their seats again. Since this is a special celebration for the betrothed, I would like to ask you to inaugurate the ball. The Mao laughed subtly as he snapped his fingers, which caused the music to start playing. Both fiancés, the redhead and the blonde, went to the center of the room, adjusted their arms, and to the sound of the music began to dance. I told you couldn't do anything, Riz Rio El Rubio. I still do not give up with this, growls the redhead. Even our parents get along very well, because you don't just give up. I never will. I do not intend to accept this compromise. I will look for a way to get rid of it, even if it means going against Oni-sama. Oh, your look is scary, Riz Rio El Rubio. I would like to see you try. You will, rest assured, Rio the redhead. The music ended. Both fiancés bowed to each other, waved, and took their seats again. Just after them, the music again began to play, which made the guests stand up and go to the center of the room to start dancing. Dance, exclaimed the Mao with a smile. The guests started dancing. Even the redhead's parents had started dancing. Sarorg and her Kushia were also dancing, Lord and Lady Phoenix, current leaders of Phoenix, and so on. But the Mao remained seated on his throne with his faithful platinum-made Peli standing next to. What happened, Rias? Asked the black-haired. Nothing, sounds. I just told them I wouldn't give up and cancel this engagement, replied the redhead. Now that it is made official, there is not much we can do, added the brunette. Where are Kiba and Kaneko? They are in Hala, dancing. The brunette pointed to the center of the room, where indeed, the blonde Gremory and the loli were dancing together. The blonde smiled, but the loli had that expressionless face. I guess it's okay for them, sighed the redhead. What do you plan to do? Asked the brunette. I don't know. There is not much to do. You would have to force him to have a rating game and bet your hand, but the odds that he accepts. The black-haired sigh are 0%. Lose very well, but still. I wish I could be with someone I really love. I know it sounds selfish of me, but at least. The redhead was sad. Don't worry, we understand you. That's right, and we will do everything we can to help you. Thank you, but as you said, there is not much that. The redhead was completely silent, which made the blackhead confused. The redhead's body had begun to shake hard. She had begun to sweat. Her pupils were very dilated. She clenched her fists tightly. Rias, that's it? The brunette asked, being in the same state as the redhead. Yes, there is no doubt about it, replied the redhead while noticing that her parents had stopped dancing and were looking in all directions. Seconds later, Kiba and Kaneko approached the redhead's table, which confirmed their suspicions. This is here. That's impossible. Why would I be here? I don't know, but it's I'm sure. Rias-sama, you won't be saying. The blonde Gremory was very nervous. Yes, what are they talking about? Asked the black-haired with a lot of doubt. What are they talking about? He's here, sounds. The Crimson General. The redhead's words echoed in the head of the hair. She didn't know him very well, however. That name had traveled the underworld several times. Stories, and many heartbreaking stories had been told under that name. A heartbreaking scream was heard behind the entrance door to the living room, which caught the attention of all those who were inside the room. The redhead knew very well that it was, which is why together with her entourage, she approached where her parents, where Sarorg and Kushia were also. A river of blood began to pass under the door. The floor in front of the door was stained red for several meters, until seconds later the blood stopped rising. That's it. The front door exploded. A strong and sweeping wind completely whipped the room. A smoke screen rose, preventing anyone from seeing what was where the door previously was. But the redhead and company knew very well that it was. A silhouette could be noticed inside the smoke screen, which made the guests feel curious about what was there. The silhouette began to become clearer, until the owner of the silhouette came out of the smoke screen. Hayato Issei, his brown hair fluttered in the wind coming in from outside the room. His honey eyes shone brightly sticking out on his face. He wore a clean and elegant black tuxedo. Only he had his jacket open and his shirt unfaded, and he loosened his tie as he walked in. His shiny black shoes, he had taken on a slight reddish hue from the blood on the floor. Well, look what a beautiful party. The chestnut tree as he threw the tie away from him. I'm glad it's not over. The chestnut stopped centimeters after the lake of blood, looking straight at the redhead sitting on his throne at the back of the room. The model Lucifer was looking at him with that pair of bright blue eyes, and his face was content. Rejoice, Lucifer, the guest of honor you've been waiting for arrived, exclaimed the chestnut tree while smiling broadly. Hayato Issei, come and take your head. Outskirts of Gremory Mansion, east side. The layers that should be safeguarding this side of the mansion were on the ground, dead. Some were turning to ashes while others were simply lying on the ground with a handful of swords stuck in their bodies. Standing near this massacre were Cao. The black-haired man wore that mixture of uniforms that he almost always wore, while he was sitting on the ground resting his spear on his shoulder. Near him, there was a blonde woman, Jean, who wore a red blouse with black jeans, shoes of the same color. She was simply sitting on the floor, looking at one of the halls of the mansion, specifically the meeting room. Almost? Asked the blonde heavily. Not yet, we must wait for the signal, replied the black hair. It's quite boring to wait. I know, but if we ignore Issei, the plan fails. We must wait for the signal. I know. This would be easier if Issei let Off-Eyes help us. I'm with Ai-chan, we shouldn't let her help us. The only thing you want is that they are not together. These two laughed and then just waited, that sign they were longing for. Outskirts of Gremory Mansion, west side. Just on the other side of the mansion where Cao Cao and Jean were, there were a handful of lairs lying on the ground. There were some more away from the place, indicating that they tried to flee. However, each and every one of the lairs that were dead on the ground were enveloped in a hot and incessant purple flame. Near where the lairs were burning, there were 2 women, 2 blondes, one wearing an innocent nun's costume, the other wearing a gothic Lolita dress and had bows in her short hair. "Sorry to ask you this." "Sorry, Walburga." "It's nothing, that's what I came for," replied the nun as she healed a small wound on Walburga's arm. "Haven't you given the signal yet?" "Not yet." "I understand." Outskirts of Gremory Mansion, south side. All the lairs that should be guarding this side of the mansion were lying on the ground on a huge river of their own blood. It was not for less. Each and every one of the lairs that were lying on the ground dead did not have the head, even some did not have much of their torso. It was as if it had exploded them. From the ground, one of the guards stood up as best he could and prepared to run, but before he could do so, a small humanoid figure went inside his ear. Seconds later, like the other lairs, the head of this demon exploded, making the river of blood bigger. Near this great massacre, there was a small child sitting on a tree trunk, wearing a preschool suit, but this was stained with blood. Despite that, the child had a completely indifferent face and did not show any expression. It was none other than Leonardo. "It's like Issei said. I speak," the child looking at a humanoid figure in his hand, "so it's easier." Leonardo closed his eyes and began to breathe slowly, so it lasted several seconds. Then he opened his eyes suddenly and they shone brightly. "If we want the plan to go as Issei said, it's time for me to get ready," said Leonardo. Balance breaker. Meeting room. The chestnut continued to exchange glances with the Mao Lucifer, who since he saw the chestnut enter, was apparently very happy. However, he was the only one. All those who already knew the chestnut were very scared and surprised to see him, the guests horrified to see the lake of blood that the chestnut had cast. "I guess not everyone is happy to see me," sighed the chestnut. "Where is it?" The chestnut began to search through the whole crowd. After a few seconds he seemed to have found what he was looking for. Fixing his gaze directly on the heiress Gremory, the chestnut smiled at seeing the redhead. "Now you do not know that the dress is worn during the wedding?" "I asked. The chestnut is not used in the engagement party." The redhead advanced in front of the whole crowd and looked directly at the chestnut. "What are you doing here, Hayato Issei?" asked the redhead. "I thought I said it a few moments ago," said the chestnut tree. "I come for Lucifer's head." The words of the chestnut caused intense pressure on the redhead, much more the expression of complete naturalness on the face of the chestnut, indicating that he was not joking and would certainly fulfill his words. A large number of lairs wearing armor surrounded the chestnut, but he was not even moved by the fact. Rather, he smiled. "I don't have time for you," said the chestnut tree, looking at all the lairs around him. "Die." The chestnut's eyes became gloomy, which is why the redhead was alarmed and advanced shouting. Dismissed. However, it was too late. The redhead stopped. Her body was shaking a lot. Her eyes were wide. She could not move. From one second to another, a sea of blood reached the feet of the redhead, thus staining her heels. Without anyone being able to notice, each and every guard around the chestnut tree was found dead on the ground. The chestnut tree showed no signs of moving. The bodies of the dens were completely shattered, limbs scattered everywhere, simply horrifying. "I think you should get better guards," said the chestnut, wiping some blood from his face. "Lucifer." The redhead, overwhelmed by the scene in front of her, fell to the ground on her ass, staining both the dress and her hands with blood. "Oh, why?" asked the panicked redhead. "Calm down, Rias Gremory. Today I do not come for you," said the chestnut, advancing a step. "I come for Lucifer, so if it is not a nuisance." The chestnut wrapped his body in a thick and hostile mantle of red energy. The chestnut's honey eyes began to glow brightly. The blood on which he was standing began to levitate. The chestnut pointed his finger at the crowd. "Disappear," said the chestnut tree. The redhead, being in front of everyone lying and bloodied on the ground, began to drag back as she panicked. Out of nowhere, the chestnut tree took a step back, and in front of LKO an immense fireball that exploded with force, igniting several meters in flames. "Razor!" exclaimed the redhead, surprised to see the blonde land in front of her. "HMPH, smug human," growled Razor confidently. The intense flames that the attack of the blonde had caused were extinguished surprisingly, showing between a transparent smoke screen the figure of the chestnut, which did not show a single sign of damage. "The next time you attack someone by surprise, try to really be surprised," sighed the chestnut. "If you make such striking attacks, the surprise disappears, you know." The chestnut simply shook his elegant suit while sighing in disappointment. After having completely shaken his suit, he looked directly at the blonde. "As I just said, today I do not come for any of you unimportant demons," said the chestnut. "I come solely and exclusively for Lucifer. If you do not want to die, I recommend that you stay out of it." "Who the hell do you believe to say that?" growls the blonde. "Disagrees. A mere human does not have the right to even think about facing Surzech-sama. Besides, you interrupted my engagement party." "True, sorry for that, but this was the only day when Lucifer's excessive protection would be vulnerable, so I decided to attack today." The chestnut smiled accordingly. The blonde growled in anger at the confident attitude of the chestnut. Again the blonde wrapped both arms in incessant flames, which made the chestnut sigh heavily. "I just told you, why are all demons like this?" asked the chestnut tree, shaking his head. "I intended to kill only Lucifer, but if you can't stay out of it, I'm afraid I won't be able to restrain myself with you." The chestnut showed a wide and worrying smile. The blonde simply grunted in anger against it. But those who knew the chestnut before knew very well that the one who was in danger was the heir Phoenix. Lord Phoenix, I speak, Lord Gremory, approaching the aforementioned. I ask you to make your son retire. He is in danger. Danger? Asked this confused. Is he a mere human? What could he do? You don't understand. He is. The blonde phoenix attacked the chestnut again with 2 huge fireballs. The fire of the attack made the temperature of the room increase drastically. Even so, the chestnut did not even show signs of dodging. It is more, this side disappointed and did not flinch to see the 2 fireballs approaching. The chestnut blow. The simple blowing of the chestnut made the 2 fireballs disappear completely without leaving any kind of trace, which completely surprised everyone. Even the Mao showed surprise. The blonde was completely confused. His attack had been completely dispelled by a simple blow. Your fire is very weak, said the chestnut. I recommend that you be careful. The blonde was confused. The chestnut looked at his feet. The confused blonde directed his gaze towards his feet, where he noticed something curious. This was surrounded by dark green spheres. No, they were not spheres. They were fragmentation grenades. This is... The blonde looked at the chestnut. Bum, laughed the chestnut, showing a handful of locks on his fingers. A loud explosion completely engulfed the blonde. Some worried more than others, yet Lord Phoenix and his wife, Lady Phoenix, were unfazed to see their son explode. The smoke from the explosion quickly dissipated, showing the blonde's body completely devastated. Some of his limbs had been completely separated from his body and lay scattered around the room. Even so, the parents did not even flinch. The blonde's whole body was completely restored to flames, completely healing each and every one of his wounds. The limbs lying around the room disappeared, turning into ashes. Now the blonde, just reborn, smiled. I see. A phoenix, said Chestnut. That only makes things more fun. What are you talking about? Asked the curious blonde. Your head. The blonde directed one of his hands on his head, where he noticed that he had something on it. It had a spherical shape. The blonde held it on his head and put it at the height of his face to see that it was. Bum! River the chestnut, turning his safety on his finger. Again an explosion, this time right in the face of the phoenix. The head of this disappeared completely, as well as a stretch of his torso and arms, but this simply recovered again and looked at the chestnut. You should already know that does not work, Rio the blonde. I'm just trying, said the chestnut tree, smiling. Think quickly. The chestnut threw something to the blonde. He directed his gaze to the object that had thrown him, which could not distinguish very well that it was. For when the object was about to be caught by the blonde, and was in front of this, he noticed that the object was another grenade. Boom! Again the grenade exploded, completely destroying half of the blonde. But like the 2 previous times, the body of the blonde was simply restored, and he crossed his arms looking at the chestnut. Loses its grace after a few times, growls the blonde. Come on, you have to admit that it was fun, Rio El Castano, but hey, it's about time I confirm my suspicions. Suspicions? The brown appeared just in front of the blonde. A strong wind completely whipped the blonde, who still did not respond to the rapid movements of the chestnut. The blonde responded as fast as he could and instinctively tried to hit the brown. The blow was simply dodged by the chestnut, who turning quickly positioned himself behind this. The brown kicked the blonde's calf, forcing him to put a knee on the ground. The blonde was surprised by the sudden change of position. The brown appeared in front of him and held one of the blonde's arms, applying a wrench to the arm forcefully and quickly. The brown completely fractured the blonde's arm. Erg! Cry of pain. The blonde. As I thought, said the chestnut, releasing the fractured arm of the blonde. If your arm is torn off, this recovers. But if I make sure to keep it together, then it hurts. Interesting. The chestnut smiled, which frightened the blonde. The chestnut held the other arm of the blonde, doing exactly the same as with the other, fractured it completely, which made the blonde agonize while screaming in pain. Shut up. Silence the chestnut, your screams are annoying. The chestnut attached to the blonde of the shirt, forcing him to stand up. The blonde, having both arms fractured, had no choice but to attack the chestnut with his legs. But this idea disappeared when the chestnut kicked the knee of the right leg of this. The blonde's right knee broke completely, causing him to fall to the ground in agony of pain. The chestnut simply sighed when he saw the blonde on the ground. I'm going to do you a favor, said the chestnut tree, taking another grenade from his pocket. The chestnut removed the safety of the pomegranate and placed this in the mouth of the blonde. The chestnut turned the safety on his finger while whistling back until the explosion occurred. The smoke emerged. Seconds after the smoke, the blonde ran out again, placing himself a few steps in front of the redhead, so the brown looked at him curiously. Oh, even though I told you not to meddle, are you going to do it? Said the chestnut, smiling. Madame, cried the blonde. Girls. Immediately at the call of the blonde, a large group of women appeared in front of the blonde, standing between him and the chestnut. Exactly 15. In their entirety they were beautiful, wearing different clothes between them. Who ordered these beauties? Laughed the chestnut, looking at the group of women. Unfortunately for all of you, I have very demanding tastes, so I'm afraid I'll say goodbye. Attack! Exclaimed the blonde in fury. Nodding to the blonde's command, the huge group of women rushed straight towards the chestnut tree, who was a little surprised to see them all coming together. Wait, I'm not ready yet, said the chestnut, putting his hands in front of him. I need time. A powerful wind completely swept away the entire room, and intense pressure accompanied by a brief crimson flash dazzled everyone, for when the blonde regained his vision, he opened his eyes so much that they almost popped out. The chestnut was already in front of him. He was smiling and scratching his neck. However, this was by far the most relaxing. Most of the girls who attacked the chestnut tree were lying on the ground completely motionless and out of combat. They were bleeding, wounded, spitting and vomiting blood. Even so, it seemed that they were all alive and only knocked out. Of all the girls, only 2 stood. 2 girls who were barely holding their swords were the 2 of Razor. They were completely overwhelmed. Their eyes were wide. The sword that held each of them trembled to seconds later, destroyed completely. The 2 girls turned around and looked at the chestnut tree. "How can you be so fast?" they asked before falling down with the others. "Is that you are very slow," sighs the chestnut. "Now you're squeal Razor, slowly receding. "I thought I had told you not to interrupt. Damn human." The blonde again tried to attack the chestnut with his arms wrapped in flames. The chestnut quickly held both arms of the blonde. Even though these were on fire, he did not seem to care. Having both arms of the blonde fastened, the chestnut smiled. "How many times will I have to kill you so that you are no longer reborn?" asked the chestnut tree, smiling in a terrifying way. The chestnut kicked with all his strength the torso of the blonde, causing him to shoot out with great force backwards. The blonde continued until he collided with the back wall, exactly a few meters next to where the Mao Lucifer was sitting smiling. But Razor's body had no arms. These arms were held by the chestnut. The chestnut sighed and threw his arms into the crowd, exactly where Lord Phoenix was. Lord Phoenix leaned to the ground to take the arms of his son, but at the moment he touched them, he turned them into ashes. Looking up, he directed it directly to the chestnut tree. "Excuse me, old man, but this time I don't have the time to deal with you," said the chestnut tree earnestly. The chestnut looked in front of him, where the redhead was lying on the ground trembling as he looked at him. The confused chestnut advanced to where the redhead, being a few steps in front of her, even sighed, said the chestnut looking directly at the redhead. The redhead was very scared. As a result of this, her body trembled and could not move. "It seems that fear does not let you move. It's okay." The chestnut pointed his hand at the redhead. His eyes flashed brightly as he covered himself with an immense mantle of red energy, showing an icy and gloomy face. "I'll just move you," said the chestnut tree coldly. The redhead panicked when she saw that a red sphere appeared in the chestnut's hand. This, in a state of panic, desperately tried to move back. But her fear prevented her from moving, which made her simply fall to the ground bloodied under her, covering her dress with blood. "A pity," said the chestnut, sighing. A huge lightning fell on the chestnut, surprising the redhead. This confused looked at how in front of her appeared a small loli with platinum hair. Her faithful servant, Kaneko, appeared in front of the redhead and hit hard the still electrocuted chestnut. The chestnut shuffled back. His body was expelling steam. His clothes had torn a little and he was looking at the ground without answering yet. The chestnut tree looked up slowly. His bright honey eyes showed only one intention: kill. The intense pressure of the chestnut's gaze forced the loli to fall to her knees to the ground trembling. The chestnut tilted her body back a little, and just in front of her face, a blade passed quickly, and in front of the chestnut, the blonde Kiba appeared, with his elegant tuxedo brandishing a sword. Again the blonde tried to cut the chestnut. This time, the chestnut not elusive. The sword was stopped a few millimeters from the head of the chestnut. The body of the blonde trembled with great force and the blade was completely destroyed. The trembling blonde still looked at the ground, puzzled. The chestnut put a hand on the blonde's chest and smiled broadly. "Fly, Rio El Castano." The blonde shot out with tremendous power backwards, the ground where he was destroyed. Even so, the loli was fast enough to stand up and catch the blonde, being now the 2 in front of the redhead. "Yudo, Kaneko," said the redhead, smiling. "Don't worry, Ria-sama, even if it's against the general. We will protect her," the blonde exclaimed confidently. "Yes," Loli nodded her head. "Ara, do not forget my..." The sadistically smiling brunette landed right next to the blonde, now being the redhead's 3 servants standing between her and the chestnut tree. "I knew I must have killed you that time," said the chestnut tree with complete seriousness. "Your rays are too annoying." "Ara, sorry, but I cannot let that happen, Fufufu." Ria Lemorna. Joining these 3, both the father and mother of the redhead faced the chestnut. Seconds later, Sarorg and Kushia joined, causing the number of opponents of the chestnut to increase even more. "Seeing you 2 together gives me some nostalgia." Chestnut River looking at the father and mother of the redhead. "Even so, I don't have the time to deal with you." An immense blanket of energy enveloped the chestnut tree's body, completely cracking the floor. All the windows in the room were broken. The ceiling began to crumble. Intense waves of power swept through the room. Each and every guest, as well as those who opposed the chestnut, were forced to back away while covering themselves with their arms. "Honey, this is," Venelana said fearfully. Lord Gremory nodded. "The power of the general," finished the redhead with amazement. Something happened that surprised everyone a lot. Unlike what anyone expected, the chestnut did not move a single millimeter from where it was. However, through one of the many broken windows, a long, bright and sharp object entered at an incredible speed. This object, that apparently was a spear, went straight to the chestnut. The chestnut caught this spear with ease and smiled, looking directly at the Mao Lucifer sitting in the background, which showed great surprise to see what the chestnut held. The chestnut turned only once, thus causing a powerful wind that whipped everyone and forced them to throw themselves to the ground. Around the chestnut tree a cyclone of crimson flames was created, originated by that turn that the chestnut had made. Everyone was surprised. They were vulnerable being on the floor, but even so, the chestnut did not pay attention to them. His bright honey eyes were directed solely and exclusively to the demon sitting on the throne at the end of the hall, the Mao Lucifer. Just behind the Mao, a woman appeared. This woman had long blonde hair and smiled when she saw that the Mao had not noticed her. It was Jean, who looked at the chestnut sideways and subsequently proceeded to place her hands on the ground. An infinity of swords of all kinds came from the ground around the throne where the Mao Lucifer was sitting, which went directly to it, but did not go through it anywhere. They were simply carefully placed so that the Mao could not move a single muscle. The chestnut tree smiled at seeing the state the Mao was in, so the crimson fire cyclone around him turned into an immense hurricane that began to completely burn the ceiling of the hall. The chestnut tree again turned. This time, the spear brightened brightly of a crimson color. After turning and looking straight at the Mao Lucifer, the chestnut used the same momentum of his spin and threw the spear at this. The Mao was surprised. At the precise moment when the spear stopped having contact with the chestnut's hand, the power of the throw completely destroyed the ground behind the chestnut, as well as largely damaged the walls and pillars on the sides of the room. The throw was powerful and fast, that no one was able to even keep up with it. The spear successfully hit the body of the Mao, thus destroying the entire wall behind it, as well as the swords that held the Mao. There was a tremendous explosion where the Mao was. A huge smoke screen rose, so absolutely everyone was surprised to see that where the Mao was nowhere. The Mao Lucifer Samae, dead. The blonde appeared next to the chestnut tree. The chestnut tree smiled at her and then directed his gaze directly to the smoke screen at the back of the room. Did he die? Asked the blonde, pulling the chestnut sack. Of course not, replied the chestnut, only we made him angry. The chestnut tilted his head slightly to the right, and at an overwhelming speed, the spear he had previously thrown passed a few millimeters from his cheek and continued on its way backwards, destroying a part of the mansion. How scary, said Jean, looking at the chestnut tree. It was time, Lucifer Rio El Castano. I thought you would stay all evening sitting. The smoke screen at the back of the room completely dissipated when it was whipped by a very powerful wind wave. When the smoke screen dissipated, it revealed the presence of the Mao Lucifer, standing in front of his shattered throne. The clothes of the Mao were a little torn and destroyed. Oh wow, said the Mao, showing a relaxed smile. Since you took the trouble to attend this party, I think it is my duty as Mao to assist you personally. I wouldn't be so sure, said the chestnut man, shaking his head. There's something about your head. My head? The Mao turned his gaze upwards, where he saw that the ceiling of the room was completely burned and about to be destroyed, but that was not what surprised everyone. The roof was completely destroyed. The Mao was surprised to see the unexpected destruction of the roof, but this was by far the most relaxing. The Mao, like all the other demons present, noticed that the roof had not been destroyed, but had been destroyed by something, and this something was a huge claw. The claw continued on its way and crushed the Mao, destroying much of the ground. The debris levitated a few seconds and then, the smoke emerged. Even so, the huge claw already covered a lot of space in the room. Now if he died, asked Jean, do you know the power level of a Mao? Replied the hysterical chestnut, of course he would not die for that. The huge claw slowly withdrew from the room after it came out of the huge hole that it had caused. Seconds later, the entire roof was completely torn off, showing the sky of the underworld. However, there was something huge furrowing these skies. No way, exclaimed the redhead, surprised. It's Jabberwocky. Crossing the skies, the huge creature Jabberwocky kept flying over the destroyed room. Riding on the shoulder of this huge creature, staring with complete indifference at all the demons present, was a boy wearing a preschool uniform. It was Leonardo, who simply stood on the shoulder of the beast while his eyes shone. Just as I instructed, said the chestnut man, putting his hand on his chin. Sometimes he is too obedient. He's a perfectionist, added Jean, sighing. Entering through one of the broken windows, a black-haired boy quickly positioned himself on one side of the chestnut. He wore a strange mixture of uniforms, and rested a spear on his shoulder. It was Cow. Did it work? Asked the black-haired, waving to the chestnut tree. Not at all. The chestnut tree denied returning the greeting. From among the debris that had originated thanks to the attack of the Jabberwocky, someone began to come out. The debris began to move slightly, until they flew out with great force, and a powerful crimson aura began to protrude from these until they took great height and diameter. The Mao Lucifer had come out of the rubble. His body shone brightly in sign of his anger. His clothes were already almost completely destroyed. Being that only the upper part was torn, he came out of the rubble and began to advance in a state of anger until he stood in front of all the guests and demons. Are you angry? Asked the chestnut tree, moving forward. Angry? Asked the Mao Lucifer, showing a big smile. Not at all. I am only very happy to know that I will be able to take at once the life of the Crimson General and that of the bearer of. Thank goodness, I thought you were angry. As you think. The ground under the Mao began to expel steam, so this looked at him confused. Out of nowhere, this took a bright purple tone, so the Mao was surprised and looked again at the chestnut. When I said we were trying to kill you, the chestnut man smiled. I didn't say we had stopped trying. From the floor came some incessant and bright purple flames that completely enveloped the Mao. This, having been taken by surprise, could not take action. The flames burned both the skin and the clothes of this. The Mao, in fury, expelled his aura surprisingly in a single way, causing a powerful wave of power that ended up destroying the sides of the room. The purple fire disappeared, showing the furious figure of the Mao Lucifer in front of the chestnut. The clothes of this were already burned. Even so, they were not completely destroyed. The body of the Mao shone brightly with a hostile crimson aura as it expelled steam. The black-haired Cao hit the ground in front of him with his spear, causing a hole in it, where two women entered, both blondes, one dressed as Gothic Lolita and another as a nun. When entering, these two went toward Jean and Cao. "Are you okay?" the nun asked, checking the bodies of both of them. "Yes, we're fine," the two replied, denying it. "What a relief. What do they say?" Walburga asked, smiling. Jean and Cao denied. "I thought at least my attack would." A powerful wave of power and wind pushed Walburga from behind, causing her to lose her balance and begin to fall forward. Cao caught her in this sigh. "Thank you," thanked Walburga, smiling. Walburga's thanks had not been answered, which confused her. She looked at the face of the black hair and noticed great emotion on his face. So she quickly stood up and turned around, ready to see where the chestnut tree was. "It's starting," said the black-haired man with a big smile. "Issei-chan is going to," Walburga said, very happy and excited. "Issei-san, don't tell me he's going to." The nun was also surprised. "That's right, Ai-chan is going to." Jean smiled happily, facing Lucifer. Standing in front of each other in the center of the room were the Mao and Chestnut. The two stared at each other, making the pressure of the room unbearable for those without a reasonable power level. The Chestnut honey eyes shone brightly in show of excitement. The Mao's eyes shone equally in anger. Around these two, an aura tornado slowly began to be created, which continued to grow to the height of the clouds, completely sucking the clouds from the sky, causing it to clear completely. Jabberwocky, being sucked into this aura tornado, was forced to land near the mansion to avoid being swept away. "I thought you had said you were not angry," spoke the Chestnut, smiling. "To hell, capture them alive. I will kill them with my own hand," sentenced the Mao. Increased his aura. "Wow, you're scary, but I guess I was expecting this." The Chestnut increased its power in the same way, being in conditions totally identical to those of the Mao. After a few seconds, both took relaxed postures and showed smiles. "Ready?" asked the Chestnut tree. "Whenever you want," replied the Mao. It was surprising, it was amazing, unpredictable, impossible. All the walls in the room that had not been destroyed were completely destroyed. The debris began to levitate, the pressure increased, the sky shook. The floor of the room was almost destroyed. The surroundings were still beginning to destroy and levitate. The sky was constantly illuminated by dazzling crimson flashes. It was too fast what was happening. Not everyone could keep up. Even so, those who could were more than surprised. Their eyes were wide open in a show of great attention to what was happening. The Chestnut was facing the Mao Lucifer, both wrapped in an overwhelming amount of power. They crossed the skies by colliding several times. Each time these two collided, they completely destroyed the surroundings. The mansion was being completely shaken by the amazing confrontation of these two. The guests were more than surprised. Even some fainted. "A human is that human? Are you standing up to a Mao?" With each collision, the power of these increased drastically. The foundation of the mansion could not withstand any longer. The power level of this battle was far above any expectations. The mansion could not withstand it. Even the sky trembled with each collision, causing dizziness in some people. The general, the redhead, barely stood up as facing Oni Isama. And is he winning? The two amazing opponents collided again, completely illuminating the sky. And unlike the other collisions this time, they were levitating in the sky in front of each other. "You know, I must admit that you surprised me, Lucifer," said the Chestnut, standing on a platform of his own red aura. "Don't expect you to be so powerful. Also underestimate you, General. It seems that this will take more than expected," replied the Mao. "What do you think if we increase the intensity?" The Chestnut appeared in front of the Mao. This still did not respond to the speed of the Chestnut. The Chestnut, without wasting the lack of attention of the Mao, launched a powerful direct blow to the chin of the Mao. The impact blow successfully. A powerful wave of expansion emerged from the punch. A strong wind whipped the area for several kilometers. The Chestnut tree smiled when he saw that the posture of the Mao was completely destroyed and it bent completely backwards. "I think it's fine if we turn up the intensity," replied the Mao, resuming his position. The Mao holds the Chestnut's shoulders with his arms, leaning his face towards that of the Chestnut, so the Chestnut tree was surprised to see the face of the Mao. Although he had hit a powerful blow, the hit area showed no damage, but was glowing brightly a strange reddish-black color. "Did you cover your body with power of destruction?" "Very successful, General Rio El Mao. Not for nothing are you a demon slayer." Both of them made their heads back, and seconds later, these two collided their heads with great power. An immense wave of expansion emerged. The surrounding soils were destroyed. The power of the shock was so much that the two shot backwards. The Chestnut simply kept looking directly at the Mao as his forehead bled, staining his face. The Mao on his side simply smiled in a relaxed manner as his forehead shone from being covered by the power of destruction. The chestnut tree began to descend slowly, the Mao towards the same. The two landed again on the ground that barely held. Seconds later, the chestnut tree turned around and went to where the nun. Asia, can you cure him? Asked the chestnut tree, shedding tears. I heard you, shouted the Mao. Claw, of course I can, nodded the nun, beginning to heal the wound of the chestnut tree. Seconds later, the wound healed completely. The chestnut caressed the nun's head, blushing it, then turned around and advanced again until it was a few meters apart from El Mao. Twilight healing, eh? Said the Mao seriously. That's right, do you like it? I asked the chestnut. What a shame. You can't have it, Rio the chestnut, sticking out his tongue. It's mine. Again the nun burst into blush and was embraced by Walburga, who showed jealousy. Not only her, also Jean, summoning two swords. For her part, Cao Cao shook her head. General, I would like to ask you something, said the Mao, smiling in a friendly way. Could you tell me who informed you that today would be the engagement party of Rias? You are very insightful, Lucifer. I did not expect less from the Mao, replied the chestnut, smiling in the same way as the Mao. As impossible as it may seem, you also have spies on your side. The revelation surprised everyone present. A spy, eh? Sighed the Mao. Even so, I'm not the only one with spies among his. This smiled smugly. I guess you know that there are also spies among yours. Of course, replied the chestnut tree. Seriously, of course I know. It is impossible for my plan of attack to turn out if you had not been informed of it. Oh, very smart. What are you talking about, Issei? Asked Cao Cao, advancing a step forward. It's very simple actually, but the plan of attack I designed was specially planned to find out if there was a spy among mine, replied El Castano. It's true. The number of guards you put, for example, in the meetings was exactly the number of guards we found here. That's because it wasn't an example, it was the real number, my source told me. The chestnut tree looked at the Mao. What I ask myself now is, the chestnut tree smiled, why did the Mao allow my plan to be carried out? The Mao Lucifer smiled at the words of the chestnut, then began to pretend to think, and then proceeded to speak. It's very simple actually, replied the Mao. When I heard that you had planned to attack me, I thought that the easiest way to capture all of you would be to let your plan be carried out successfully. Of course, I did not intend to let the plan be carried out completely. For example, the part of killing you, right? Of course, if I died, the underworld would be in serious trouble. For that reason, I myself made sure I had a counterattack planned, to make sure that you all got out of here, captured. Or dead. Can you tell me what that counterattack is? You'll find out in a few moments, it should be coming. A few seconds of confusion passed. Nothing happened, so the chestnut tree got bored and let out a long and heavy sigh. That's where the thing got strange. The sigh of the chestnut had exhaled smoke, but this was not because of heat. The temperature had dropped. Cao Cao said in confusion. Cold, ended Jean, hugging herself. The chestnut simply looked at the smoke that he himself exhaled. Seconds later he turned his gaze to the horizon, where seconds later, what surprised everyone would happen. From the horizon and at an incredible speed, the entire landscape completely froze. Trees, lakes, debris, soil, earth, mountains, everything in sight had frozen, and the ice was approaching rapidly. By the time a few seconds passed, the ice had already begun to completely freeze the destroyed room. Cao Cao stuck his spear on the ground, creating a kind of light barrier that prevented him and everyone else next to him from freezing. The Jabberwocky had begun to freeze rapidly, so he was forced with Leonardo to take flight to avoid freezing completely. Strangely, neither the Mao nor any of the other demons present froze. Although the ice reached them, it did not freeze them. The chestnut saw the ice approaching his feet, but this did not even change, since around the chestnut a cyclone of flames was created, which completely avoided the contact of the ice with the chestnut. When the ice took a few more kilometers, this stopped increasing, and later, the chestnut undid its flames. I must admit that I didn't see this coming, said the chestnut tree, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a red scarf. The chestnut put on his scarf, then shook his hand back, which swept away a powerful and hot wind that melted all the ice behind him. The ice next to El Mao began to accumulate, until with the passage of the seconds, this took a strange humanoid figure completely cast of ice, which apparently by some characteristics, was a woman. The strange humanoid figure cracked, and then the ice began to fall to the ground as if it were a shell, revealing to everyone the appearance of another person standing next to El Mao Lucifer. It's about time, said the Mao Lucifer, smiling. Serafal. Sorry Lu-chan, it was late. When all the ice finally fell, the appearance of the other person was revealed to everyone. Was a young woman, had a pair of bright purple eyes, black hair held in 2 pigtails, although her body was well developed. This girl wore a childish and pink Mahu Shaojo costume, plus she held a barite in her hand which had the tip in the shape of a heart. Serafal Leviathan had made an appearance. Nisama, he exclaims in surprise as he stands up. Sona-chan, exclaimed the Mao, turning around smiling. Stay where you are, this will end soon. But Nisama, why are you here? Lu-chan told me that he had devised a plan to capture the famous Crimson General, so I couldn't help but offer my help. But, quiet Sona-chan. The Mao turned around. This time, she expressed her gaze directly on the chestnut tree, who, although she had appeared, did not seem to be at all surprised, scared or nervous. His expression was completely null while he looked at the Mao. Had I known that the Crimson General was such a handsome boy, I would have brought my setup to make him one of my servants, said the Mao with a big smile. Unfortunately, I have no interest in joining you, the chestnut denied. Even so, I am quite surprised to learn that the legendary Mao Leviathan is such an outgoing girl. It's a compliment to know that you know me. Of course I know you. You are responsible for the disaster that started a new ice age throughout the American continent. Thanks to that, the population of humans declined significantly, as well as the military force. Stop embarrassing me. Haha is okay. The Mao began to expel her aura in a calm manner. This Heizo trembled the mansion slightly. The body of the Mao was wrapped in a mantle of blue energy. The eyes of the Mao showed complete seriousness, and seconds later, her gaze became that of an assassin. Thank goodness you didn't hurt Sona-chan, said the Mao, showing a look as icy as the ice on the ground. If you had, would kill you. Oh, said the chestnut, smiling and showing a completely serious look. You have a beautiful look there. Yours is not so bad. Thank you. As these two exchanged words, the girls behind El Castano showed jealousy. That Ai-chan, always flirting with all the girls he meets, growled Jean, biting his sleeve. Issei-chan is a heartthrob, isn't it? Asked Wahlberg, smiling. Not for nothing off ice is at his feet. Issei-san is a womanizer. I cry the nun. The chestnut simply sighed when listening to the comments of the girls, then looked at the two Maos in front of him, to later cover his body with a mantle of red energy equal to that of the Mao. I didn't plan to show it since it was only Lucifer, but since even Leviathan got in the way, I think it's time to stop playing, said the chestnut, clenching his fists. The aura of the chestnut tree began to spiral out of control brutally. Intense waves of power completely hit the room, forcing everyone to cover themselves and take a few steps back. The ice in a few kilometers melted completely. The debris began to levitate. The body of the chestnut tree began to expel red lightning as well as steam from the ground. The clouds in the sky had disappeared. The ground had begun to be destroyed. The mansion was about to be completely shattered. Now, the chestnut man smiled. A powerful wind whipped hard to the two Maos, which were surprised to notice that he had the chestnut in front of them. These two tried to answer, but they were not so fast. The chestnut held them both by the neck. This place is not suitable. I speak the chestnut, let's change scenery. The chestnut tree began to spin hard. Seconds later, it threw with great power the two Maos towards the sky in the direction of the deserted terrain that was a little far from where the mansion was. As soon as the two Maos shot out, the chestnut tree again disappeared. The power of the launch was such that the mansion was completely destroyed. It was already completely in ruins. All the guests, being demons, were forced to spread their wings and take shelter of a handful of guards who have just arrived where the ruins. The chestnut group nodded among themselves, riding the Jabberwocky next to Leonardo, and quickly on the beast, they went in the direction where the chestnut would face the two Maos. We have to go, exclaimed the redhead, spreading her wings and setting off. Yes, nodded his three faithful servants, following his steps. We're going too, exclaimed Sarah, following the redhead with her Kushia. Lord Gremory shouts from the ground. The whole group stopped to listen to the redhead's father. Be careful, said the father, showing concern. I had the same feeling the first time we fought him. Hayato Issei is seriously fighting. The father's words caused tremendous tension in the entire group of the redhead. They nodded at the same time that they swallowed, and quickly took flight in the direction of where the chestnut would fight against the two Maos. Underworld, distances. In an earthy terrain, with some large and small mountains of the same material, which was completely desolate. A light wind blew calmly while it raised a little smoke, slightly wet since it was previously covered with ice and had thawed only a few minutes. Two things collided where a mountain, destroying it completely and following its path until it impacted with the ground. A thick and huge smoke screen rose and the ground shook. The smoke screen dissipated seconds later, showing a deep crater in which two people were standing. One had a noble suit a little torn and burned, the other wore a pink Mahu Shaojo suit that had some slight scratches. It was the two Maos, Lucifer and Leviathan. Go. The general has great throwing power, doesn't he? Said the Mao, shaking her clothes. Although I think I'm exaggerating a little, I saw the Mao doing the same thing. Sorry for that. A voice called the attention of these two, directing their gaze to the top of a small mountain in front of them. On this was standing the chestnut, showing complete seriousness and tightening his scarf so that it did not fly with the wind. Maybe I'll spend a little time with you, but come on, don't get angry, said the chestnut tree, smiling. After all, I'm trying to kill them. The chestnut shook his hand to the ground, which is why the Mao reacted quickly and created an ice spear and immediately prepared to throw it. Even so, it stopped, since the chestnut was no longer. The mountain where the chestnut tree was completely destroyed by raising a smoke screen. The confused Mao looked in all directions in front of her, paying attention to the smoke screen. Even so, she was quite surprised to feel an unusual overweight on the spear she was holding. Sighing and smiling later, she looked at the end of the spear that was pointing backwards, on which the chestnut tree was standing staring at her. Very quickly, wise, said the Mao, smiling. I like to think that you are slow, Rio the chestnut. Even so, you two are not for nothing Maoists. Although the chestnut was smiling, he had two spear's ice stakes that came out from the ground to his neck. Even so, they did not come into contact since the tips were melting. In addition to the fact that the Mao Lucifer pointed directly at his face with his finger, which had a sphere of power of destruction right in front of him. Let's stop playing games, said the chestnut tree, showing complete seriousness. A powerful tornado of calling crimson engulfed these three quickly. The two Maoists responded by attacking the chestnut, but this was no longer on the spear of the Mao, but was in front of them and had a hand on the chest of each of the Maoists. Perverted, said the Mao, looking at the location of the chestnut's hand. It was an accident, said the chestnut tree, fly. The two Maoists shot out with great power backwards, being dragged by the powerful hurricane of crimson flames. The chestnut tree retained its position while its hands expelled flames. The hurricane dragged the two until they collided with a great mountain, which was destroyed by the collision. The chestnut extinguished the flames of his hands and looked directly at the smoke screen thrown by the collision of the Maoists with this. Quickly the ground began to freeze in the direction of the chestnut. This leaned back quickly and a handful of stakes came out from the ground trying to cross his head. The chestnut made a deadly backwards and took distance. The smoke screen completely dissipated, showing the two Maoists expelling their aura brutally as their bodies lit up red and blue respectively. It's a shame we have to kill him, said the Mao, shaking off her clothes. The circumstances indicate that it is necessary, added the Mao, extinguishing the flames of his clothes. A few meters behind where the chestnut tree was, the huge beast Jabberwocky landed. On this were mounted all the companions of the chestnut, who looked at the chestnut tree without getting off the beast. Are you okay, Ai-chan? Asked Jean, worried. Jean, exclaimed the chestnut tree. The blonde was a little surprised by the tone of voice of the chestnut. This turned to see the blonde. He was smiling widely and pleasantly. Seconds later, the body of the chestnut was covered with a hostile mantle of red energy while his eyes shone. Pay attention. The chestnut became serious. I will show my longinus. A powerful pressure completely destroyed the ground for several kilometers away. The energy of the chestnut tree had begun to increase drastically while the environment suffered the consequences of being almost completely destroyed. The debris floated, the ground trembled and had begun to be destroyed. A group of well-dressed demons landed near where the two Maoists were. It was the redhead's group, who were quite surprised to see what was about to happen. Impossible, said the redhead, denying it. Is the general going to show his longinus? He's been facing two Maoists without even saying it, said the worried brunette. If he shows it, it means that he's going to kill them, Serog said, smiling. But Serog-sama, shouldn't you intervene? Asked Kushia. Even if we intervened, we couldn't do anything, Hayato Issei. It's on a completely different level than any of us. Resigning themselves to doing nothing but seeing, the redhead's group was paying close attention, as were the companions of El Castano. I can't believe Ai-chan is going to show his longinus, Jean said in amazement. I wanted to know what it was, Walburga said, smiling. Me too, exclaimed the nun excitedly. I do the same, Leonardo added, showing curiosity. But Cao was a little nervous. If he shows his longinus ... she won't intervene. Off ice. The companions of the chestnut denied, confused, but they were not sure, and simply observed the chestnut. A small crater was created where the chestnut tree was. This simply continued to increase the overwhelming amount of energy around it. A huge lantern of crimson energy came from the ground to take the same height of the clouds. It seemed that it would suck everyone. A powerful wind began to whip in the direction of the chestnut, and little by little a green hurricane was created around El Castano. Luchan ... What is the general's longinus? Asked the Mao in surprise. I don't know, replied the Mao. Even so, I have a hunch. Yes, the longinus of the general probably is. A powerful roar by the chestnut ended up completely destroying the ground, creating a large crater covered several meters around. The green hurricane became more aggressive, pulling even the Jabberwocky. I'm going to remind you of them, exclaimed the chestnut tree as his eyes glowed brightly. The green hurricane was completely torn. It began to disappear as it slowly revealed to everyone the chestnut. A shiny, intimidating, and gloomy claw had completely cut off the green tornado. This claw belonged to the chestnut. Red, scaly, intimidating, with golden horns on it, a green gem. The disappearance of the green tornado revealed to everyone the presence of that artifact left by God, that Hayato Issei possessed, that red gauntlet that occupied the entire left forearm of the chestnut. That's it, exclaimed the Mao, Lucifer, surprised as I thought it is. I can't believe it, added the Mao, a little scared. The redhead fell to her knees, body began to tremble like never before, sweated a lot, hugged herself while her wide eyes showed fear and surprise. Fearful and hard, the redhead managed to say, "The legendary red dragon emperor's forearm," exclaimed the frightened brunette. Welsh dragon, exclaimed everyone. The chestnut tree simply stood inside the crater he had made, showing off his red gauntlet to everyone while smiling smugly and his honey eyes sparkling. Ai-chan's longinus is. Jean couldn't finish. Impossible, exclaimed Leonardo, showing a lot of surprise. The longinus that multiplies the power of the possessor every 10 seconds, and then surpasses any pre-written limit, the only one among all longinus. There were the red celestial dragon D-Drag is sealed, said Cao nervously. I still can't believe Issei is the one who has it. The chestnut, despite everyone's surprise, simply warmed his left arm. Seconds later he looked at the Doa Maoist in front of him. It's been a while since I've used the so maybe I'm a little rusty, Rio the chestnut. Let's try something. El Castano slowly placed the gauntlet on the ground, surprising everyone. El Castano's body began to shine brightly, his eyes the same, and he smiled while looking at the two Maoists. Bust. The gem of the gauntlet shines brightly. Consequently, the power of the chestnut increased overwhelmingly. Those words echoed in everyone's head. Back off, exclaimed the Mao, looking at the redheads group. It was too late. All the terrain for several kilometers around became an immense and deep crater. Without any kind of destruction and smoke, the ground simply disappeared in appearance of the huge crater. The chestnut group was mounted on the beast Jabberwocky, who had quickly taken flight when he saw that the ground had been destroyed. Even so, each and every one of the companions looked at the immense crater with great surprise. "Ai-chan is too powerful," said Jean, swallowing her saliva. "And not for nothing faces off ice," added Walburga nervously. "Issei-san is..." The nun had no words. "Just incredible," Leonardo said. Cao sighs nervously. "This is only a small part of the true power of Issei." The redheads group had not managed to react, so they were dragged into the crater. They were not very hurt. Sarok had protected Kushia and the three servants of the redhead to her. She stood on her feet, noticing that everything was a large crater as far as the eye could see. "This is..." The redhead was too scared to speak. "It's impossible," said the brunette. "This amount of power far exceeds that of mine, Rio Sarog." The two Maoists standing looking astonished. They were just still. In front of them was the chestnut, who only smiled pleasantly as he pointed at these two with that red gauntlet, which shone a lot. "And that's just a greeting, Rio El Castano Ahura." The Jabberwocky landed meters behind the chestnut, so he looked over his shoulder at his companions, who were very amazed and excited, since for most, it was the first time they observed the chestnut. "You too." The chestnut looked at the two Maoists. "I guess it's time to kill them." The chestnut tree appeared right in front of these two. It did not even give them time to react, destroying the ground where they were. The two Maoists shot backwards with great power. Bewildered by not knowing what had happened, the two Maoists resumed their posture by turning around and putting hands on the ground to continue crawling back several meters. The two looked up and looked at the chestnut tree standing where they were and smiled while his body was covered with a cloak of crimson energy. Again the chestnut appeared right in the middle of these two, holding the Mao Lucifer of the neck. This threw it quickly towards the sky with power. The Mao Leviathan responded quickly, giving a deadly backwards, looking to take distance while creating ice stakes in the ground that attacked the chestnut. The chestnut tree watched the stakes come towards him and exhaled an immense amount of crimson flames that melted the stakes. Then, he appeared next to the Mao and held his hand. "Be gentle," said the Mao, smiling forcefully. Of course, Rio the chestnut holding the head of the Mao. The chestnut tree hit the Mao hard against the ground, destroying it completely and burying it several meters in it. The chestnut tree then looked at the sky. Noticing that an immense mass of power of destruction was coming right towards him, he smiled and pointed at the huge mass with the red gauntlet. A huge torrent of red energy shot out of the gauntlet. This completely destroyed the mass of energy and continued on its way to the Mao Lucifer. Responsible for the mass of energy, the Mao tried to stop this torrent, but it was impossible and hit him directly, making him fall to the ground, expelling steam. Just before Mao touched the ground, he stopped, so he got confused, opened his eyes and saw how the chestnut tree held his legs, preventing him from falling to the ground. "Aha, how weak you are," Rio the chestnut squeezing his hands. The chestnut began to turn the Mao, holding it by the legs. A powerful hurricane was created and the chestnut threw the Mao with great power, which crawled all over the ground. The Mao was a few meters from where the Mao had been buried. Seconds later, the two stood up, completely serious and with minor injuries to their faces and bodies. "It seems that we will not achieve anything if we continue like this," said the Mao, expelling his aura in a brutal way. "So it seems," replied the Mao, doing the same, although it is a pity. The chestnut felt the change in these two, so he stopped smiling and showed a completely serious face and a purely murderous look. "It seems that at last they are going to stop playing," said the chestnut tree. "I wondered how much longer they would continue their farce." "I'm sorry, General Chan, but you have become a dangerous element for the underworld," said the Mao. "Kill, go. However, I don't plan to die, at least not until I destroy all of you." "That can be arranged," said the Mao. "However, the only one who will die will be your general." "No, Hayato Issei." The aura of these three was colliding. The ground had begun to destroy rapidly. Lightning was created by the collision of auras. The sky had begun to cloud. The intense pressure made the Jabberwocky get on its four claws to endure. Multiple magic circles began to appear around the two Maoists and the chestnut, so the chestnut was confused, but the two Maoists also did not know what was happening since they were also surprised. From each of the magic circles came a huge handful of soldiers wearing medieval armor, which were all demons. The number of demons had increased drastically. "Who sent them?" asked the Mao Lucifer, looking at one of the soldiers. "Yes." The demon nodded. "We are the reinforcement sent by Ajuka-sama." "Ajuka?" asked the two Maoists, surprised. "That's right. Ajuka-sama is on his way, so he sent us to hold the specimen." "Specimen?" asked the Mao. "I think they call him Crimson General." Ajuka-sama said he wanted to capture him alive for investigations. All the soldiers threw themselves against the chestnut. He simply saw them coming towards him with a serious expression. So a handful of soldiers fell to the ground dead with limbs torn off and holes in their chests. For the next second, the chestnut appeared in front of the beast Jabberwocky. It seems that things got a little complicated, said the chestnut looking at the army Jean. Yes, nodded the blonde jumping from the shoulder of the beast and landing next to El Castano. Take care. Yes, the chestnut touched the shoulder of the blonde, then the gem of El Gauntlet began to shine brightly. Jian groaned the blonde as her body was wrapped in a huge blanket of green energy. Seconds later, the blonde showed complete determination looking at the great army of demons in front of her. Since Chan took the trouble to give me his energy, I can't let it go to waste. Balance breaker. The ground in front of Jean was completely filled with swords that came from the ground. These spanned several meters in front of her, so by themselves they killed a handful of soldiers, but there I do not end. As if these had some kind of attraction, all the swords began to disengage from the ground and began to gather in a single point. Being so many swords, an immense mountain of swords of all kinds was created. The confused soldiers rushed into attack, but were completely killed by a great claw made entirely of swords. The huge mountain of swords began to move and grow, until after a few seconds, it took the form of a great silver dragon made entirely of swords. That's it, exclaimed Kiba with great surprise, a subspecies of, I can't believe that human is capable of using it. The huge dragon of swords alone began to destroy and murder the great army of demons. Minutes later, by itself it had killed a large number of soldiers. The demons attacked him with weapons and spells of all kinds, which destroyed the dragon, but seconds later it regenerated by taking the same swords that destroyed it. As always, a good job, said the chestnut tree, stroking Jean's head. Thank you, Chan, said the blushing blonde. You go too. Each and every one of El Castano's companions jumped off El Hombro de la Bestia, taking position next to El Castano. Walburga, take the left, Cao go to the right, Leonardo. You attack them from the air with the Jabberwocky and the mosquitoes. Asia, you stay here with me in the rear. If someone gets hurt they will need your help, explained the chestnut. So everyone nodded now. Everyone did as indicated. Jean maintained her position as she fit to control the dragon of swords. Cao took the right, Walburga the left, and Leonardo attacked from the air with the beast. The demons turned to ashes in consequence of the attacks of the spear of Cao. Others agonized on the ground covered in purple flames. Some were completely shattered by the huge claws of the Jabberwocky, while others were swallowed by the dragon of swords. By the time a couple of minutes passed, more than half of the huge army of demons had disappeared. The two Maoists were completely astonished. The great numerical advantage of a few moments ago did not seem to have changed the course of things at all, not only them, the redhead and their entire group equally. It's not for nothing that he's nicknamed General, said the Mao nervously. He has experience on the battlefield. We'd only have to wait for Adjuka to arrive to capture them. Rio El Mao only a few minutes. A powerful pressure accompanied by an immense wave of power completely destroyed the crater where everything was. The chestnut felt the pressure and looked in the direction of the horizon, where he showed emotion. It's Adjuka-sama. It's here, said the demon soldiers. Damn, complaining Cao, we will not be able to fight with 3 Maoists at once. Do not worry Cao, said the chestnut, combing the black hair. If things get complicated, I will use the and finish with everything. The companions of the chestnut showed much surprise, and slowly regrouping where the chestnut, all noticed that the chestnut was very excited and smiled darkly. Asked Jean, if I remember correctly, it's Issei-chan told me it was the evolved form of the, Walburga replied, so that means Issei-sen, he may be much more powerful than he already is, exclaimed the nun in amazement. Yes, replied the black hair, I've only seen it once, but the girls were surprised to see the state of the black hair. This had wide eyes, hugged himself while his body trembled and barely managed to stand, shuddered more to see the emotion in the chestnut. The of Issei is. The black-haired looked at the girls with fear quite overwhelming. The chestnut advanced until it was separated from the great army of demons by a few meters. This pointed at them with the gauntlet while the intense pressure of the air increased every second. 3 Maoists, said the chestnut tree excitedly. I'm going to kill 3 Maoists in one. The chestnut fired an overwhelming torrent of red energy. This completely exterminated each and every one of the remaining soldiers of the army. The ground was completely destroyed, with a lot of blood and limbs scattered everywhere. The redhead's group was overwhelmed and the 2 Maoists surprised. I'll finish with all of you, said the chestnut tree smiling. Out of nowhere, an immense mass of dark purple power attacked the chestnut tree from the sky. It reacted quickly by retreating. The immense mass of power crashed into the ground, creating an immense crater, from which a large smoke screen came out. This is, said the furious chestnut. I told him not to intervene. The chestnut tree appeared in front of all his companions. They noticed the great fury in him and said absolutely nothing. The chestnut put a hand in his pocket, and from this sack a transparent sphere that a strange material inside was apparently a very strange grenade. The chestnut removed the insurance of this grenade. Seconds later I throw it a few meters from it. It explodes and created a small dimensional crack. The chestnut sighs and looks at his companions. We're leaving, all surprised, but at the same time frightened by the anger of the chestnut, nodded as they proceeded to enter the crack. Both the sword dragon and the Jabberwocky disappeared the moment Jean and Leonardo entered the crack. Then it was Cao, then Asia, then Walburga. The chestnut man made the gauntlet disappear from his hand and sighed as he looked at the sky. Even though I told you I would hate you, sighs the chestnut tree, women are incomprehensible. Without saying a single word more, the chestnut entered the dimensional crack. Seconds later it disappeared without leaving any trace of it or the chestnut. The two Maoists as well as the redhead were very surprised. The excitement of the chestnut indicated that he would fight seriously, but still he had retired like this, so easily. From heaven began to descend a man who, despite appearing a high age, looked very young. He wore an elegant black suit, but also had a doctor's coat on top, wore glasses. Adjuka, said the Mao Lucifer, looking at the man. Adjuka Beelzebub had arrived. Sorry for being late to the party. Sorry Adjuka, I had some problems with one of the specimens. You and your specimens. Nasty, said the Mao, pouting. Because of you the general was frightened and retired. What? Exclaimed Adjuka, surprised. The general is gone. Adjuka looked everywhere, but indeed, this one was not, so I sigh in disappointment. It's a shame, I really long to dissect it. Rio Adjuka. While these two talked to each other, the Mao Lucifer was confused in the distance. A certain redhead noticed this and was steeled. Oni-sama, is something wrong? Asked the curious redhead. Do you remember what the general said before showing his longiness? What he said. The redhead began to remember that moment to which she paid so much attention, so it was not so difficult for her. I'm going to remind you of the fear of that day, didn't I? Replied the redhead. That's right. Hayato Issei. El Mao opened his eyes wide. Apparently he had remembered something. This guy his face with his hand and started laughing. Ha ha. Of course, it had to be him. How could I be so stupid? Ha ha ha. The hysterical laughter of the Mao caught everyone's attention, but the redhead was confused to see her brother laugh that way. Oni-sama, asked the confused redhead. Hayato Issei, I can't believe you're still alive. River the Mao in a dark way. Rias. Yes, do you know something about the? Only few details. Why, Hayato Issei was responsible for that. Everyone was quite surprised to hear the words of the Mao. The redhead showed quite fear and looked directly into her brother's eyes. But Oni-sama, exclaimed the redhead, wasn't the worst catastrophe that the underworld has suffered. River the Mao with emotion, and to think that the Sekiryute is responsible for that. It's a real surprise. The Mao looked directly at the redhead, which caused her to recoil nervously. Rias, contact Tannen, said the Mao. I have a special job for the Tannen. The redhead asked in amazement. Why would you need an ex-Dragon King? Just do it. The pressure of El Mao's gaze caused the redhead to nod in fear as she proceeded to retire with her nobility, Sarorg and Kushia, now only the three Maoists being alone. Luchan, what you said about ... is it true? That's right. Hayato Issei the Crimson General is responsible for that catastrophe, Lucifer replied with complete seriousness. That only increases its value as a specimen. River Beelzebub, although it's a surprise that a human is responsible for that catastrophe, you know. The level of destruction was worthy of a Dragon King. After confronting him I confirmed, Hayato Issei is responsible, and if we do not stop him soon, he will attack us again, and this time achieve your goal. The Mao Lucifer looked at the curious sky. Who gave us support? But Sirzech, Adjuka showed doubt happened 14 years ago. The general is just a teenage human, so Hayato Issei is responsible. Lucifer interrupted. Surely he did it the same day that it happened. That? Asked Leviathan. Yes, the day of tragedy, the day the underworld knew the true meaning of the word fear. Human world. Warriors of Longinus Base, Operations Center. The room corresponding to the Operations Center was completely sunk in tension. The chestnut was standing right in front of the Palangra, off-eyes, but the chestnut was completely furious and could be told by the expression on his face. I thought I had told you not to intervene, growls the chestnut. Low Luzbite. The black-haired hesitation. The chestnut fastened to the black hair of the neck, smashing it against the wall in a frenzy of fury. The black hair began to have a little difficulty breathing, but still stared at the chestnut, who was very furious. The others tried to stop him, but when they saw his expression, they knew they could do nothing. Stop, Issei, said the black-haired seriously. I don't want to fight you. I warned you that if you intervened I would attack you with everything I have, or did you forget? Replied the chestnut tree, wrapping his body in a hostile cloak of red aura. I had to do it. No, I had everything under control. Even being 3 Maoists, I could have taken care of them. And after that, die. If I can take 3 Maoists with me, dying doesn't sound bad at all. Do you forget what happened that time 14 years ago? I asked the hysterical black hair. You don't need me to remind you. There are still traces of the destruction you did that day. Irrelevant, said the chestnut. That and these are completely different things. In order to drag the 3 Maoists with you, would you have been able to recreate that and more off-ice? Why are you so stubborn? Understand off-ice. I don't have much time left. Time? El Castano did not respond. The black-haired woman grinds her teeth for the complete seriousness of El Castano and resigns herself to remain silent. You have 5 minutes to get out of here, growled the chestnut. If you stay longer, I will be forced to take you out myself, and this time I'll go with everything. Everything. The chestnut released the Palangra, going to the east door, opened it, and left, leaving the room in complete tension. Are you okay, Off-Ice-chan? Asked Jean, worried. Yes, this is nothing, replied the black-haired, smiling. I guess it's goodbye. I'm really sorry, Cao Cao said sadly. Okay, sooner or later it would happen. Off-Ice-chan ... Do you still love Issei? Asked Walburga, curiously. Of course, that feeling won't change for anything in this world, nodded the black hair. I hope you and Issei-sen can reconcile, said the nun nervously. I expect the same. The black hair created a dimensional crack in front of him, smiling and saying goodbye with his hands. This entered the crack, seconds later, disappeared, leaving the room in a state of complete silence and sadness. Dimensional gap. A completely uninhabited plane. This had many things similar to Northern Lights in all its being, but even surprising was that within this completely uninhabitable environment was a small 2-story house, which was covered with a barrier. Inside this house appeared a dimensional crack, from which Off-Ice came out. Even though she had said she was fine, she showed sadness. Off-Ice. A voice called to the Palangra. This looked to his right, exactly towards one of the armchairs of the house, where the person who had spoken was. A young boy, had a silver hair, blue eyes. He wore a black jacket with a green shirt underneath, black pants and shoes of the same color. This boy was lying loose on the couch. New look. Asked the Platinum, did the Red tell you to change your appearance? That does not concern you. Denied the Palangra volley. As you say, well, why did you come back? You said you wouldn't be back for a while, but you only left for a week. There were some problems. How are things going with Grigori? They are going well. Azazel does not suspect anything of me. News. Apparently they tried to persuade the Red by sending Rainair, but again failed. Of course, Issei would never join the fallen angels. The others. Bikuo and Kuroko went to investigate the northern regions. The snooty of the faction went out to look for information among the demons. Kateria's idea, right. Of course. Off-Ice sighs and I take a seat in another of the armchairs. Why all the interest? Asked the Platinum. Is not going to disintegrate just because its leader is absent for a few days. It's nothing like that, she denied. She just wanted to be sure. Did something happen with the Red? Nothing worth noting. Why don't you tell me once and for all where he is to go and see him? Because you will cause problems. I'm just going to say hello to him. The Platinum Rio, seconds later, simply turned around, closed his eyes and still lying down returned to what he was doing before the black hair arrived, sleep. The black hair just stared at the ceiling of the room, thinking. The black hair bit her lip. The black-haired man remembered the face of the chestnut tree, which besides being furious showed a little sadness. Then the black-haired man remembered the words of the chestnut tree. I don't have much time left, thought the black-haired with concern. Without saying anything, the black-haired continued to gaze at the ceiling of the room. His expression was one of pure sadness. Underworld, outskirts. On the outskirts of the underworld, specifically within a huge forest full of fog that was desolate, was a red-haired woman, Rias, who was sheltered since apparently the forest was very cold, besides that it was already night. The redhead was standing in front of a dark cave. After looking at the cave for a few seconds, she entered the cave. A sphere of energy appeared in her hand to illuminate in the darkness. A few minutes passed. The cave was apparently deep. Then the redhead stopped. Apparently she had found what she was looking for. Good night, Tannen-san, said the redhead, bowing. In front of the redhead was something surprising. A large dragon purple color was lying inside this cave. Even so, it had a steel collar tied with chains to the ground. The front and hind legs were also tied to the walls. The tail was tied to the ground. The dragon breathed a little fire when he saw the redhead. What do you want? Rias Gremory asked the dragon in a hostile way. Sorry to disturb, but the redhead smiled falsely. Oni-sama has a job for you. Work? What kind of work? Let's say that. Oni-sama wants you to find someone. Can't you ask someone who is not incarcerated? Unfortunately, Oni-sama asked exclusively for you, plus it's not that easy. Why? It is in the human world. The purple dragon breathed fire by way of excitement. After this steel is a sicko to the redhead and nodded his head. I take it gladly, replied the dragon. It's a relief to know that you accepted Tannen-san, said the redhead, bowing. Now, if you'll excuse me. The redhead said goodbye and began to leave the cave. Again, this took a few minutes to leave. The moment she left, a handful of guards were waiting for her outside the cave. The redhead began to approach the guards, but stopped for a few seconds to look at the moon. The moon was shining brighter than ever and was at its peak. I don't approve of the way you do it, Oni-sama, whispered the redhead. Excuse me, Rias-sama, did you say anything? Asked a guard. No, nothing. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.